The man's brother was a big, burly guy, but when faced with his bullied younger brother, he showed no sympathy, instead calling him useless. He not only refused to stand up for his brother Huang Chaomin, but also threatened him. "If you dare tell anyone you're my brother, I'll end you myself." Hearing this, Huang Chaomin gritted his teeth in anger and couldn't help but shout, "How can you say such things? Aren't I your only family?" But his brother just turned and left, as if he hadn't heard a thing, closing the door behind him, and with that, he was gone for 3 years. During this time, Huang Chaomin suffered daily bullying at school, until he received a phone call, informing him that his brother had died. In that moment, he was stunned. Although they hadn't seen each other for 3 years, Huang Chaomin decided to see him one last time. His brother's cause of death was a motorcycle accident with a truck, killing him instantly. After an intense internal struggle, Huang Chaomin decided to abandon his brother's body. After all, such a scumbag must have been hated by many. Rather than spend money on his funeral, he'd be better off buying himself some food. As Huang Chaomin was leaving, a staff member stopped him, handing him a package, saying, "Please, at least take this. I know you're refusing to claim the body because you can't afford the funeral, right? I almost forgot to give you this. These are personal belongings found at the accident scene." Huang Chaomin took the package and sat down, his mind in turmoil. He never thought his reckless brother would meet such an end. Now he was truly alone. At this thought, he couldn't help but shed tears. Just then, a phone rang inside the package. Huang Chaomin found a powered-on phone. The first message on the home screen read, "Boss, how's the nationwide wandering going?" But when Huang Chaomin tried to open the message for a closer look, he found the phone was password protected. He initially just wanted to try if it was the universal gesture password. Surprisingly, it actually unlocked the phone, so he began to examine the contents. One message caught his attention. It was the personal information of Jang Hee-soo from his school. Opening it, he found that someone was actually praising Jang Hee-soo's character. This left Huang Chaomin feeling perplexed. Remembering how that person usually bullied him, he couldn't help but curse him a bit. After reading all the messages, he realized this was a group of vicious thugs. So he sent a message in the pinned group chat calling for a gathering, intending to summon these guys, so the police could send them to jail. Just then, someone grabbed his ear. It was Han Chang-hee. He noticed the package nearby and understood someone had died, but he showed no sympathy. Instead, he emptied the contents of the package. By the time Huang Chaomin reacted, it was too late. Although these mementos meant nothing to him, he was annoyed that someone else had meddled. Furious, he lunged at Han Chang-hee, pushing him to the ground. But that wasn't the end of it. As Han Chang-hee tried to get up, Huang Chaomin landed a punch on his face, even though he was also injured from falling from a height. But he still powered through, continuing to attack Han Chang-hee. Just then, Jang Hee-soo punched Huang Chaomin in the face, sending him flying. "What's going on here? I just went to the convenience store for a moment." Han Chang-hee, "Why are you covered in blood? That bastard caught me off guard and pushed me down from up there. That's way out of line. We should be able to beat him up without breaking the law, right?" At this, Jang Hee-soo couldn't help but grin maliciously. Hearing this, Huang Chaomin ignored his injuries and tried to stand up to escape. But Jang Hee-soo had no intention of letting him off so easily. Just as he was about to chase after him, he was suddenly knocked down by an unexpected blow. When he got up, wanting to see who had ambushed him, it turned out to be his own big brother, Jiang. He froze, not understanding why the other had hit him. No reason, but the boss said you're scum, and taking you out 1,000 times wouldn't be enough. Huang Chaomin trembled at these words. He hadn't expected the person he messaged earlier to be him. Although he didn't know what was going on, Jang Hee-soo didn't want to be a sitting duck. Han Chang-hee, lying on the ground, quickly advised, "Stop." Tears welled up in his eyes, because hundreds of people were slowly approaching behind them. Their clothes matched Jiang's, clearly showing they were on the same side. Watching the scene unfold, Huang Chaomin broke out in a cold sweat. Could all these people be my brother's subordinates? By the time Jang Hee-soo realized what was happening, he was already surrounded. Actually, it doesn't matter if you're scum or not. If the boss doesn't like someone, we have to deal with them, because that's the Emperor Gang's creed. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone rushed in, beating Jang Hee-soo bloody. Huang Chaomin watched all of this unfold before his eyes. "I guess I should thank my brother for this. I'll make good use of the power you left behind. With this phone, I can control half of H country's underworld." But Huang Chaomin used it to clean up the school environment. He taught those scumbags a harsh lesson. Not only did he make them act as human chairs for their victims, but also forced them to run naked around the track for 2.5 hours. Despite the harsh conditions, the scumbags had no choice but to comply, because the Emperor Gang's eyes were everywhere. This caught the attention of the school's top brass. After all, in the past week, over 20 people had fallen victim to the Emperor Gang's attacks. But even Du Jianfu, the squad leader, was puzzled. The Emperor Gang had always turned a blind eye before. Why were they acting like this now? I think they might have been hired to beat people up. If they were really trying to dominate the school, they should be targeting the third-year students. But they're specifically targeting first years. So, this is likely a personal vendetta. If that's the case, then find that audacious first-year kid and bring him to me. Don't worry, I was thinking the same thing. The next morning, they gathered all the suspects, intending to find the mastermind behind the hired attacks. Gu Minzu got straight to the point, stating his purpose, which was to find the mastermind behind the hired attacks. and I'm certain the culprit is among you." Hearing this, Huang Chaomin couldn't help but tremble. How did they suddenly narrow down the list of suspects? Gu Minzu's lips curved into a slight smirk. The culprit must be wondering how we figured this out, right? In reality, this was all just his bluff. Those present were merely his suspects. I'll give you one chance. The culprit better confess now. Otherwise, I can guarantee you'll experience tortures you've never seen before. Although Huang Chaomin was terrified, he still chose not to step forward. Since no one's confessing, we have no choice. Nobody move. We'll search everyone, starting from the front. Looks like I'm really done for this time. Why did I bring the phone? If they find it, there's no way to deny it. Just then, someone in front got punched for moving during the check. So Huang Chaomin decided to make a desperate move. He took out his phone, intending to message the Emperor Gang to come to Dragon Day High School's auditorium immediately. But suddenly Gu Minzu leaned in and asked, "What are you doing?" Huang Chaomin was so scared he broke out in a cold sweat, forgetting to answer. "I said no moving. Why are you still playing with your phone? Don't tell me you're the one who's been secretly hiring people to cause trouble?" After saying this, they prepared to snatch the phone. But Huang Chaomin held onto it tightly, refusing to let go. The man, enraged, raised his fist to punch him. Just then, a voice rang out. "Actually, I'm the one who secretly hired people to cause trouble," Kim De-chong said tremblingly. The man lowered his hand and approached Kim De-chong, asking again, "You did all this?" Kim De-chong immediately knelt on the ground. "I hired the Emperor Gang because I hated those bullies who tormented me." This made Gu Minzu pause. He hadn't mentioned who the attackers were. How did this kid know? Could he really be the culprit? But Gu Minzu suddenly sensed something was off. He quickly turned around and snatched Huang Chaomin's phone. He asked for the unlock password. Huang Chaomin replied, 131-4520. But when he opened it, he found it full of advertisements. He was stunned, not knowing what to say. When he came to his senses, he returned the phone to Huang Chaomin. By now, his subordinates had also finished checking Kim De-chong's phone. "This kid's phone doesn't have anything on it. I was afraid of being discovered, so I deleted all the chat records." Gu Minzu didn't suspect this at all. After all, who would pretend to be the culprit in such a serious matter? It must be this wimp. He was scared into confessing. This way, my abilities will again impress Du Jianfu. Our relationship will become even stronger, and I can continue to manipulate the villains as I please. He then landed a punch on Kim De-chong's stomach. "I'm sure you've prepared yourself mentally. The rest of you can get lost." But as Huang Chaomin was leaving, he couldn't help but look back. He didn't understand why Kim De-chong had falsely claimed to be the culprit. And how did he know it was the Emperor Gang's doing? This bullied weakling actually had a notorious gangster brother. Not only was he the leader of a violent gang, but he was also feared by all other gangs. With just one order, he could make anyone disappear from this world. But now he had died in a car accident. His phone was now in the hands of his brother, Huang Chaomin. Huang Chaomin used it to clean up the school environment, but ended up causing his friend to be brutally beaten. It turned out that the school suspected someone had hired thugs. So they gathered all the suspicious individuals together, intending to check their phone chat records. Just as they were about to check Huang Chaomin, Kim De-chong voluntarily took the blame, falsely claiming he had hired the Emperor Gang. He did this because of something he had accidentally witnessed. "I never thought the Emperor Gang would completely exceed my expectations." Huang Chaomin looked embarrassed. He thought to himself, "Looks like I need to be more careful even when talking to myself. But no matter what, it's my fault you got beaten up like this." But Kim De-chong told him not to worry about it. "After all, when everyone was making fun of me, you were the only one who helped. You might not have noticed, but I'll never forget. And on the day Quan Du-hien went crazy, I knew I shouldn't feel this way, but I felt really happy inside. So you don't need to feel sorry. Just go back quickly. They told me to stay here for now. After school, they'll take me to see someone called Du Jianfu. They won't kill me no matter what, right?" But Huang Chaomin didn't think so. He not only helped Kim De-chong remove the tape, but also told him not to feel guilty. Seeing those scumbags get taught a lesson is satisfying and fun. We should enjoy it, laugh about it, just like they do when they bully us. Huang Chaomin said through gritted teeth. "Even so, they'll still come to get me after school. Don't worry about that. Are you ready to enjoy the show?" Meanwhile, in a classroom with 40 people, 39 were sleeping on their desks. Just then, the back door slowly opened. A group of people approached a student who had just woken up, asking where Gu Minzu from Class 4, Year 3 was. After getting the answer, they surrounded Gu Minzu as the whole class watched in shock. One of them was holding a fire extinguisher, which he brought down on Gu Minzu's head. It turned out Huang Chaomin had sent a few messages to the Emperor Gang. "Take care of Gu Minzu from Dragon Day for me. Right now." Gu Minzu's underling, seeing this, immediately tried to help. But one punch to his forehead sent him to the ground, unable to get up. The red-haired guy glared fiercely at everyone. "Anyone who dares to interfere is dead." Then he rejoined the group, viciously kicking Gu Minzu on the ground. The teacher was so scared he ran out of the classroom and called the police station. This is Dragon Day. A group of thugs suddenly burst into the classroom. Yes, come quickly. The neighboring classroom also heard the commotion, wondering if something had happened. Du Jianfu, awakened by the noise, slapped the back of the head of the student in front of him. You brat, what are you muttering about? Meanwhile, on the other side, the Emperor gang was still beating Gu Minzu. He was already covered in blood, only able to beg them to stop. After they felt they'd beaten him enough, they told him not to move as they wanted to take a photo. The surrounding onlookers were shocked. They never thought they'd see the day Gu Minzu would beg for mercy. After all, he was a powerful figure in the school. Usually, he was the one bullying others. Thinking about this, they couldn't help but smile. The photo turned out great. The boss should be satisfied. Just as the man was admiring the photo, someone suddenly grabbed his shoulder. Emperor gang, who do you think you are? What do you think this place is? The man was then punched out the window. The remaining few decided to gang up on Du Jianfu. But Du Jianfu's fighting skills were impressive, holding his own against 3 opponents. He not only dodged incoming punches, but also found openings to counterattack. In a matter of moments, all 3 were beaten to the ground. Only then did Du Jianfu roar in anger. Who do you think you are? How dare you cause trouble here in broad daylight? As soon as he finished speaking, someone ambushed him from behind. The attacker locked Du Jianfu's neck in a tight hold. Another person picked up the fire extinguisher and swung it at his head. By the time the police arrived, Du Jianfu was the only one still standing in the classroom. He had taken down everyone else. Song Jongguk was amazed. As expected of the school's top delinquent leader, the fire extinguisher hit him countless times, yet he could still take it. You bastard, get out of my way. The blonde-haired guy punched the student in front of him, sending him flying. Behind him were many more people. This group was the belated first gang. The scene quickly became chaotic. Big bro Jianfu, what's going on? What's the Emperor gang's deal? Du Jianfu shouted, listen up, all of you. Those Emperor gang bastards ambushed us. This is all on orders from that despicable boss of theirs. It's because of that scumbag's orders that Minzu suffered. We can't let this insult slide. It's our turn to make the enemy pay for disrespecting Dragon Day. Although we've coexisted peacefully before, from today on, the Emperor gang is our enemy. Huang Xiaomin's expression gradually became serious. Even though Gu Minzu was a powerful figure, the delinquents in this school were united around Du Jianfu. To dismantle this force, he'd need to take out Du Jianfu, the key figure. Despicable? Scumbag? Alright, let's see who comes out on top. I'll completely destroy you. A slight smirk appeared on Huang Xiaomin's face. What he didn't know was that his unusual behavior had already caught the attention of the Emperor gang's top brass. The boss has been acting strange lately. Why does he keep sending us on such interesting missions? The young man needed just one message to cause thousands to be slaughtered. But this time he failed, leading the school to fall into deeper oppression. When Huang Xiaomin learned that everyone had to pay 100,000 won per day in protection money, he immediately went to the bathroom to message Guo Jiqiang, asking what was going on. We successfully cornered Du Jianfu yesterday, but unexpectedly, he joined the Big Phil Alliance. If we touch him now, it would be declaring war. Guo Jiqiang had been thinking about this. He was about to go ahead when someone stopped him. It was Park Sukha, the captain of the Emperor gang's first squad. He believed this was an unnecessary conflict and decided to explain it privately to the boss. That's why Guo Jiqiang didn't report back. Huang Xiaomin was furious when he saw this message. It's that bastard Park Sukha again. In his process of controlling the Emperor gang, he discovered these guys had a well-established system. Currently, there were 3 main squads, each operating independently. The captain of the first squad was this guy called Park Sukha. Based on his messages, it could be inferred that he was responsible for the overall management of the Emperor gang, similar to an advisory role. It was for this reason that Park Sukha's authority kept expanding. This resulted in Huang Xiaomin's orders being strictly controlled every time he issued them. Only 5 to 7 people were sent. If more forces had come to the school that day, not only Gu Minzu, but Du Jianfu might have been taken care of as well. Huang Xiaomin, imitating his brother's tone, sent a message reprimanding him. But from the reply, it seemed they were friends rather than superiors and subordinates. Huang Xiaomin broke out in a cold sweat, realizing he had made a rookie mistake. He should have noticed from the chat history that the way he spoke was quite casual, clearly indicating an equal relationship. If that's the case, it's better not to create conflicts. After all, if I say the wrong thing, I might make him suspicious. Then I'd have to dance to his tune. Fortunately, Guo Jiqiang, the second squad captain, was an unconditionally obedient battle maniac. I'll just send him to deal with Du Jianfu. As for how to manage the school, we'll figure that out later. But Park Sukha's interference made Huang Xiaomin grit his teeth in anger. You dare disrupt my peace? I'll make you pay for it. But he didn't know the other party harbored similar thoughts. That, "Since when do you get to question my words?" made Park Suk-ha very unhappy. Over the next few days, he kept contradicting orders. No matter what instructions the boss gave, he would find reasons to refuse. Huang Chaomin felt helpless about this. After all, he wasn't Huang Wudi and couldn't use force to make the other obey. If he didn't take action, it would only make the other more confident, thinking there were no consequences for contradicting. This way, the next time he used this gun, it wouldn't be reliable. He might not even be able to decide if the bullets fired were blanks or live rounds. What should he do about a gun he couldn't fully control? While Huang Chaomin was pondering in the bathroom, he was suddenly startled by a voice. He peeked out to see a crowd gathered in the hallway. Du Jianfu whispered to his underling, "Are all the teachers in a meeting?" After confirmation, he let the group behind him enter. "These are all the criminals who didn't pay up. Take a good look. If anyone dares to treat my words as hot air again, just wait and see." It turned out that after joining the Big Phil Alliance, he had to pay a daily subscription fee. This led the first gang to demand money from students. In reality, these were just a bunch of shameless freeloaders. Seeing Song Min-guk at the end of the line, Huang Chaomin couldn't sit still any longer. "Looks like I need to quickly think of a plan to take action." So that night, he stayed up late scrolling through the phone, looking for information on Park Suk-ha. But it only had basic apps, no proper social media software. So how could he make Park Suk-ha legitimately teach Du Jianfu a lesson? Until he found a photo with not only Park Suk-ha but also a girl. And she was wearing Dragon Day school uniform. On the surface, he was a harmless high school underachiever. But behind the scenes, he controlled H country's largest criminal organization, the Emperor Gang. But in the past few days, his orders had all been blocked by Park Suk-ha. This caused everyone at school to suffer even more. So, he prepared to make the other pay. Although he couldn't use force to make others obey like his brother Huang Wudi, he could use the information he'd gathered over the past few days to fabricate lies and create misunderstandings for Du Jianfu. Then kidnap Park Suk-ha's girlfriend to provoke him into action. It turned out that a few days ago, when Huang Chaomin was paying protection money, he overheard some information from their conversation. Gu Minzu was still unconscious, and Du Jianfu was in a hair-trigger state. He also happened to learn that Park Suk-ha had a girlfriend. So, Huang Chaomin fabricated a lie and sent it to Du Jianfu through a money transfer. Sure enough, when Du Jianfu learned that the reason Gu Minzu was beaten up was because his girlfriend was two-timing him with Park Suk-ha from the Emperor Gang, he was so angry that he immediately ordered his underlings to go to Yingshan Girls' School and bring the girl to him. To keep track of the situation, Huang Chaomin called some friends to follow Du Jianfu, and they arrived at an abandoned warehouse. Through the window, the two could see everything inside. Park Suk-ha had single-handedly taken care of all the underlings. Just as he was about to question Du Jianfu about why he would do such an outrageous thing, the other didn't fight fair and landed a punch straight to his face. "You bastard, I've had it with you for a long time. Especially that disgusting look in your eyes." Immediately, Du Jianfu launched into a frenzied attack, quickly gaining the upper hand. The two outside watched nervously, afraid Park Suk-ha might lose. Even Huang Chaomin couldn't help but think to himself, "If you knew you couldn't beat Du Jianfu, you should have brought some backup. Why come alone just for the sake of pride?" Seeing that the other wasn't fighting back, Du Jianfu thought he couldn't beat him and started trash-talking. But Park Suk-ha didn't understand a word. He grabbed one of Du Jianfu's arms and in the next second, executed a perfect shoulder throw. Du Jianfu was slammed hard onto the ground. Then Park Suk-ha stomped on his face, blood splattering. Du Jianfu's face immediately caved in, and he lost a front tooth. At this point, Park Suk-ha's face was dark. "I've racked my brains but can't think of what disgusting thing I've done to make you treat me like this." Du Jianfu, covering his nose, slowly stood up and lunged at Park Suk-ha again. He kept spewing trash talk, but Park Suk-ha simply sidestepped and tripped Du Jianfu to the ground. No matter how many times Du Jianfu got up, he was easily knocked down. It was like Park Suk-ha was toying with a child. It was only now that he recalled someone's warning. The Emperor Gang isn't something you alone can handle. But it was too late. Park Suk-ha grabbed Du Jianfu's hair, intending to question him about what disgusting thing he had supposedly done. But he found that Du Jianfu had already passed out. So he gave up on questioning and untied the ropes binding his girlfriend. Just as they were about to leave, the other side's reinforcements arrived. Huang Chaomin, watching from outside, called to his friend that they should leave, because things were about to get lively here. It turned out the Emperor Gang's reinforcements had also arrived, and this was all part of Huang Xiaomin's plan to take over Dragon Day. The reason given was to deal with the madmen who tried to ambush the Emperor Gang's second-in-command. In just a moment, all of the first gang's people were wiped out. Why would these guys do such an outrageous thing? Actually kidnapping someone's girlfriend? Park Suk-ha turned to look at Du Jianfu and said, "Seems like there was a misunderstanding. Misunderstanding or not, they shouldn't have done something so despicable, right? If we had taught them a harsh lesson earlier, this probably wouldn't have happened." and those alliance guys, using Dragon Day to provoke us, plus attempting to harm our executive. If we don't pursue this matter, we'll lose face. You know that, right? Park Suk-ha had no choice but to agree. After all, this was no longer a personal grudge, but a matter of gang morale. So from today on, we'll take Dragon Day from the Alliance's hands. If anyone dares to resist, make them understand thoroughly who they should follow from now on. In just a week, Dragon Day School was completely taken over by the Emperor Gang. From now on, those Dragon Day guys will pay the tribute money. Because the two organizations were completely different in nature. The Big Phil Alliance was a union between schools, so they collected high protection fees on a school-by-school basis. But in the Emperor Gang, this obligation fell on each individual. After all, the Emperor Gang was a non-high school organization formed by Huang Wudi's extraordinary charisma. To prevent them from collecting money in school, Huang Chaomin specifically made a rule. Members of Dragon Day's first gang were not allowed to financially exploit ordinary students. The reason given was punishment for provoking the Emperor Gang's executives. Seeing Han Changhe's frustration, Huang Chaomin smirked. Even his good friend couldn't help but praise. The Emperor Gang's reputation is truly formidable. How badly must they have been beaten to become so dispirited? Looks like being taken over by the Emperor Gang might not be a bad thing. After all, whenever a delinquent student tried to borrow money from others, Dragon Day's first gang would immediately beat them up. You bastard! How dare you break the rules? Don't you know the Emperor Gang's eyes are everywhere? If we're discovered, we'll be the ones in trouble. Quan Du-hien couldn't help but shout in anger. Then, he not only put his arm around the student's shoulder, but also offered to buy him something from the school store. Just please be merciful and let him off the hook. Huang Chaomin, hiding nearby and watching, couldn't help but smile in satisfaction. I didn't expect Quan Du-hien to be such a useful person. It turned out that now no conflicts could occur in the school. This led to the first gang controlling other delinquent students. From now on, I just need to manage well and maintain the status quo. After all, the first gang will surely continue their misdeeds outside of school. There will still be people being bullied, but I'm just an ordinary person. I can't create a world without scumbags. Although I feel sorry, this is the limit of what I can do. After all, further pursuit might arouse Park Suk-ha's suspicion. So for the future, I can't keep causing him trouble. But there's one thing I'm quite curious about. Could it be that Huang Wudi chose to wander the country because he was unsatisfied? Just as Huang Chaomin was pondering this, the phone in his drawer suddenly lit up. A ringtone sounded, snapping him back to reality. The teacher also stopped what he was doing and asked whose phone was ringing. Huang Chaomin admitted it was his and apologized to the teacher. But he was very confused. He had turned off both the ringtone and vibration. So why was the phone ringing? He picked up the phone and saw the caller was Ma Hili, but he had no recollection of this name. After school, Song Jong-guk invited Huang Chaomin to the arcade as usual. Sorry, I have something to do today. I probably can't go. Song Jong-guk was stunned, not understanding what was up with Huang Chaomin today. Meanwhile, Huang Chaomin went to the park and sat down, seemingly waiting for someone. It turned out Ma Hili had just sent him 2 messages, saying she had something to give him. What shocked Huang Chaomin more was that someone like Huang Wudi actually had a girlfriend. A moment later, someone approached and asked, "Are you the person Wudi's brother sent?" When Huang Chaomin saw Ma Hili, he couldn't help but blush. He didn't expect her to be quite pretty. Could Huang Wudi's dissatisfaction be because of this girl? And for some reason, it seemed this girl really liked his brother. As for the other executives of the Emperor Gang, they probably all knew about Ma Hili's existence. If she continues to pursue my brother, my situation might become dangerous. So Huang Chaomin decided to break up with her by suggesting they split. But Ma Hili said she already knew Huang Wudi was no longer in this world. Hearing this, Huang Chaomin dropped what he was holding. He couldn't help but step back, saying, "What are you talking about? Am I wrong? From your expression, I can tell you're thinking, how do you know?" Ma Hili leaned in close to Huang Chaomin and whispered, "After all, I'm the one who killed him. How could I not know? How could someone like you possibly kill him?" Huang Chaomin asked in disbelief, but she insisted she wasn't lying. "I'm the one who took out your brother." Huang Chaomin thought, "I didn't expect her to even know I'm his brother. Could what she's saying be true? But my brother was clearly killed in a truck accident." At this point, Huang Chaomin was starting to waver. Ma Hili continued, "That truck driver's son was once a victim of your brother, suffered quite a bit. It turned out his son had joined the Emperor Gang to follow Huang Wudi, but he was unfortunately hit in the head during a fight and died. But I stopped that suicidal old man. Then I told him when and where Huang Wudi would appear, hoping he could take care of Huang Wudi. Unexpectedly, he directed all his hatred towards Huang Wudi, who had influenced his son. So it's reasonable to say I'm the one who took him out, right?" It was only now that Huang Chaomin believed her words. However, the day after Huang Wudi died, I ran into Guo Zhijiang, who was rushing somewhere. I learned from him that the boss had ordered everyone to gather at Jiachuan Bridge. At first, I was really scared, thinking a ghost had appeared. It wasn't until I thoroughly searched the Daecheon police station that I found out it was that guy's brother who had collected the belongings. After hearing this, Huang Chaomin was at a loss for what to do. If he reported to the police, the news of his brother's death would become public. She was so arrogant precisely because she knew this. So Huang Chaomin asked directly what she wanted him to do. After all, if she planned to punish him for impersonating Huang Wudi, she wouldn't meet like this. If that's the case, I'll be straightforward. I want you to continue impersonating the boss, control the Emperor Gang, and destroy the Big Phil Alliance. Huang Chaomin was stunned when he heard this. What nonsense are you talking about? How could I possibly do that? At first, I just wanted to manage my own school well. But Ma Healy pressed Huang Chaomin. It was you who schemed to have Park Sukha attack Dragon Day, right? Huang Chaomin didn't know how to answer. She continued, since then, I've been keeping an eye on Dragon Day's movements. After all, being able to make that conservative Park Sukha take action shows you've got some skills. I just used the information I had. But she stepped forward and said, if it were an ordinary person, they'd probably just impersonate Huang Wudi and say, protect my brother. They'd only care about protecting themselves. Most people wouldn't even dare to do that much. But you used the boss's power to punish bad people. When it comes to eliminating scum, you're more serious than anyone. And you're quick-witted too. After all, you almost got into the technology school back then. It turned out that in Dragon Day, filled with thugs, Huang Chaomin was the only one seriously studying. But after he talked back to those who mocked him, he became a target of bullying. Even on the day before the technology school entrance exam, he was locked in a warehouse by those guys, causing Huang Chaomin to miss the exam. After that, he completely gave up on studying and came to Dragon Day. Am I right? Ma Healy asked. Do you know what your brother was doing when your life was turning dark? He was dealing with Alliance members. My own brother was an Alliance member at that time. But after taking a punch from Huang Wudi, he became a vegetable. He still hasn't woken up. And that guy's loyal subordinate was willing to go to prison in his place. It's ridiculous. It turned out she had approached Huang Wudi for revenge. But why did she insist on going after the Alliance? I've long been tired of both the Alliance and the Emperor Gang. At first, I only planned to take revenge on Huang Wudi. Now I have bigger ambitions. You can help me completely eradicate this disgusting battlefield. Saying this, she couldn't help but break into a maniacal laugh. Of course, you can refuse, but be prepared, because I'll reveal all the truth, and then you'll be done for. If you don't want to die, you have to become the king. Huang Chaomin was so scared by these words that his legs went weak, and he sat down on the ground. I just wanted to restore peace to the school. How did I get caught up in this mess? Was I too greedy? But given the situation, Huang Chaomin had no choice but to agree to her demands. Only then did Ma Healy smile again. That's right, good boy. Even so, this was far from over. Because she needed to confirm if Huang Chaomin was worthy of her support. Ma Healy said, as long as you pass my test, I can grant any request. But the next second, Ma Healy changed her expression. You're even more malicious than I imagined. Huang Chaomin nervously tried to change the subject. Tell me the content of the test quickly. Since the Emperor Gang appeared, they've expanded their influence rapidly. But due to the Alliance's interference, their momentum weakened, eventually leading to the current three-way standoff. Among them, there's a group that doesn't belong to the Alliance but still holds a place. That's Qingbi High School in Day District. Huang Chaomin was quite shocked to hear this. Without any organization's backing, they still managed to have a foothold. Dragon Day High was taken down by the Emperor Gang in an instant. It's because of Jin Zacian, known as the Pride of Qingbi Mountain, that they can stand undefeated. And your test is to use the Emperor Gang to take down Qingbi. Meanwhile, Wu Yunzi also received news of the Emperor Gang taking over Dragon Day. He was shaking with anger. I can't believe I helped him out considering our past relationship, and he ends up getting beaten for messing with an Emperor Gang executive's girlfriend. That's not even the main issue. The main problem is that the Alliance's power is being eroded by the Emperor Gang. And I'm the one who brought that bastard Du Jianfu into the Alliance. So the main reason is that I caused the Alliance to suffer a defeat it shouldn't have experienced. This might lead to me being held accountable. Thinking about this, Wu Yunzi couldn't contain his anger and beat up everyone in the hallway. Only then did he stand up, preparing to find a way to fix things before the news reached that guy's ears. But just then, the strategist's call came in. Wu Yunzi froze on the spot. He didn't expect what he feared to happen so soon. But given the current situation, he had no choice but to answer the call, suppressing his fear. The voice on the other end said, I've already heard. Are you thinking you might be in trouble for carelessly bringing in an idiot? Wu Yunzi replied, It's not like that. I thought the guy had good fighting skills. He might help improve our combat strength. Meanwhile, his subordinate was confused by the boss's attitude. That so-called strategist seems quite young. He's just someone good at talking. Why is the boss so submissive to him? The strategist said, Well, that can't be helped. After all, you probably didn't expect him to mess with an Emperor Gang executive's girlfriend. But don't you find it strange? Dragon Day is located more inland compared to the other two high schools under the alliance. The Emperor Gang should have started conquering from the front. It seems that's why Park Sukha has been trying to avoid conflicts. But then a reason emerged that forced him to attack Dragon Day. Wu Yunzi thought it was all because of that madman Du Jianfu. But the strategist didn't think so. He asked Wu Yunzi to thoroughly investigate the real reason behind the Emperor Gang's attack. As for the chairman, I'll put in a good word for you. The young man, using his deceased brother's phone, impersonated the gangster emperor of H country. Before he could settle in, his fake identity was exposed. He begged his brother's subordinates to spare him, but the two captains didn't care. Just as he thought he was about to meet his brother in hell, he suddenly woke up, still trembling with fear. And all this was because his brother's girlfriend threatened him to take down Qingbi. If he didn't complete it, she would tell others about Huang Chaomin impersonating the boss. So he had no choice but to personally scout the enemy's situation. After all, this was Jin Zacian's territory, the pride of Qingbi Mountain. Even Huang Wudi couldn't easily conquer it. Therefore, he had to find another entry point. Unexpectedly, Huang Chaomin was stopped by local students after just a few steps. They forcibly took him to a secluded corner for interrogation. Who sent you as a spy? The Alliance or the Emperor Gang? From Huang Xiaomin's school uniform, they knew he wasn't a student from Qingbi High School. The commotion quickly attracted others' attention. The newcomer was Jin Zacian, who narrowed his eyes upon learning this person might be an Alliance spy. Huang Chaomin instantly felt a wave of pressure, breaking out in a cold sweat. The others were preparing to beat him half to death before sending him back. But Jin Zacian thought that was unnecessary, saying one punch would suffice. He then took a punching stance and said, "Remember not to wander around Qingbi in your next life." Huang Chaomin quickly said there were Emperor Gang members who had infiltrated the place. Hearing this, Jin Zacian froze. At this moment, Huang Chaomin breathed a sigh of relief. If he had taken that punch, he might not have survived. But two subordinates were deeply suspicious, thinking this guy was spouting nonsense. Jin Zacian questioned Huang Chaomin. "What do you mean by what you just said?" Huang Chaomin replied, "The Emperor Gang has completely set their sights on Qingbi. To investigate the internal situation, they specifically planted a spy in this school. If you don't believe me, you can check the bathroom on the 3rd floor. If you're lying to me, it won't be as simple as just taking a punch." As expected, they indeed caught an unfamiliar face there. Jin Zacian paused slightly, then turned to ask Huang Chaomin, "Who exactly are you?" Huang Chaomin prepared to reveal part of the truth. He said he could know all the Emperor Gang's movements and wanted to offer some help. It turned out that just now, Huang Chaomin had sent a message to a low-ranking member of the Emperor Gang. He told that member to secretly sneak into the 3rd floor bathroom and wait for instructions. That member probably never imagined he was just being used as a pawn. After stripping off his clothes, they prepared to dispose of him somewhere. Huang Chaomin could then safely walk out of Qingbi. "I never thought that seemingly stupid guy could understand all this. I should have beaten him up earlier to extract this secret. Forget it. After all, we did get some help. Zacian bro, you're not really planning to accept that kid, are you?" Although he seems suspicious, judging from his uniform, he's from Dragon Day High, so he has every reason to be hostile towards the Emperor Gang. After all, his own school was swallowed by the Emperor Gang, and the Emperor Gang's actions must be preparation for launching an offensive. As long as I'm here, I won't let Qingbi fall into chaos again. As for what tricks he might have up his sleeve, let's wait until we've passed this crisis. The first thing Huang Chaomin did after returning was to report his progress to Ma Hili. But instead of praising him, she told him to take action quickly. If the alliance takes Qingbi first, you know the consequences. Huang Chaomin felt very helpless. Who told him to have a weakness in this witch's hands? Meanwhile, the alliance also sent the 10th Squad Captain Zhang Taizhong. On his first day, he pointed out the problem directly. Those Qingbi guys have strong fighting power, but they're just staying put. Don't you think something's off? Hearing this, Pei Donghe fell into deep thought, but he couldn't figure it out, so he threw the question back to the other person. Zhang Taizhong grinned. "You should think for yourself. I'm doing this for your own good." To create a perfect learning environment for his brother, he became an irredeemable scumbag. He not only beat up all the local thugs, but also unified all the delinquents in Qingbi High School. But his actions caused dissatisfaction among others, because he never actively expanded his power, only caring about his brother. All of this was overheard by Huang Chaomin, who had just reached the door. So he went to Qingbi Middle School, and by asking students there, he found Jin Zacian's brother, Jin Taiyang. The other thought Huang Chaomin was his brother's subordinate, so he followed him to the cafeteria. He didn't know this would be his last lunch, because Huang Chaomin had already secretly sent a message to the Emperor Gang. In half an hour, ambush Jin Taiyang in Day District. Next, he just needed to find a reason to bring him there. But Huang Chaomin couldn't help warning him. Don't trust others too easily. Jin Taeyong didn't understand, wondering why he suddenly said this. Huang Chaomin said, "Am I wrong? You're following me without any caution. What if I were your brother's enemy?" Jin Taeyong said, "You know my brother's strength. Even if I got involved in something bad, he could save me." Huang Chaomin said, "What if there were many opponents?" Jin Taeyong said, "That's no big deal. My brother has subordinates too." As they talked, they started arguing about this topic. But no matter what, Jin Taeyong firmly believed his brother would come to save him. After all, he had promised at their father's funeral, "No matter what happens, I will always protect you." And his brother kept his word. Once when I was bullied by classmates, when he learned about it, he rushed over immediately. He beat up all the thugs who bullied me before stopping. At this moment, Huang Chaomin was stunned. Recalling the scene when he asked his brother for help, he clenched his fists. He suddenly felt a bit envious of this kid, but he finally stood up, preparing to take Jin Taeyong to the Emperor Gang's ambush point. After all, his life was in the witch's hands. "If I don't take down Qingbi, I might be the one who dies." In the face of death, no one is selfless. After bringing Jin Taeyong to the agreed location, Huang Chaomin found an excuse to leave. But Jin Taeyong answered the previous question at this moment. "The reason I followed you without caution is that I think you're a good person." Then he bowed to Huang Chaomin to express his gratitude. Just this one sentence made Huang Chaomin change his mind. He started running towards the school with Jin Taeyong, because he realized Jin Zacian's real intention wasn't to play gang games, but to protect his brother's pure and bright nature. Rather than completely destroying the ideal brother relationship, I'd rather choose to lose my head. Meanwhile, Jin Zacian was still working out in the gym, but a subordinate burst in. He told Jin Zacian that Zheng Taizheng had come to Qingbi Middle School. Jin Zacian's face changed instantly. He didn't even put on his jacket properly before rushing towards the school. But he was still a step too late. Huang Chaomin was kicked flying by a man, and behind Jin Taeyong appeared a group of thugs. As expected, Zheng Taizheng easily caught Jin Taeyong, using his phone to send a message to Jin Zacian. "If you want to save your brother, come alone to the location on the map." Jin Taeyong, locked up in a room with several others, still tried to talk tough. Unexpectedly, Zheng Taizheng directly kicked him in the face. Then he grabbed his hair and said, "This time even your brother can't save you. All the strike team members are here. Even a fighting king couldn't beat 50 people. Moreover, you're in our hands. When Jin Zacian comes, he'll have to lie down and let us beat him." A subordinate nearby asked Zheng Taizheng, "What should we do with the remaining one?" Zheng Taizheng said, "Just in case, keep him locked up until the fight is over." Unexpectedly, as soon as they left, Huang Chaomin broke free from his restraints, all thanks to that nail behind him. So he went to Jin Taeyong's side, preparing to remove the tape, but found he was already crying, constantly saying foolish things. Seeing this, Huang Chaomin patted his shoulder and said, "Don't worry, we'll be fine." At this moment, Jin Taeyong stopped crying. Then he went to the door, carefully observing outside, and found it full of people. It was impossible for them to sneak out. "Luckily, I usually carry 2 phones. Otherwise, we'd really be stuck here this time. Now I just need to call the Emperor Gang here under the pretext of capturing Jin Taeyong, and it will cause chaos. Then I can escape with Jin Taeyong." Facing similarly bullied brothers, 2 gangster brothers reacted completely differently. One called his brother useless and threatened, "If you dare say you're my brother, I'll end you myself." The other was willing to drop out of school just to beat up the thugs who bullied his brother. Now to save his kidnapped brother. No matter how they beat him, he didn't fight back, but he was still concerned about his brother's safety. This made the other side even angrier, kicking him to the ground. Jin Zacian stood up, came in front of the other person, and warned, "If you dare touch a hair on Taeyong's head, I'll kill you for sure." This roar scared the man into a cold sweat. So to boost his courage, he ordered everyone to gang up on Jin Zacian. Jin Zacian still didn't fight back. Meanwhile, Huang Chaomin found a win-win solution. Not only could he protect the brotherhood between these two, but also take down Qingbi. That was to call the Emperor Gang here under the pretext of capturing Jin Taeyong, and he would take advantage of their chaos to escape with Jin Taeyong. Unexpectedly, a moment later, someone broke through the ranks and rushed into the container. When he saw the two, he paused slightly and asked, "Which kid is Jin Taeyong?" Neither of them answered. At this moment, a short-haired man came rushing in angrily. But the short-haired man didn't last 2 seconds in his hands, knocked down with one punch. Then he turned his head and saw Jin Taeyong's name written on his school uniform. Just as he was about to grab Jin Taeyong, someone attacked him from behind. He didn't fall, but stood up again. Huang Chaomin was shaking with fear, but still shouted, "Run!" Jin Taeyong immediately sped up. The man tried to stop him, but Huang Chaomin took the chance to lunge at him. He used the steel rod in his hand to choke the man's neck, but it didn't last long before he was thrown off the man's back. Luckily, Jin Taeyong had already run out. but Huang Xiaomin might be in trouble now. At this time, Jin Taiyang was still running non-stop. No matter how tired he was, he didn't stop, because Huang Xiaomin had instructed him, "Your brother might be a strong person, but for your safety, he'll definitely not fight back. So after you get out, you need to let him know you're safe. Although I still have another phone, for certain reasons, I can't use it to make calls. You need to run to the empty lot by Mia building." Meanwhile, the Big Phil Alliance made an offer. Jin Zacian needs to trade one of his legs for his brother's safety. Then he took out a hammer, saying this was a fair deal. To everyone's surprise, Jin Zacian agreed without hesitation. But first, let me confirm Taiyang's safety. Pei Donghe ordered a subordinate, "Make a call to let them know." But for some reason, the other side wasn't answering the phone. At this moment, a voice caught everyone's attention. "Brother, I'm okay." Jin Taiyang waved at the empty lot, indicating he was safe. Pei Donghe immediately ordered 2 subordinates to catch him. Unexpectedly, Jin Zacian rushed over and grabbed one subordinate under each arm. He slammed them hard on the ground, knocking them unconscious. Jin Zacian stood up again, his eyes full of killing intent. Pei Donghe realized the gravity of the situation and instinctively said, "We're done for." On the other side, Huang Xiaomin experienced the terror of the Emperor Gang. Before, he only controlled them through the phone, unaware of their true strength. He didn't expect a single subordinate could easily overpower him. "So my brother had always been above these beasts?" The man said, "If I didn't have to chase Jin Taiyang, you'd be dead today." But Huang Xiaomin didn't want him to leave. Based on what Zheng Taizheng said earlier, only a small part of them went to Jin Zacian's side. If others discover Jin Taiyang is missing, the forces might concentrate on Jin Zacian's side. So he taunted, "Are you running away?" Hearing this, the man froze. He turned back to Huang Xiaomin. "What did you say?" Huang Xiaomin actually repeated, "I asked if you're trying to run away." The man said, "If you're trying to provoke me, congratulations, you've succeeded." Then he charged at Huang Xiaomin. Huang Xiaomin dodged. He reached out to pick up the weapon on the ground, but the other saw it and kicked Huang Xiaomin's butt. Huang Xiaomin was kicked flying. The man said, "You sneaky little bastard, trying to use a weapon against me again. Don't you know that for real men, fists are the way? I'll show you fists harder than iron." After just one round of fighting, Huang Xiaomin was beaten black and blue. The man said, "I don't understand. How dare a rookie like you act so tough? I thought you might have some skills, but you're pathetically weak." Huang Xiaomin still struggled to stand up. The man's words reminded him of his brother. Huang Xiaomin charged at the man again. He used all his strength to push the man onto the nail behind him. By the time the man realized, his butt had been pierced. So he angrily chased after the fleeing Huang Xiaomin. Little did he know he had fallen into Huang Xiaomin's trap. Earlier, when Huang Xiaomin was kicked onto the shelf, it didn't budge. This meant it was unusually heavy. So when Huang Xiaomin fell, he stuck the steel rod into the cabinet. Now he could use leverage to pry open a gap in the shelf. This way, no matter how heavy the shelf was, he could easily push it over. Sure enough, in an instant, countless items fell towards the man. The man stared at the shelf in shock, and the next second was hit by the high shelf, completely losing his ability to move. Huang Xiaomin breathed a sigh of relief. He mocked the man. "What a musclehead. Is there anything harder than iron? Now it's time to reclaim Qingbi." Meanwhile, an unexpected person appeared on the battlefield. It was Guo Zhijiang, the second squad captain of the Emperor Gang. He smiled and greeted Jin Zacian. "What are you doing? There's a rumor in this strength-based school. Never provoke people wearing black jackets, because they're from the most terrifying Emperor Gang." This man is Guo Zhijiang, the second squad captain of the Emperor Gang. Pei Donghe was slightly stunned. He didn't understand why this guy was here. But Guo Zhijiang showed concern for Jin Zacian. This behavior put the other side on guard. Guo Zhijiang quickly explained. He wasn't here to teach Jin Zacian a lesson, but to give him some advice. Before he could speak, Jin Zacian interrupted him. "If you're trying to recruit me into the Emperor Gang, it's too late, because the crisis is over." The next second, a group of Qingbi people appeared in the street. Jin Zacian continued, "So get lost. I don't plan to gang up on someone who didn't come to fight." Guo Zhijiang just smiled and said, "You'll regret it." Then he turned and left. Meanwhile, Pei Donghe turned and ran, showing no intention to fight. The subordinates gathered around, asking about Zacian Bro's condition. A subordinate asked, "Should we chase and kill the enemy?" Jin Zacian replied, "Let that waste go. He should have learned his lesson. With his meager abilities, he can't take down Qingbi." Just as 2 subordinates were helping Jin Zacian back, an unexpected event occurred. A subordinate raised a hammer, attempting to ambush him from behind. However, his shadow had already betrayed him. The next second, Jin Zacian used a back kick to send the subordinate flying. Then Jin Zacian questioned everyone. "What does this mean?" Before they could answer, a voice came from behind. "Do you need to ask? It's betrayal, of course." Zheng Taizheng was seen choking Jin Taiyang. Jin Taeyong had just gone to seek help from the Qingbi crowd. Unexpectedly, they had already betrayed Jin Zacian and joined the Big Phil alliance. Jin Zacian wanted to know when they had such thoughts. They answered, "Since we realized you were just using us to protect your brother. We're not babysitters. We also want to make a name for ourselves in Big Phil. Live a bit more colorfully." These words made Jin Zacian fall into deep thought. He had wanted to do his utmost to prevent the violent atmosphere from infecting Taeyong's environment. Unexpectedly, he ultimately couldn't stop this trend. This was the result Zhang Taizhong had prepared for long ago, to incorporate Qingbi into the Big Phil alliance. He instigated Jin Zacian's subordinates to create some negative public opinion. However, this plan still had a little unexpected situation. The container situation was something Zhang Taizhong hadn't anticipated. He never expected the strike team to handle things well. Moreover, he deliberately locked up that useless guy, which gave Huang Xiaomin the opportunity to act. This way, he could create a situation where Zhang Taizhong used his intelligence to turn the tide when the strike team's mission was about to fail. This was his strategy. After all, up to now, Qingbi was their key position in confronting the Emperor Gang. If he could take down Qingbi by himself, he would gain the strategist's recognition. He said to Jin Taeyong, "Now watch as your proud brother gets beaten by his own subordinates." Jin Zacian could no longer support his injured body and began to sway, but he still refused to give up. He questioned the crowd. "You want to make a name for yourself on the battlefield? Then try if you can take me down." As soon as he finished speaking, his body involuntarily knelt down. Seeing this, Jin Taeyong started crying. He knew his brother couldn't hold on anymore. But the Qingbi crowd still didn't dare to step forward. They thought Jin Zacian would beg for mercy, but didn't expect him to choose to fight. Someone encouraged their companion. "How little does he think of us? He actually wants to fight us all alone," Zhang Taizhong said. "Then show Jin Zacian the terror of Qingbi." Before he finished speaking, Jin Taeyong bit his arm hard. The pain made Zhang Taizhong loosen his right hand. Jin Taeyong ran out and stood in front of his brother. He said, "If anyone dares to touch my brother, I won't let them off easily." He recalled what Huang Xiaomin had said. "This time it's your turn to save your brother," Zhang Taizhong said. "Then I'll send you brothers together. At least you'll have company." Just then, Guo Zhijiang suddenly appeared, kicking away a subordinate in front of him. He thought, "How strange. Everything the boss said came true." Jin Zacian was very confused. "Didn't you leave?" Guo Zhijiang replied, "I just went to the bathroom." Everyone else was in a state of bewilderment. They couldn't understand why Guo Zhijiang was here. Guo Zhijiang said, "Alliance lackey, you might have misunderstood. Qingbi doesn't refer to those cats and dogs. It specifically refers to Jin Zacian alone. Those people are nothing without him. You dare to rebel. You're really overestimating yourselves." The Qingbi people were furious and swung their fists at him. Guo Zhijiang dodged sideways, then punched the attacker's chest, sending him flying. Just then, someone punched Guo Zhijiang from behind, but he felt no pain. Instead grabbed the attacker's head and said arrogantly, "Your ignorance made you recklessly attack, right? Go ahead and brag." Guo Zhijiang of the Emperor Gang took a punch from you. Guo Zhijiang gave him a hard headbutt. Then he threw the white-eyed subordinate away like trash. Looking at the two on the ground, Guo Zhijiang laughed maniacally. "Come on, who's next?" But no one dared to make a move. After all, this guy was Guo Zhijiang, the second squad captain of the Emperor Gang. Guo Zhijiang waved his hand, signaling everyone to come at once. He said, "Doesn't anyone want to create something to brag about? Why did Jin Zacian, the pride of Qingbi Mountain, join the Emperor Gang? Only because Huang Xiaomin revealed the truth to him. The Emperor Gang's boss Huang Wudi was dead, and he was his brother. He was controlling the Emperor Gang using his deceased brother's phone." Huang Xiaomin said, "I'm telling you because you don't favor any faction, and you're someone who extremely cherishes his brother." Jin Zacian said, "I only know the brother is taking the place of his brother. Then what's the reason I must join the Emperor Gang?" Huang Xiaomin said, "For Taeyong, I want to eliminate this annoying battlefield in Big Phil. Make it so neither the Alliance nor the Emperor Gang exist here. But it's hard to advance the plan by continuously deceiving the Emperor Gang executives. So I hope you'll become the fourth squad captain of the Emperor Gang. You'll only nominally join the Emperor Gang. In reality, you'll become my partner." The previous Jin Zacian would immediately reject this proposal, because he could protect Qingbi, but now it's different. Those Qingbi guys were all bought by the Alliance. They betrayed him. Now he also owes Guo Zhijiang a favor. Jin Zacian realized Qingbi couldn't escape the influence of the Alliance and the Emperor Gang. Plus Huang Xiaomin's proposal, he had no reason to refuse. Jin Zacian didn't expect that in the time it took to change clothes, he'd encounter the person who hurt his brother. And that person was the event planner. Although he only ranked 10th, he was still a notable figure in the Alliance. Facing the exhausted Jin Zacian, he wasn't intimidated at all and even had the upper hand. Soon he knocked Jin Zacian to the ground. The two onlookers were very worried. Huang Xiaomin wanted to help, But Jin Taeyong refused, because he firmly believed his brother wouldn't lose. Indeed, when Zheng Taizhong tried to finish him off, Jin Zacian used one hand to support himself and side-kicked him in the face. Then while Zheng Taizhong was down, he slowly stood up. And it was because of this moment's time difference that Zheng Taizhong couldn't dodge Jin Zacian's next attack. He could only take Jin Zacian's full-force punch to the face, flying 10 meters away, only stopping when he hit the wall. After the fight, Jin Zacian complained, "This clothes is a bit tight." But the next second he couldn't support himself anymore, his injured body starting to sway. Seeing this, Jin Taeyong immediately hugged him, supporting his body. Huang Chaomin went to Zheng Taizhong's side, searching for something on his body. Jin Zacian saw this. He thought, Huang Chaomin found a good opportunity to recruit me. He must have known my subordinates would betray when both my brother and I were captured. The reason Huang Chaomin knew was that his two phones were constantly connected. He heard every word Zheng Taizhong said, but Jin Zacian still didn't fully trust Huang Chaomin. However, for long-term benefits, he wouldn't kill the goose that lays the golden eggs. A few days after the rebellion, the Emperor Gang officially held the establishment ceremony for the 4th Squad. But the atmosphere was very strange. No one in the audience applauded. Guo Zhijiang was very confused. He couldn't understand why these guys were reacting this way. At this moment, Park Suk-ha, the 1st Squad captain, came over and said, "Their reaction is normal. Jin Zacian gave us a lot of trouble. Quite a few have been taught a lesson by him. Asking them to accept a former enemy as their captain, it's natural for them to be resistant." Park Suk-ha said to Jin Zacian, "To be honest, I'm also suspicious of your intentions. Why did you decide to join the Emperor Gang? You weren't interested in the chaos before, but now you're stepping into it." The atmosphere instantly became cold and silent. All eyes were focused on the 3 captains. Guo Zhijiang, caught in the middle, felt uncomfortable. He thought, "I shouldn't have hoped everyone would warmly welcome him. Actually, he's quite to my liking." The awkward atmosphere was only relieved when Jin Zacian explained. Jin Zacian said, "I didn't join because I admire you, nor do I intend to make a name in Big Phil. It's just that the boss needs me. I want to see where his path leads, that's all." Hearing this response, the 2 captains were slightly stunned. In the end, Park Suk-ha helped him out. Although he was an enemy before, no one here can deny his ability. For the sake of our cause, we put aside past grudges and welcome talent. As expected of our boss. Since it's his opinion, we have no objections. Welcome to the team. Park Suk-ha extended his right hand. Guo Zhijiang quickly echoed, "Everyone, show some discernment." As the two shook hands, the whole place erupted in applause. And so, Jin Zacian successfully became the 4th Squad captain of the Emperor Gang. Meanwhile, in a bar, the Big Phil Alliance's strategist speculated that Huang Wu-di was no longer in this world. How much must a person hate their brother to ruthlessly destroy what he cherished? But his unusual behavior aroused the suspicion of his brother's former rival. The strategist knew Huang Wu-di wouldn't easily abandon his comrades, yet now he was fighting hard for Dragon Day, which had no strategic significance. Although he successfully took over Dragon Day, the Emperor Gang also suffered heavy casualties. The process seemed more like a cleanup than a conquest. The biggest beneficiaries were the ordinary students who could finally study in peace. Various signs indicated that Huang Wu-di was currently unable to command personally. That fake boss must be using some means to deceive the gang's executives to do his bidding. Hearing this, Wu Yunzi became excited, wanting to seize this opportunity to take down the Emperor Gang, but was sternly refused by the strategist. He also told him to keep this secret for now, because there might be a mole in the alliance. If the news leaked and the Emperor Gang fell into chaos, the alliance might have a chance to strike. But the Emperor Gang's strength couldn't be underestimated. After all, Park Suk-ha, the 1st Squad captain of the Emperor Gang, was no simple character. He was Huang Wu-di's old friend and had strong leadership abilities. He could potentially become the new boss. Why don't we try a safer method? That is to find and eliminate the impersonator behind this. Then take possession of the means to control the Emperor Gang. This way we can manipulate them as we please. What do you think? Isn't it interesting? Wu Yunzi thought the strategist was insane. What do you think of my plan? Isn't it interesting? But Wu Yunzi felt chilled, thinking the strategist was a madman. Meanwhile, on the other side, Huang Chaomin was troubled by the lack of manpower. Because Jin Zacian's strength was formidable, in just 2 weeks, starting from Qingbi, he successfully took over 3 surrounding areas. This meant they would have to step onto the Alliance's territory next. But with their current manpower, it would be difficult to handle. If they really wanted to widen the power gap, they would need to bring in some ace players who could motivate ordinary members. After some thought, Huang Chaomin decided to transfer a few people from the first 2 squads. But this proposal was rejected by the suddenly appearing Ma He-li. She said, "The Emperor Gang isn't a company. Those so-called ace players joined the Emperor Gang because they admired Huang Wu-di. But in the end, Their driving force comes from the loyalty to their respective captains. After all, they've been under his command for so long. Suddenly putting such a group under Jin Zacian's command would only cause resentment, leading to heavy resistance in leadership. This is why new members are assigned to the 4th squad. If we simply define this as a transfer, we'll lose them. So we can only bring in fresh blood. Jin Zacian also agrees with this idea, hoping everyone can help. But this seemingly simple request troubles Huang Xiaomin, because he has too many things to worry about and can't handle it all. But if he wants to deal with the alliance without exposing his identity, he must strengthen the 4th squad. Moreover, Huang Xiaomin has no idea how to find suitable fighting talents. He wasn't watching where he was going while thinking and bumped into someone. Huang Xiaomin came to his senses and looked ahead. He found that the person was Zhang Hisu, who used to bully him. He was also beaten badly by the Emperor gang for bullying Huang Xiaomin. Unexpectedly, he's back at school now. But this guy's fighting ability seems to have been recognized by Guo Zhijiang. How can I get this guy to join the 4th squad? But this might cause resistance from the Emperor gang, right? While Huang Xiaomin was still thinking, Zhang Hisu sent him flying. Huang Xiaomin then remembered. Zhang Hisu was in the hospital recently and doesn't know about the changes in the school. Zhang Hisu said, "Haven't seen you for a few days, Huang Xiaomin. You've got some nerve blocking my way. Plus, I'll settle the score for you pushing Han Changhe from a high place earlier. I'll just beat you until you're half dead." But just then, a hand was placed on Zhang Hisu's shoulder. "Your behavior of beating people up as soon as you arrive is really disgusting. What if he's someone hiding his true strength? What would you do then? He might even be a super expert in Jeet-Kune-Do. I'm afraid of encountering such things. That's why I don't dare to beat people up." But Zhang Hisu was very confused. He didn't know who this guy in front of him was. The white-haired guy pressed his forehead against Zhang Hisu's, saying arrogantly, "I'm a new transfer student. Do you have a problem with that?" This scene quickly attracted a crowd of onlookers. They were all discussing who would win. Zhang Hisu felt he lost face and attacked first. But unexpectedly, the other person wasn't simple. The white-haired guy dodged the punch and landed one on his face. With just one punch, Zhang Hisu was knocked unconscious. But the first gang's people arrived at this time, wanting to take down the white-haired guy with numbers. The white-haired guy felt helpless, covered his head and sighed. Even new transfer students shouldn't be provoked easily. Don't you guys read manga? Then he beckoned with his finger, signaling them to come at him together. The transfer student angered the school bully on his first day. They agreed to meet at the bridge underpass after school, but he wasn't worried at all, and even cheerfully arrived at the agreed location. With one sentence, he scared the school bully into running away. It turned out that Jin Lichun didn't like Zhang Hisu bullying classmates, so he taught him a lesson. But this action angered the first gang. If the school bell hadn't rung just in time, he might not have escaped. When Jin Lichun arrived at his new class, the atmosphere was very strange. So he proactively made a joke, trying to liven up the atmosphere. But he was the only one laughing in the entire classroom. Everyone else had a stern face. No one laughed. Since you don't like jokes, let me ask a more serious question. Does anyone know where Huang Wudi is? As soon as he said this, everyone was shocked. Even Huang Xiaomin was very surprised. Just as Jin Lichun was about to ask more, the teacher interrupted him, saying, "Personal questions can be asked later. Is any student willing to be Jin Lichun's campus guide today?" No one was willing. The teacher was about to randomly pick a lucky student. At this moment, Huang Xiaomin volunteered, taking on this task, because he felt it necessary to understand Jin Lichun. After all, the person he was looking for was his own brother. As soon as class was over, Jin Lichun prepared to invite Huang Xiaomin to eat bread at the school store. Huang Xiaomin wanted to use this opportunity to probe the other's purpose in looking for Huang Wudi, but just as he was about to speak, he felt someone push him from behind. The next second, Huang Xiaomin lost control and fell towards the stairs. Luckily, Jin Lichun caught him in time. Jin Lichun's eyes glanced to the side, questioning whether the other person knew this could cause someone to fall down the stairs. The newcomer was Du Jianfu, the leader of the first gang who was looking for trouble. When Huang Xiaomin saw him, he quietly informed Jin Lichun. But he wasn't intimidated at all, instead telling Du Jianfu to apologize quickly. Du Jianfu's two henchmen sneered. Han Changhe even mocked. "Huang Xiaomin, have you completely sided with the transfer student?" This angered Jin Lichun, who walked up to Han and said, "You watermelon-headed shorty actually standing with them. How rare." Du Jianfu said, "If you want me to apologize, come to the underpass of Jiachuan Bridge after school." Then they turned and left. Seeing that they hadn't learned their lesson, Huang Xiaomin wanted to find an opportunity to call people to teach them another lesson. But unexpectedly, Jin Lichun was eager for battle, wanting to go to the underpass right away. Huang Xiaomin hurriedly tried to stop him. He said, "They'll play dirty. No need to bother with them." Jin Lichun said, "If that's the case, then I have to go even more." The reason he was like this was because of something that happened 2 years ago. At that time, My friend just accidentally bumped his shoulder. As a result, everyone present was beaten up by him. I was so scared I knelt and begged, barely escaping. But from that day on, I was determined to get revenge. And from now on, I'll never bow to evil people again. So no matter who he is, I won't run away. Huang Chaomin felt very troubled. How many bad things did his brother do when he was alive to make people from other areas come to kill him? After school, Jin Le-chun went to the agreed location. The first gang people decided to teach him a lesson together. But luckily they didn't do that. Instead, they first asked about his background. After all, it was too outrageous for a new student to be looking for Huang Wudi on the first day. If the new student was playing dirty, the Emperor gang hiding up high would intervene. Because Huang Chaomin asked Jin Zacian to pay a little attention to the new student. Huang Chaomin said, "Maybe that guy will become our ally. If not, we can't let him keep looking for a deceased enemy." Jin Le-chun's first words were deadly. It turned out that the Big Phil Alliance's strategist told him he could find Huang Wudi if he came to Dragon Day. At first, everyone thought he was bluffing. Until he described the strategist's appearance, Du Jinfu broke out in a cold sweat. He had heard about this from Wu Yunzi before. The strategist's identity was very secretive within the alliance. Few people knew about it. Unexpectedly, this transfer student actually knew him. Jin Le-chun didn't intend to explain, just told everyone to come at him. He said, "I won't go easy on you just because you're seniors." Du Jinfu quickly stopped his subordinates from rushing to teach the new student a lesson. Du Jinfu told his men to follow him and not ask questions they shouldn't. In the end, only Jin Le-chun was left looking confused. He didn't expect that the guy who looked like a weakling was actually a big shot. Just his name was enough to scare them into running away. The young man was beaten badly in middle school, so he was determined to get revenge. And he vowed never to bow to evil people again. But after Jin Le-chun got stronger, he could no longer find that guy in the dragon pattern jacket. The strategist approached Jin Le-chun, telling him that man was called Huang Wudi. Huang Wudi was the boss of the Emperor Gang, one of the strongest groups in Big Phil. The strategist said, "If you want to find him, you must transfer to Dragon Day." As a result, on Jin Le-chun's first day of transfer, he got into conflict with the local school bully. If it weren't for the strategist's reputation, this conflict couldn't have been avoided. Even so, his performance still caught many people's attention, including Jin Zacian, the 4th squad captain of the Emperor Gang. That night he told Huang Chaomin everything. He couldn't hear clearly what Jin Le-chun and Du Jinfu were talking about because of the distance, but he could guess the general situation. Rather than Du Jinfu letting the transfer student go, it seemed more like he was scared into fleeing. After saying this, he hung up the phone, but Huang Chaomin couldn't calm down for a long time. Ma Healy thought there was no need to be so serious about this. Huang Chaomin said this matter wasn't simple. Du Jinfu wouldn't be scared away when he had the numerical advantage, but he just left after saying a few words to Jin Le-chun. This means something scared him, and besides the Emperor Gang, it could only be the Alliance. Ma Healy asked, "Are you saying Jin Le-chun is associated with the Alliance?" Meanwhile, on the other side, things went as expected. At this moment, Jin Le-chun was sharing today's events with Liu Shangcai, making Liu Shangcai can't help but mock him for being a delinquent. Jin Le-chun was speechless for a moment, so he changed the subject, praising Liu Shangcai. "You're pretty amazing. Just your name was enough to scare that leader away." Liu Shangcai said, "They're just afraid of offending the Alliance. After all, there was conflict before. By the way, haven't you found the person who knows Huang Wudi's whereabouts yet?" Jin Le-chun replied, "Don't worry, it's only the first day. I'll definitely find him." Liu Shangcai continued, "He must be very curious about who you know, right?" This question left Jin Le-chun confused, but Liu Shangcai didn't explain. After Jin Le-chun returned to school, Huang Chaomin tried to get information from him. He asked if he knew anyone in Big Phil. After all, it's unlikely to go to an unfamiliar place for revenge. Jin Le-chun was careless about this and easily revealed information. When Huang Chaomin heard about the Big Phil Alliance's strategist, he was slightly stunned. After all, Ma Healy had mentioned him before, calling him smart and ruthless. This made Huang Chaomin form a terrible guess. The strategist might have deduced that the fake boss was in Dragon Day, and was using the unknowing Jin Le-chun to intimidate someone in Dragon Day. If this continues, his list of suspects will definitely get smaller and smaller. At this point, Huang Chaomin decided to confront the situation head-on. He asked Jin Le-chun if he could meet the strategist. Meanwhile, Liu Shangcai was sitting in a Maybach. The driver kept flattering him, trying to leave a good impression on the young master. Liu Shangcai could tell at a glance that this uncle was new, so he kindly reminded him, "My parents like quiet people. It doesn't matter in front of me, but you'd better be careful in front of them. I can understand you. After all, people are always interested in those who exist in a different world from themselves." After saying this, he looked at his phone. Jin Le-chun had sent a message asking if he was free today. Liu Shangcai didn't rush to reply, but started summarizing his plan in his mind. He successfully concealed the news that Huang Wudi was no longer in this world, and used Jan Luchun's desire for revenge to place him in Dragon Day. He predicted Jin Luchun would clash with the thugs. Du Jinfu didn't disappoint him, indeed provoking Jin Luchun. By now, the news about Jin Luchun being associated with the Alliance's strategist has probably spread. If there's someone impersonating the boss in Dragon Day, they'll surely guess his intention of using Jin Luchun to divert suspicion. Then this person will definitely react. Things were going exactly as he had guessed. After just one day, someone wanted to meet him. Can you believe this teacher's good student is actually the ruthless strategist of the Black Gang? Under his command, the defeated Big Phil Alliance could actually contend with the Emperor Gang. Now he has concluded that someone is impersonating Huang Wudi. To force out the impersonator, he chose to meet with the suspect privately. Meanwhile, Huang Chaomin contacted Jin Zaixian, hoping he would find people to capture the strategist. When Huang Chaomin first saw the strategist, he was slightly stunned. He didn't expect the other person to be not only his age, but also attending the best local experimental academy. At first, Huang Chaomin suspected he was a body double, but Jin Luchun obviously knew him. Just as he didn't know what to do, Jin Luchun suddenly stood up, saying he wanted to go to the bathroom. He said, "You guys talk first." But after he left, the atmosphere immediately became awkward. Liu Shangcai got straight to the point. "I don't know if you're aware. Although I'm the Alliance's strategist, I don't operate on the front lines. So I try not to expose my identity. Can you guess why?" Huang Chaomin stammered. "Because you don't want to become a target of the Emperor Gang." Liu Shangcai said, "I didn't expect you to understand so well. Those trying to find out my identity are mostly from the Emperor Gang's side." He then asked Huang Chaomin, "Why did you want to see me? Do you also want to eliminate me?" Just then, a group of people surrounded them. Liu Shangcai wasn't panicked at all, a strange smile appearing on his face. He thought to himself, "What a fool. This way, can't I confirm that you're the impersonating boss?" Meanwhile, nearby customers slowly approached. It turned out that to prevent this situation, Liu Shangcai had arranged Alliance people here in advance, but he didn't choose to expose his identity. Instead, he instructed them to attack only after discovering Emperor Gang people. Just as Liu Shangcai thought the game was over, the Emperor Gang people actually hit Huang Chaomin, leaving him stunned. They questioned, "Do you know you violated the Emperor Gang's policy by causing conflict in school without permission? And that guy who came with you, he needs to be punished too." Meanwhile, Jin Lichun had just finished using the bathroom and saw this scene, burning with anger. He wanted to rush over and finish them off. But before he could act, a group of people rushed in, clashing with the Emperor Gang. If Liu Shangcai hadn't called out to him, Jin Lichun would probably still be standing there watching. He was surprised to find that the rumors about the Emperor Gang disciplining Dragon Day were actually true. It turns out that the order Huang Chaomin sent earlier wasn't to capture the strategist, but to punish Jin Luchun and his classmate for causing conflict at school, because he wanted to resolve the strategist issue without raising suspicion from either the Emperor Gang or the Alliance, achieving a perfect victory. This made Jin Zaixian, hiding in the shadows, admit he couldn't match up. "Huang Chaomin, how amazing are you?" Meanwhile, Huang Chaomin took the initiative. "Let's see who's smarter. Didn't you ask why I wanted to meet you? Because I'm Huang Wudi's brother." In his first confrontation with the strategist, Huang Chaomin chose to reveal the truth. Not only did he disclose that his brother was Huang Wudi, but also stated that he had recently died in a car accident. At this moment, Jin Lichun said goodbye early due to his part-time job. The atmosphere between the two instantly became ice cold. After all, the reason Liu Shangcai revealed his identity to Huang Chaomin was because he suspected that if he was the fake boss, he wouldn't easily let the Big Phil Alliance's strategist go. So he planned to deal with the prearranged people after the Emperor Gang appeared. As a result, the person the Emperor Gang was looking for wasn't him, but Jin Lichun. This surprised him, but even so, there were still two possibilities. One is that Huang Chaomin is really his fan. Two is that he's extremely clever. It doesn't matter which reason, after all, he's just an ordinary student. Later, I'll have someone capture him and interrogate him directly. Just as the two were about to say goodbye, Huang Chaomin revealed the truth. This slightly stunned Liu Shangcai. He didn't know what the other's purpose was in doing this. Huang Chaomin explained that Jin Lichun was a good person. He didn't want him to continue seeking revenge on a deceased person. He was worried this would cause a misunderstanding between Liu Shangcai and Jin Lichun. After all, Jin Lichun came to Big Phil because he trusted Liu Shangcai. Therefore, Huang Chaomin wanted to meet him. At first, I was worried you might look fierce, so I wasn't going to say anything. But after meeting, I found you have some common sense. So he hoped Liu Shangcai could understand his meaning. If he wants to continue playing the role of a smiling genius, he must tell Jin Lichun everything. Losing Jin Lichun means he loses his means of investigating in Dragon Day. "So, strategist, what do you plan to do?" Unexpectedly, the other person said, Jin Lichun had already guessed that Huang Wudi was no longer in this world. He said this to find the fake boss impersonating Huang Wudi. When Huang Chaoman heard this, he broke out in a cold sweat. He thought Liu Shangcai was indeed looking for him, but he still chose to pretend he understood while actually being confused. But Liu Shangcai patiently explained that the current Emperor gang doesn't know someone is impersonating the boss. So he wants to find that person behind their backs and seize the means of control. He hoped Huang Chaoman would also pretend not to know. However, Huang Chaoman saw through Liu Shangcai's lie at a glance. Because Jin Lichun couldn't possibly know about this, but since Liu Shangcai had instructed him like this, if he still told Jin Lichun the truth, his intention to hinder the investigation would be exposed. Liu Shangcai said, "But I'm curious why you didn't hold a funeral for Huang Wudi." Hearing this, Huang Chaoman broke out in a cold sweat, not expecting the other to still suspect him. But he quickly reacted, saying it was because he had no money for a funeral. Although this reason was far-fetched, as long as Liu Shangcai didn't know about the phone's existence, he couldn't do anything to him. However, Huang Chaoman soon realized something was wrong. If the alliance attacked him, the Emperor gang would be leaderless. The executives would surely notice something was off, and he would become useless. And once he lost his usefulness, the witch would surely abandon him mercilessly. So I must protect my own safety. From this perspective, Huang Chaoman felt lucky that Liu Shangcai was planning these things behind everyone's back. As long as he could eliminate that suspicious look in his eyes, he would be safe. However, Liu Shangcai had to go home early for some reason. Before leaving, he called out to Huang Chaoman, wanting to add contact information to talk more later. Only after Liu Shangcai left did Huang Chaoman start summarizing. He couldn't help but doubt whether showing his face to the strategist was really correct. After all, this might cause him to stand out among the many students in Dragon Day. But this meeting allowed him to understand the strategist's character. Next, he needs to focus on how he will act. Meanwhile, Liu Shangcai was also reflecting on everything that happened today. If Huang Chaoman really was the boss impersonator, he wouldn't need to confess that he was Huang Wudi's brother. And his words had another layer of meaning. If I act against him indiscriminately, then I'd really be the ignorant one. Thinking of this, Liu Shangcai couldn't help but laugh out loud. This startled the driver in front. Seeing his maniacal smile, how interesting, he's just a student. If that's the case, I'll politely spar with you for a few rounds. The woman tried to use her charms to drive a wedge between the iron-hearted man and his brothers. But not only did he not realize, he even called friends to help. Little did he know, Huang Chaoman was her accomplice. Huang Chaoman was quite troubled at this moment. Due to the difficulty in dealing with the strategist, using the Emperor gang would surely raise suspicion. But what if he let Jin Lichun attack the strategist? Just as he was hesitating whether to adopt this plan, Ma Healy called, saying she had arranged to meet with Jin Lichun. It turned out she had bumped into Jin Lichun on the street and proactively added his contact to arrange a meeting. The reason she did this was because Huang Chaoman had mentioned Jin Lichun to her before. Even if she couldn't persuade Jin Lichun to kill the strategist, she could still get information through him. But Jin Lichun was blushing at this moment. After all, this was the first time a girl had approached him proactively. He suspected if this might be some kind of plot, but his hands uncontrollably clicked on her profile picture. Looking at her selfie, Jin Lichun fell into self-doubt. Could it be that his looks were very popular in Big Phil? But thinking of his brother lying in the hospital bed, he threw away his phone. His purpose in coming to Big Phil was to get revenge for his brothers. But now he was infatuated because of a woman. How useless. But this thought didn't last half a second before he justified it to himself. This is a trial on my path of righteousness, it must be. I absolutely can't back down. So the scene from the beginning occurred. Jin Lichun dragging Huang Chaoman to the appointment. Huang Chaoman thought to himself, how can there be a fool who brings a friend on a date? Clearly Jin Lichun was only good at fighting, still a novice when it came to love. But he still praised Jin Lichun, saying it was amazing that a girl asked for his number. Someone like him wouldn't even dare to think about it. Hearing this, Jin Lichun leaned close to Huang Xiaomin's ear and said, I also think it's suspicious, suddenly asking for my contact and saying she wants to date. Could it be some new type of scam? Help me observe later. See if she really likes me. Hearing this, Huang Chaoman swallowed nervously. He didn't expect Jin Lichun to be so sharp in matters of feelings. But just as they finished discussing, Ma Healy arrived at the meeting point. Huang Chaoman was slightly stunned when he saw her. Is this Ma Healy in sincere mode? Jin Lichun was so excited he accidentally sat down on the ground. Ma Healy outwardly asked Jin Lichun, who's this friend? But secretly, she was communicating with Huang Chaoman. What are you doing? Why are you interfering in this? But Huang Chaoman was also helpless, telling her not to worry. I'll find an opportunity to leave. Only the naive Jin Lichun was introducing his friend. After he finished introducing, the two started their date. Huang Chaoman secretly observed them from behind. He found that although Jin Lichun really liked Ma Healy, he still hadn't let his guard down. In other words, his task today was to find evidence proving Ma Hili liked Jin Luchun. In other words, he had to find Jin Luchun's good points. So they went to the cinema. After all, to show a man's charm, that move was necessary. But the horror movie didn't scare Ma Hili at all. She found it boring instead. But she chose to pretend to be scared, wanting Jin Luchun to protect her. As a result, he fainted from fear. No matter how Huang Chaomin called, he couldn't wake him up. Next, they went to a photo studio to take headshots. But Jin Luchun actually had camera phobia, breaking out in a cold sweat. Even when eating, he couldn't handle any spice, or he'd pass out on the spot. So they had no choice but to go to a karaoke place to sing. But Jin Luchun got some unknown illness and went to the bathroom to vomit. And Ma Hili's performance made him suspicious. After all, he hadn't done anything today to make her like him. But she didn't plan to go home, instead smiling at him. She must have other intentions. This made Huang Chaomin can't help but complain. This guy is useless except for fighting. If this continues, not only will he be unable to accept Ma Hili's advances, but he'll become even more suspicious. However, Huang Chaomin remembered Jin Luchun's only strong point, which was fighting. So he went to the next room and deliberately provoked the thugs there, telling them to come to room 6 if they had a problem, then left. But Jin Luchun wanted to go home early because of stomach pain. Just then, the door was pushed open. Which bastard came to my room to provoke us? At this moment, Huang Chaomin thought Jin Luchun could finally show off his best skill. The next second he couldn't laugh anymore. The newcomer was actually Gui Zhijiang, the second squad captain of the Emperor Gang. He came to Ma Hili with a fierce look, questioning why she was here with 2 men. Are you cheating? The two were scared into a cold sweat. They didn't expect Gui Zhijiang to appear here. It seems they're in big trouble this time. Jin Luchun was about to face his first battle in Big Phil, but his opponent was Gui Zhijiang, the second squad captain of the Emperor Gang. It turned out that to showcase Jin Luchun's fighting skills, Huang Chaomin had deliberately gone to the next room to provoke the thugs, telling them to come to room 6 if they had a problem. The angry thugs were about to go over to settle the score, but they ran into Gui Zhijiang, who had just finished using the bathroom. After inquiring, Gui Zhijiang learned that someone had suddenly burst in to provoke his subordinates while he was away. Gui Zhijiang was immediately enraged and went to room 6 alone, because the Emperor Gang had a rule that people not wearing jackets weren't allowed to fight. Unexpectedly, he met the boss's girlfriend Ma Hili. She was sitting with 2 men, so Gui Zhijiang questioned her. Are you cheating? Jin Luchun noticed the other's dragon pattern jacket and immediately stood in front of the two, because he thought Ma Hili couldn't possibly be associated with the Emperor Gang. This was just the delusion of the guy in front of him. Gui Zhijiang was amused by this statement, but for various reasons he couldn't explain. He could only question Ma Hili. Unexpectedly, Jin Luchun made the first move, warning the other not to yell at her. This scene left Huang Chaomin stunned, not knowing what to do. Gui Zhijiang, who was punched, didn't plan to fight back at first because he hadn't figured out the situation. But Jin Luchun taunted him, not only calling him trash, but also saying the boss was trash. Gui Zhijiang finally couldn't tolerate it anymore. You bastard, do you want to die? Then he charged at Jin Luchun, but this punch was blocked by Jin Luchun with both hands. Seeing this, Huang Chaomin wanted to persuade Ma Hili to leave first, but she wanted to use this opportunity to test Jin Luchun's fighting ability, to see how many seconds he could last against Gui Zhijiang. As expected, Jin Luchun fell behind after less than 3 rounds. He was kicked by Gui Zhijiang. Seeing Gui Zhijiang's attack coming again, Jin Luchun played a trick, quickly taking off his jacket and throwing it at him, then taking the chance to punch him again. After hitting, he taunted. How's that? Gui Zhijiang didn't care about this at all, instead praising the other for being cute. The two exchanged blows for several rounds. Except for the 2 punches that hit with a sneak attack, Jin Luchun couldn't hit the other again, being pressured the whole time. He started to doubt himself. What's up with this guy? Completely different from how he looks, his attacks are quite vicious. He's on a completely different level from those guys at Dragon Day. He must be from the Emperor Gang. Jin Luchun was beaten to the point where he could only block with both hands, with no chance to counterattack. Ma Hili couldn't help but complain. Did I set my expectations too high? Why is his performance so poor? Well, it's indeed too much for him to deal with a captain-level opponent. Huang Chaomin's mood was completely different. He was silently cheering for Jin Luchun in his heart. Although I'm using the Emperor Gang, I want to cheer for you. Don't be defeated by Huang Wudi's subordinate. At this moment, Jin Luchun was also very unwilling. Internally, he was frantically encouraging himself. I won't lose. The next second, Gui Zhijiang's fist smashed into his face, but Jin Luchun didn't pass out. Instead, he grabbed a table and smashed it hard towards the opponent. The situation instantly reversed. Huang Chaomin was excited. He didn't expect him to actually defeat Gui Zhijiang, so he went forward to flatter him. but Jin Luchun awkwardly scratched his head. After all, he knew he only won by using a weapon. Ma Hili's face remained cold, because he was a man who had reached the captain position very early. In the Emperor Gang, he was known as Guo Zhijiang the Fighting Demon. How could Jin Luchun possibly defeat him? The next second, Guo Zhijiang stood up. "You're quite sneaky, kid. You deliberately gave up defense earlier to let me attack your face. Then you plan to secretly throw the table, right? If you think you can beat me with such tactics, you're daydreaming. Come on, let's continue. You're going to have a very enjoyable time with me today." At this moment, Jin Luchun could precisely feel that aura. He confirmed that Guo Zhijiang was definitely a madman. He couldn't possibly win against him. The man came to a strange city for revenge, but he found he couldn't even beat one of the opponent's subordinates. Although he used various underhanded methods in the fight, he still couldn't defeat Guo Zhijiang, the second squad captain of the Emperor Gang. He was even intimidated by that aura. If it weren't for Huang Chaomin timely impersonating the boss to send a message calling Guo Zhijiang away, Jin Luchun's defeat would have been inevitable. Before leaving, Guo Zhijiang looked at Ma Hili, telling her to explain to the boss herself why she was with enemies, then turned and left. But Jin Luchun called out to him, asking him to at least leave his name before going. This action displeased the two subordinates. Guo Zhijiang didn't mind telling Jin Luchun his name, but except for today's coincidence, a guy like you won't have the chance to meet me alone, so you don't need to remember my name. After they left, Jin Luchun couldn't calm down for a long time, but Ma Hili asked him where he wanted to play next. This slightly stunned Jin Luchun, and Huang Chaomin was also confused. So the two quietly discussed. After all, normal people would usually want to go home immediately in this situation. Seeing Jin Luchun was unwilling, Ma Hili didn't insist. She just handed him some medicine for external injuries, telling him to at least take this. Jin Luchun awkwardly scratched his head, not knowing what to say. Ma Hili said, "You don't need to thank me. I should be the one thanking you. After all, you were fighting while protecting me just now, right?" Huang Chaomin suddenly realized. So Jin Luchun was dealing with Guo Zhijiang under unfavorable conditions, and Ma Hili had taken advantage of this point. Jin Luchun blushed at these words. He didn't expect her to notice. In reality, everything Ma Hili did was just to seduce Jin Luchun, so she tried every way to make him stay and play a bit longer. Huang Chaomin had to admire Ma Hili. She was indeed an expert at seducing people. He originally thought Jin Luchun would completely fall for it. Unexpectedly, he firmly refused the proposal. After saying sorry, he left without looking back, but his hands were still trembling, because he also wanted to stay with everyone. But he knew in his heart that he couldn't relax anymore. Although the fighting conditions just now were unfavorable to him, Jin Luchun couldn't allow himself to be overwhelmed without any chance to fight back. His eyes became determined, without a trace of regret. "Since I'm like a frog in a well, I need to work hard to improve myself to adapt to the new environment." Huang Chaomin still couldn't believe that Jin Luchun had given up the chance to continue dating. Ma Hili snorted coldly, saying, "This is why I said guys who are desperate for fighting are no good." Hearing this, Huang Chaomin couldn't help but tease her. But Ma Hili stubbornly said she didn't expect to succeed in one day. Huang Chaomin said, "But still, you worked hard today." Ma Hili replied, "It's nothing. I haven't been this happy for a long time. If there's nothing else, I'll head back first." These words slightly stunned Huang Chaomin. He wondered if he had ever truly understood Ma Hili. Before Huang Chaomin could think more, he received a text message. After checking, he found it was from the strategist, asking if he could spare some time to talk. Huang Chaomin didn't expect the strategist to want to meet alone. He secretly speculated what kind of plot was behind this. He noticed the strategist wasn't asking when he had time, but directly asking if he could make time. What an arrogant guy. So he considered whether it would be better to refuse the meeting to avoid conflict. But as the risk increases, the chance of getting his weakness also rises. Just as Huang Chaomin was thinking of countermeasures, he heard a slap from the next street. Out of curiosity, he wanted to see what happened. He found the person being disciplined was Ma Hili, who had just parted with him. He didn't expect the usually arrogant witch to end up in such a situation. This scene slightly stunned Huang Chaomin. Through their conversation, he learned what happened. They dared to lay hands on her because Ma Hili's brother had become a vegetable. Before leaving, they warned Ma Hili, "Next time, remember not to dress so provocatively." Huang Chaomin watched them leave, wanting to have the Emperor Gang teach them a lesson. But he was stopped by Ma Hili, who suddenly appeared and asked him to take her home. Although Huang Chaomin was very confused, he chose to agree. Ma Hili's family situation was beyond his expectations. He originally thought Ma Hili must be a rich young lady. Unexpectedly, it was similar to his own, or even a bit worse. Ma Hili seemed to see through Huang Chaomin's thoughts. She explained that she had to bear her brother's medical expenses, so she moved here. This made Huang Chaomin feel guilty. After all, this was all caused by his brother. So, Huang Xiaomin asked Ma Hili who those girls bullying her were. Ma Hili didn't care about it and told him the whole story. At that time, Hong Bomei and their group liked a boy and wanted to confess to him. But unexpectedly, that boy approached her. But not to confess as she had guessed. Instead, he wanted Ma Hili's contact information. Out of jealousy, Hong Bomei claimed she wasn't close with Ma Hili. Seeing he couldn't get the information he wanted, the boy left. Since then, Ma Hili became the target of their hatred and pranks. At first, Ma Hili didn't care. But things gradually went beyond her tolerance. They even spread rumors publicly and sent messages to others. When Ma Hili found out, she angrily slapped the other person. The entire classroom suddenly fell silent. Everyone's eyes turned to this side. At this moment, tears fell from Ma Hili's eyes as she questioned. "It was you who slandered me, right?" Hong Bomei didn't deny it, saying, "What's wrong? Don't you like seducing people? I'm just doing some self-promotion for you, so you can find a rich guy faster." Hearing Hong Bomei's words, Ma Hili instantly broke down. She wanted to slap her again, but her raised hand was firmly grabbed by Hong Bomei's boyfriend. He dragged Ma Hili away, intending to teach her a lesson. But just as they reached the classroom door, he was kicked flying. The newcomer was Ma Hili's brother. As soon as he arrived, he intimidated everyone and scolded Hong Bomei. Since then, she didn't dare to provoke me again. Until she learned my brother had become a vegetable, she returned to her old ways. After hearing this story, Huang Xiaomin couldn't tolerate it anymore and immediately took out his phone. But Ma Hili stopped him. "Even if I'm bullied, I don't want to call my brother for help, let alone use the Emperor Gang's power. So you'd better forget everything you saw today. This is my own business. You just need to find a way to catch the strategist." But even so, Huang Xiaomin still didn't let it go. Instead, he prepared to let Hong Bomei see what real bullying is. Early the next morning, Guo Zhijiang appeared at the gate of their school, trying to find out Hong Bomei's whereabouts by asking others. To get revenge on Hong Bomei, Huang Xiaomin asked Ma Hili for all the information about Guo Zhijiang, including his preferred type, and Hong Bomei happened to be just his type. So, Huang Xiaomin had Jin Zaxian pass on a false message to him, claiming the girl in the photo liked him. Upon hearing this, Guo Zhijiang immediately came to Beiqian Girls' High School, wanting a nearby girl to pass a message to Hong Bomei, saying someone was waiting for her at the school gate. Meanwhile, Hong Bomei was bullying a girl. Just because she didn't buy coffee, she poured a whole bottle of milk on her. She even used a mop to wash the other's face, only leaving the girl's bathroom after she was satisfied with the bullying. On the way back to the classroom, Li Xiaowu asked Hong Bomei, "How's it going with Yuan Zhong lately? Have you won him over?" Hong Bomei said, "If that guy wasn't a bit handsome, I wouldn't bother seducing him. I'm tired of acting like a lady these days, but there should be results soon." Just as the three were discussing enthusiastically, a girl came to tell Hong Bomei that a guy was looking for her at the school gate. Hong Bomei proudly showed off her achievement to her two sisters. However, when she arrived at the school gate, she froze. The person wasn't her brother Yuan Zhong, but a fierce-looking man. She instinctively stepped back, mustering up courage to ask his identity. Guo Zhijiang bluntly asked, "Don't you like me?" Hong Bomei immediately broke into a cold sweat. "You seem to have a misunderstanding." The two girlfriends peeking from the side were also scared. They didn't expect Hong Bomei to know such a person. Seeing their reaction, Hong Bomei realized they misunderstood. So she directly told Guo Zhijiang to shut up and not say anymore. Hong Bomei shouted, "Your delusions should have limits. How could I possibly like a thug like you? Get lost quickly." After saying this, she turned and left. But Hong Bomei didn't know that her nightmare was just beginning. Huang Xiaomin had set her character as tsundere. Even if she liked someone very much, she would always say she hated them. And Guo Zhijiang was the type of rough man who would persistently pursue even if rejected. The more she hated him, the more spirited Guo Zhijiang became. Early the next morning, the class had already started discussing Hong Bomei's situation. Her girlfriend reminded her to quickly go to the school store. By now the school store was already crowded with onlookers. When Hong Bomei squeezed through the crowd and saw the scene in front of her, her eyes narrowed slightly. It was Guo Zhijiang. He wanted to buy all the coffee in the school store, but the auntie insisted on not selling to outsiders. Seeing Hong Bomei, Guo Zhijiang came up with a solution. Let her come buy it, and he'll pay. After all, that lady said she wouldn't sell, and I can't just rob it. Hong Bomei was very confused about this, asking who he was and why he was doing this. Guo Zhijiang couldn't help but complain. "You've set up your character too extremely. You don't even know Guo Zhijiang from the Emperor Gang. Of course I want your contact information. After all, I really like your arrogant look." Seeing his crazy look, Hong Bomei completely panicked. She thought to herself, if useless rumors spread about her with this kind of person, she might never be able to maintain ambiguity with brother Yuan Zhong again. So, she decided to temporarily ease relations with Guo Zhijiang and gave him her contact information, telling him not to come to school anymore. but she still couldn't figure out how she got entangled with this kind of guy. How crazy Guo Zijiang was after falling in love. He actually found Hong Bomei's love interest, beat him up, and took his phone. When Hong Bomei heard this news, her face instantly turned ashen. She had just boasted to her girlfriends that she was about to win over brother Yuan Zhong. Now she was told he had been beaten up. Guo Zijiang even promised Yuan Zhong would never appear in front of her again. What's more terrifying was that Guo Zijiang appeared at her house's doorstep. Hong Bomei was so angry she smashed her phone on the ground. She had finally hooked up with a handsome guy, but it was ruined. She thought, I must get revenge, make you as miserable as me. So, she dialed her ex-boyfriend's number, wanting him to come help kill Guo Zijiang. As long as you can do this, I'll agree to anything you say. Hearing Hong Bomei's words, Pei Yuanqi couldn't help but smile evilly. You said it. After hanging up, Hong Bomei went downstairs to find Guo Zijiang, asking him to accompany her to Substitute Emotion Lake. After reaching the destination, Hong Bomei finally asked the question that had been bothering her. Where exactly did you see me? Guo Zijiang looked confused. Shouldn't I be the one asking where you saw me? After all, I heard you fell in love with me at first sight. Hong Bomei's jaw dropped as she cursed. Which bastard spread this rumor? But Guo Zijiang mistakenly thought Hong Bomei was just being shy, so she said these things. Little did he know, she had already decided to kill him, just waiting for her ex-boyfriend to arrive. So, she changed the subject, asking Guo Zijiang about his clothes. Guo Zijiang proudly answered, This dragon pattern jacket is the symbol of the Emperor Gang, don't you think it's cool? He kept praising the boss like a fanboy, making Hong Bomei speechless. She didn't know what he was talking about. She only knew that Guo Zijiang greatly admired that man called the boss. When Hong Bomei asked if Guo Zijiang liked the boss, Guo Zijiang answered without hesitation, Of course. After all, he's the first person I've sincerely wanted to follow. In one sentence, he's the best man. So no matter what the cost, I'll definitely make him the king. But do you really not know what this jacket means? Hong Bomei couldn't help but mutter. The guy who beat up Ma Xiaxing seemed to be wearing a jacket like this. But Guo Zijiang didn't hear clearly due to the wind, asking her to repeat. But she said it was nothing. If that's the case, let's go eat. Staying still isn't my style. Just as Hong Bomei was trying to find an excuse to stay a bit longer, her ex-boyfriend finally arrived with people. As soon as he got out of the car, he taunted. This guy looks really scary. How did you get entangled with him? 5 men got out of the van, the leader holding a spiked club. But Guo Zijiang seemed very calm. He just asked Hong Bomei, Do you know him? Before she could answer, the other person spoke up. Why do you always have relationships with people of bad character? Guo Zijiang finally realized Hong Bomei was a very dangerous woman. But even so, he was still attracted. After all, this suited his personality. Just as Guo Zijiang wanted Hong Bomei to hide behind him, she directly ran over. As she got in the car, she instructed the men, Hurry up and do it. Kill him. Throw him in the lake. Guo Zijiang looked exasperated. He couldn't help but complain. As she got in the car, she instructed the men, Hurry up and do it. Kill him. Throw him in the lake. Pei Yuanqi didn't want to delay, telling his underlings to go finish him directly. In a moment, they were all beaten to the ground. Guo Zijiang casually caught a card, finding the other was a lone shark, immediately looking disdainful. After all, bullying these second-rate characters was really no fun. A man was surrounded by 5 thugs on his first date. Not only did his girlfriend run away, but he was mocked as a kid by a stranger. As a result, his 4 underlings couldn't last 2.5 minutes against Guo Zijiang. Even so, he still looked disdainful, thinking the other had only fought student-level battles, while he had fought on real battlefields. They weren't on the same level at all. It turned out Pei Yuanqi had been knocked out by Ma Healy's brother with 1 move before, but he wasn't resigned, wanting to find someone to get revenge for him. But the other not only didn't help, but advised him to apologize to Ma Xiaxing. After all, that guy was from the Alliance. If you want to do well in Big Phil, you can't offend this force. And I'll be joining the Alliance soon. A few days later, Hong Bomei broke up with Pei Yuanqi. She thought Pei Yuanqi was too embarrassing, actually being knocked out with 1 move. Just as she was about to leave, Pei Yuanqi grabbed her hair, telling her to repeat what she just said. At this moment, a group of people approached, threatening Pei Yuanqi to let go of Hong Bomei. Otherwise, he'd have to fight 1 against 4. Due to the numbers, Pei Yuanqi had to let go of Hong Bomei. Before leaving, the two even showed affection in front of Pei Yuanqi, making him shake with anger. In the end, he chose to flee Big Phil, coming to Guangzhou to mingle with various thugs. In this process, he experienced many battles, finally reaching his current achievement. You game player, dreaming of beating me is just wishful thinking. I want to see how many attacks you can dodge. In the following battle, Pei Yuanqi successfully caught the other's dodge recovery, swinging his club hard at his shoulder. Guo Zijiang reacted in time, blocking the attack with his head, but he was still sent flying. But he didn't care about his injuries, immediately looking at his clothes. He found the attack had still torn his clothes. Noticing this action, Pei Yuan-chi was slightly stunned. Suspecting this guy used his head to block the attack just to avoid his clothes tearing. Thinking of this, Pei Yuan-chi felt the other was looking down on him, charging at him with his spiked club. But Guo Zhejiang was in a rage at this moment. He dodged the incoming attack and immediately organized a counterattack, directly kicking his chin. This ordinary strike made Pei Yuan-chi doubt his life. What's with this weight? Is he really a student? Why have I never felt this from other thugs? But Guo Zhejiang didn't stop there. Instead, he punched him hard in the face, instantly knocking him from land to the lakeside. But this wasn't over. With just 2 insignificant strikes, the fighting demon Guo Zhejiang's anger couldn't be dispersed. The continuous screams frightened Hong Bo-mei into a cold sweat, because she knew very well these screams were from her ex-boyfriend Pei Yuan-chi. Only when the lakeside was covered in blood did Guo Zhejiang stop. Student level? You think that man called Huang Wudi only has this level? A girl's prank almost made H country's largest criminal organization disappear. And the first to discover the truth was actually the fighting expert second squad captain Guo Zhejiang. Just now, Hong Bo-mei, sensing danger, wanted to call the police. But Guo Zhejiang smashed the glass door, threatening her to shut up if she wanted to live. After getting out of the car, Hong Bo-mei immediately knelt on the ground, begging Guo Zhejiang to spare her. But he still felt bewildered, as he hadn't done anything to offend women. Why did you want to set me up and lie about having feelings for me? At this point, Hong Bo-mei couldn't help but start sobbing. She didn't remember saying such things. Hearing this, Guo Zhejiang became even angrier, questioning, "So you're saying Zacian bro lied to me?" But he quickly thought of something else, pointing at the 4 fallen men and asking, "Were these guys the ones who made you do this? If that's the case, I might have offended them somewhere. After all, I offend so many people usually, it's hard to remember." Although Hong Bo-mei didn't understand what Guo Zhejiang was saying, seeing a chance to escape the current danger, she immediately insisted she was forced. Just then, a familiar voice sounded from behind. "You've got that disgusting bad habit again. Clearly you asked for others' help, but you don't follow the most basic code of conduct. Emperor Gang guy, I admit you're stronger than me, but you definitely don't know that thing about your boss." This sentence piqued Guo Zhejiang's interest. He told him to speak, warning, "If it's useless, you won't live." The other replied, "If I'm not mistaken, you guys suffered a bit because your boss ruined someone before, right?" Seeing Guo Zhejiang didn't react, he decided to stop beating around the bush. He directly mentioned fighting with the Big Phil Alliance's kid and turning him into a vegetable. Hearing this, Hong Bo-mei instantly realized something was wrong and wanted to stop Pei Yuan-chi. But he continued, even analyzing for Guo Zhejiang. "Wasn't your boss more angry than usual at that time? Don't you find it strange?" Guo Zhejiang was slightly stunned, recalling that scene from the past. No matter how he tried to persuade, the boss wouldn't listen. He even threatened not to follow, otherwise he wouldn't recognize him. In the end, the boss only took a few direct subordinates to attack the alliance, resulting in 30 serious injuries and 1 coma. This matter reached an irreversible point, as one person lay in the hospital in a coma. Left with no choice, they had to choose someone to take the fall for the boss. After all, this concerned the Emperor Gang's survival. Since then, the boss never mentioned this matter again. They didn't speak up either, so they didn't know the whole story. But this guy in front of him seemed to know everything. He even claimed the kneeling woman knew the truth better than him. At first, Guo Zhejiang couldn't believe it. After all, Hong Bo-mei didn't even know about the Emperor Gang, until Pei Yuan-chi revealed the reason. It turned out Hong Bo-mei hated a girl and commissioned someone to teach her brother a lesson. That person lured their boss to punish Ma Xiaxing from the Big Phil Alliance. Even so, Hong Bo-mei still lied that Pei Yuan-chi was making things up, unwilling to admit the truth. But Guo Zhejiang didn't think too much. He only knew the other was now suspicious, and he had to uncover the truth. "Even if you run to the ends of hell, I'll chase you. If I find out you're lying then, it won't just be a small wound. So you'd better tell the truth." Hearing this, Hong Bo-mei broke into a cold sweat and spilled everything she knew. When Guo Zhejiang heard it was Ma Healy's brother, he was slightly stunned. To be sure, he specifically took out a photo to show Hong Bo-mei. Only after confirming did he grit his teeth in anger. No wonder he felt something was off when he met Ma Healy at the KTV that day. So this was the truth. Guo Zhejiang finally knew the whole truth behind everything. He learned from Hong Bo-mei that Ma Healy was the sister of the person the boss had turned into a vegetable. And the person who instigated the boss to act was actually Park Suk-ha, the first squad captain of the Emperor Gang. The baseball bat in his hand even fell to the ground. Although Guo Zhejiang felt very troubled, he knew he had to pass this news to the Emperor Gang internally. So he prepared to leave immediately. Hong Bo-mei, seeing Pei Yuan-chi's extremely bad expression, wanted Guo Zhejiang to take her away. But Guo Zhejiang refused. He said if he didn't have more important things to do, he would definitely teach her a lesson. Seeing this, Pei Yuanqi smirked. He dragged Hong Bomei by the hair towards the van. Guo Zhijiang revved his motorcycle to 200 kilometers per hour, eager to return to the Emperor gang immediately. He tried calling other members, but no one answered. When he focused all his attention on the phone, danger approached silently. He was caught by the Alliance people. When Guo Zhijiang woke up, he was in a warehouse. The man in front of him was Min Dusang, the 9th squad captain of the Big Phil Alliance. He couldn't help but mock Guo Zhijiang, asking if he had been dumped and was wandering around carelessly. But Guo Zhijiang didn't respond, instead complaining that he shouldn't be here now. This action displeased Min Dusang, who leaned in to provoke him. As a result, Guo Zhijiang directly bit his nose, causing Min Dusang to scream in pain. Several underlings came to help, finally getting Guo Zhijiang off. But Min Dusang's nose was bleeding non-stop. He wanted to kill Guo Zhijiang on the spot to vent his anger, but was fortunately stopped by 2 underlings in time. Because the strategist had instructed to keep him alive, Guo Zhijiang then provoked him. If you don't act now, you'll definitely regret it later. But Min Dusang didn't respond, instead mocking his ignorance. Thinking Guo Zhijiang didn't understand his situation, he directly told Guo Zhijiang, "You're now the strategist's chess piece. In this situation, he's letting us spare you for now. It means he's preparing an even more cruel plan." Meanwhile, Huang Chaomin followed the navigation map to Liu Shangsai's home, finding it was actually a luxurious villa. But he had no time to marvel, he had to stay alert. One mistake, and this game would be over immediately. Only then did Huang Chaomin press the doorbell. Liu Shangsai led him to the study, having him sit at the tea table for a leisurely chat. On the surface, the two seemed very harmonious. But in reality, both were looking for the other's weaknesses. To Huang Chaomin, Liu Shangsai seemed like a young master born with a silver spoon. He looked completely unrelated to the sweaty, smelly fighting scenes. But he turned out to be the strategist of the Big Phil Alliance. Huang Chaomin really didn't understand why Liu Shangsai carried a title that didn't suit him. Could this somehow benefit his life? A young master born with a silver spoon, yet secretly the strategist of a gang. Now he even invited a suspect to his home to find the fake boss of the enemy force. He wanted to use the recently captured Guo Zhijiang to test the other's reaction. However, Liu Shangsai didn't do this directly, but first asked Huang Chaomin a question. "What do you think the fake boss is using to control the Emperor gang?" Huang Chaomin was slightly stunned. He didn't expect Liu Shangsai called him here for this reason, so he told the other the correct answer. Probably using methods like text messages. Because in this situation, rashly pretending to guess wrong would seem even more suspicious. Unexpectedly, Liu Shangsai followed up with this answer. "Was there a phone or something like that among your brother's belongings?" This time Huang Chaomin decided not to tell the truth, because the other couldn't confirm the content's authenticity. Just as he said there was no phone, Liu Shangsai put on a gloomy expression and questioned, "Is this true? Are you lying to me?" Huang Chaomin broke into a cold sweat, but he still insisted there was nothing special in there. "If I haven't guessed wrong, it should be some lucky guy who accidentally picked up a phone, then just used it casually. But that guy must be in Dragon Day, there's no doubt about that." Then, Huang Chaomin asked Liu Shangsai why he was so obsessed with defeating the Emperor gang. "You shouldn't need to risk your life for this, right? Is there some deep grudge?" Liu Shangsai casually replied, "This is just a hobby, like comforting tired exam students. And the United Students will help in pulling down the king. I originally thought you would understand my thinking. After all, people at the bottom of society should be used like this." After saying this, Liu Shangsai prepared to leave. But Huang Chaomin didn't understand what pulling down the king meant. However, seeing his expression, Huang Chaomin realized this was definitely not a good thing. He decided he must stop Liu Shangsai's plan. At this moment, Liu Shangsai turned back and asked Huang Chaomin one last question. "Our people have captured Guo Zhijiang, the 2nd squad captain of the Emperor gang. If you were me, how would you use him?" Huang Chaomin had to pretend to be confused and say, "Isn't capturing an executive a good thing?" Liu Shangsai said, "That's right. He's an important combat force for the Emperor gang. Perhaps we don't need to find the fake boss. We can use this chance to defeat the Emperor gang. So I want to make good use of him. Can you help me think of a way?" Huang Chaomin responded, "Then I'll congratulate you first. Although I'm not sure if I can come up with any good ideas, I'll try my best to help." But as soon as Liu Shangsai left, Huang Chaomin instantly panicked. What nonsense is he saying? How could Guo Zhijiang possibly be captured? Shouldn't he be teaching Hong Bomei a lesson? What happened in between? Did the strategist lie to observe my reaction? But if what he said is true, losing Guo Zhijiang would be a big loss. After all, he's not only powerful but also extremely loyal to the boss. Therefore, I must grasp the current accurate situation. Only then can I confirm if what he said is true. But if I propose to go home now, it might deepen his suspicion. This would deviate from my purpose of coming here. So, Huang Chaomin asked the butler where the bathroom was. He can only respond calmly now. If the strategist is telling the truth, he must rescue Guo Zhijiang from this house. This scene was watched by Liu Shangcai in the monitoring room. Will Huang Chaomin choose to take out his phone? To eliminate the strategist's suspicion, Huang Chaomin chose to venture deep into enemy territory. However, to be safe, he still had Jin Zacian wait for him at the door. Jin Zacian was very worried about whether Huang Chaomin would return safely. As he expected, his current situation was very dangerous. Once Huang Chaomin takes out his phone, the strategist in the monitoring room can confirm his identity. He deliberately revealed the news of Guo Zhijiang's capture earlier. If Huang Chaomin is the fake boss, he will definitely try to confirm if it's true. After all, the only thing he can do is issue orders to the Emperor Gang to confirm the situation. Liu Shangcai thought. So hurry up and take out that phone. As a result, Huang Chaomin stood still, marveling that the bathroom was bigger than his room. This slightly stunned Liu Shangcai. He didn't expect him to do nothing, just coming to use the bathroom. In reality, Huang Chaomin was scared into a cold sweat, because he had almost taken out his phone just now. If he had done so, it would have been a big problem, because the strategist was suspicious of him. Analyzing the current situation, if the strategist wanted to know his reaction, he should have said it on the spot. But he told me as he was leaving the room. This shows he's very curious about how I'll react when left alone in the room. Therefore, there must be something here that can let him witness firsthand. Otherwise, he wouldn't have rushed to leave the room after saying that, without waiting to see my reaction. After all, only this way could he give me time to think independently. But I feel something doesn't fit the logic. He should have anticipated I would go to the bathroom. So it's safe to assume the entire room is within the strategist's view. Whether he installed cameras for me, or they were already there doesn't matter. Now I can deduce two facts. First, the strategist wants to obtain the means to control the Emperor Gang. That is, he wants to get Huang Wudi's phone. Second, before seeing the phone with his own eyes, he wants to hide his suspicion of me. After all, he doesn't want me to discard the phone to save my life. But because of Ma He Li, I have to use the Emperor Gang no matter what now. But the strategist can't possibly know this point. As for why he didn't forcibly search me after I came to his home, he might be worried I didn't bring Huang Wudi's phone. That would increase my wariness. So, he will only act when he personally confirms I'm holding Huang Wudi's phone. After all, he's someone who only takes action when he's absolutely certain. Sure enough, that butler was hiding in a corner waiting for the young master's instructions. Although Huang Chaomin didn't know what interesting thing he wanted to do by being so careful. But if he really is such a meticulous person, then I can only give up on Guo Zhijiang. Meanwhile, in the monitoring room, Liu Shangcai was also deep in thought. Huang Chaomin just sat there after returning from the bathroom. Could the news have leaked? But I clearly instructed Wu Yunzi to remind Min Dusang to keep Guo Zhijiang's capture secret for now. So, to confirm his guess, he called Min Dusang, asking if anyone else knew about this. Min Dusang said, except for Wu Yunzi, he only told him. Before he could tell others, Wu Yunzi immediately contacted him, saying the strategist told him not to tell other alliance members. After that, I didn't tell anyone else about this. I've been keeping Guo Zhijiang locked up here. Did anyone see you during the capture process? Probably not. We immediately took him to a nearby abandoned factory. If I don't contact you again in 10 minutes, you can dispose of that guy. But after hanging up, Min Dusang was very dissatisfied that the other didn't even praise. If the chairman hadn't ordered it, I would definitely have Wu Yunzi tell me his true identity, then beat him up. Although this makes me very unhappy, it will all become my merit. And in 10 minutes I can teach that guy a harsh lesson. They're both aces in their respective gangs, but their strength is worlds apart. Lu Zhenxiu's punches on the other felt like cotton, while He Zhuan knocked him out with just one punch. The reason for such a big difference in their strength is due to the different systems of their organizations. The Emperor Gang's aces refer to those recognized by the four captains, while the Alliance has numbered rankings for their right and left hands. It turns out Huang Chaomin had been keeping in touch with Jin Zacian by phone just to be safe. So he heard everything the strategist said clearly. So, he sent a message to Guo Zhijiang, wanting to confirm the truth. But there was no reply. He would usually reply within 1 minute. And Huang Chaomin didn't say anything. This means he's in a situation where he can't issue orders. But Jin Zacian knew clearly that Guo Zhijiang was an indispensable force for the Emperor Gang. He absolutely couldn't let anything happen to him. Just as Jin Zacian was at a loss, he heard a tapping sound over the phone, seemingly fingers tapping on a screen at a frequency of 3 times. He quickly realized Huang Chaomin was trying to convey some kind of information to him. At first, Jin Zacian thought it might be Morse code or something, but he realized that wasn't right, because he didn't understand any of that. Huang Chaomin wouldn't use such a method to convey a message to him. So he thought in a simpler direction, guessing Huang Chaomin wanted to convey the number 3. However, in the current situation, the number 3 couldn't represent Guo Zhijiang's holding place. Could it be referring to the third squad? Jin Zacian recalled he had asked Huang Chaomin before. since he was the 4th squad captain. Who was the 3rd squad captain? But even Huang Chaomin didn't know the answer to this question, because he only discovered there was a 3rd squad by checking the Emperor Gang's bills. But those guys never seem to participate in battles. They should be an independent unit. Although I have their captain's phone number, because I don't know what relationship he has with Huang Wudi, so I haven't rushed to contact him. Just in case, I'll give you his phone number first. Could Huang Chaomin mean the 3rd squad knows Guo Zhejiang's location? Given the current situation, I can only take a gamble. When Jin Zacian dialed that number, the other side only said one sentence, 38 Yanshu Road, abandoned factory, then hung up. This left Jin Zacian bewildered, but he still chose to trust the other party, passing the message to the Emperor Gang members. So, the scene from the beginning happened. The duel between 2 aces, but the result was one-sided domination. On the other side, Liu Shangcai thought Huang Chaomin hadn't brought his phone out, or Huang Chaomin chose to give up on Guo Zhejiang. Although the possibilities were 50-50, either way, the final result would be losing Guo Zhejiang. This would be a huge loss for the Emperor Gang. Just then, a phone call came in. Liu Shangcai stood up to answer the call. Unexpectedly, the other's news shocked him. Min Dusang was also confused about the situation. Why did the Emperor Gang suddenly break in, and in such large numbers? But Liu Shangcai's mind wasn't on them at all. After hastily giving orders, he hung up the phone. Still unable to understand how things turned out this way. Only 4 people knew about Guo Zhejiang's capture, and the only one who could issue rescue orders was Huang Chaomin. But Huang Chaomin did nothing. Could he really not be the fake boss? At this moment, Liu Shangcai was very confused, not knowing he had fallen right into Huang Xiaomin's trap. Now he could not only rescue Guo Zhejiang, but also clear the suspicion of being the fake boss, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. How powerful is the mysterious 3rd squad? Not only did they find Guo Zhejiang's holding place, but they also helped Huang Chaomin clear suspicion, leaving the strategist deeply confused. He had no choice but to be honest with Huang Chaomin, wanting to hear his opinion. Huang Chaomin then shared his thoughts. He thought when capturing Guo Zhejiang, they might have been accidentally seen. After all, with so many people acting together, it's easy to attract attention. The strategist casually responded with, "Is that so?" But in his heart, he was thinking, could he really just be my fan? Having achieved his goal, Huang Chaomin made an excuse saying he wanted to go home. But the strategist asked him to stay a bit longer, saying there was someone he wanted him to meet. Actually, the strategist wanted to observe Huang Chaomin a bit more. As for Guo Zhejiang's matter, the strategist thought it could be resolved quickly. After all, he had already told the chairman about capturing Guo Zhejiang. Meanwhile, the Big Phil Alliance's reinforcements also arrived at the scene. This time the troops were led by Li Rongshu, ranked 8th. Min Dusang, hiding in the warehouse, gritted his teeth in anger when he saw him. He thought he could have achieved merit alone, but Li Rongshu came to share the glory. Guo Zhejiang mocked from the side. "Your friend has come? Congratulations." Min Dusang was so angry he wanted to kill Guo Zhejiang to shut him up. After all, the arrival of reinforcements meant the chairman also wanted to teach this guy a lesson. However, Guo Zhejiang still looked disdainful, continuing to mock the other. This made Min Dusang snap, burning with rage. He wanted to finish off the 2nd squad captain first, to claim this achievement. But the hammer he raised high couldn't swing down, because the hammer was firmly gripped by Jin Zacian. When Min Dusang realized, the other had already grabbed his shoulder, using a shoulder throw to toss him out. Under this force, the hammer broke in half. Even so, Min Dusang slowly stood up, mocking. "I didn't expect Qingbi's Jin Zacian really joined the Emperor Gang." However, Jin Zacian didn't respond to the other's mockery, instead criticizing Min Dusang's behavior. Wanting to attack the enemy is normal, but your method has crossed the line. At that moment, Min Doshang noticed the side door of the warehouse was open. He realized Jin Zacian must have entered through there, so he turned his head and mocked the other again. "Your style doesn't match your physique at all." Inwardly, he regretted not eliminating Guo Zhejiang when he caught him. On the other side, after chatting briefly with Jin Zacian, Guo Zhejiang looked at Min Doshang. "I told you not to get too cocky. Now look at you, can't even eat what's handed to you for free." Hearing this, Min Doshang completely lost it, unable to suppress his anger. He recklessly charged at the two, cursing them as bastards. Unsurprisingly, his punch was blocked by Jin Zacian. However, surprisingly, he managed to dodge Jin Zacian's attack. He then swung at Jin Zacian again, but was once more blocked. After a few exchanges, Jin Zacian looked at him with a bit more respect. He complimented Min Doshang for being deceptively agile despite his sluggish appearance. Min Doshang was very displeased with this, thinking Jin Zacian was just talking nonsense. "If I didn't have skills, how could I be ranked?" However, the moment their fists collided, Min Doshang instantly regretted his actions. He hadn't expected the other's strength to be so immense. His whole body went numb. When the numbness subsided, pain gradually crept into his right hand, causing him to shake uncontrollably. Even Min Doshang himself couldn't understand what was happening, but he knew Jin Zetian was definitely a monster. Guo Zhijiang, standing nearby, explained. To fight him one-on-one, you'd need to be at least one level below the boss. The outcome of the fight was unsurprising, with Jin Zetian achieving a one-sided victory. Afterwards, Jin Zetian untied Guo Zhijiang's ropes, but Guo Zhijiang couldn't help wanting to spar with him. Do you know how Emperor Huang built his powerful ruling system? It's all thanks to the mysterious Third Squad. They've been conducting comprehensive internal surveillance. Given Emperor Huang's personality, he hardly trusts anyone. He's also very wary of male challenging consciousness, so he established the Third Squad. On the surface, they're responsible for gathering intelligence, but in reality, they monitor every move of the Emperor's gang members. They screen out those disloyal to Emperor Huang. However, they made one fatal mistake. They overlooked Ma Heli, being a woman, which led to the current situation. Huang Chaomin did nothing, yet someone went to rescue Guo Zhijiang. This left even the strategist confused. Despite this, he still tried to maintain a nonchalant appearance. Inwardly, he was pondering where the problem lay. After all, Min Doshang ranked 9th in the Union. He couldn't be careless. So now I should suspect there's a spy within the Union. Why do I keep feeling like this is all part of Huang Xiaomin's plan? His expression scared Huang Xiaomin, who quickly apologized, thinking he had said something wrong. The strategist realized this was confirmation bias. He now only wanted to believe what he was willing to believe. Although evidence kept appearing, proving Huang Xiaomin wasn't a fake boss, he still felt strange. But what he found even more incomprehensible was, why do I hope Huang Xiaomin is a fake boss? Do I want to have a showdown with him? Little did he know, his thoughts were already close to the truth of the matter. Because from the beginning, Huang Xiaomin knew the strategist might have completely controlled the variables. So this definitely can't be simply attributed to my luck. But this, in turn, allows me to escape the suspicion of being a fake boss, not only preventing the Emperor's gang from losing combat power, but also shifting the strategist's attention to the Union's internal affairs, inducing internal strife in the Union. Meanwhile, Jin Zetian had just finished persuading Guo Zhijiang, who wanted to spar with him. When Guo Zhijiang learned it was the Third Squad captain who told Jin Zetian his location, he fell into deep thought. Could they be observing through satellites? Otherwise, how could they know the city so well? I've been in the Emperor's gang for years, yet I still know nothing about them. But there was no time to think now, as everyone was still dealing with the Union's people. At this point, the Emperor's gang was at a disadvantage, because this time, the opponent's reinforcements were too numerous, causing the second squad's ace, Hejuan, to have no time to rescue his captain. Just as he was distracted, he was hit on the head with a stick. Li Rongshu, ranked 8th, was seen riding a motorcycle, plowing through the enemies in front. He was eager to rush into the warehouse and steal the credit from his good brother Min Doshang. But as Li Rongshu neared the door, a hand voluntarily opened it. Jin Zetian swiftly yanked Li Rongshu off the motorcycle. This shocking scene was witnessed by Hejuan, who was slowly getting up, because behind Jin Zetian stood his captain, Guo Zhijiang. Li Rongshu lay on the ground, snoring loudly. With their arrival, the tide of battle began to turn. Although Guo Zhijiang was covered in wounds, dealing with the small fry in front of him was still easy. By the time Li Rongshu woke from his dream, the battle was nearing its end. He looked at the scene before him in confusion, remembering he was about to charge into the warehouse. How did he suddenly fall asleep? It wasn't until a phone rang that Li Rongshu came to his senses. But as he was answering the phone, someone tried to sneak attack him. Luckily, a subordinate warned him in time, allowing him to dodge the attack. He then knocked down the guy in front of him with an uppercut. Only then did he look back at the battlefield, realizing the situation had turned against them. His strength alone couldn't turn the tide. Moreover, he saw Guo Zhijiang in the crowd and realized he had already been rescued. So he decided not to linger and headed straight for his motorcycle. By the time Jin Zetian noticed him, it was too late. Li Rongshu left Jin Zetian with a meaningful smile before departing. Then he rode off on his motorcycle without looking back, completely disregarding the fate of his subordinates. But what no one expected was that outside the battlefield, a red-haired man was silently observing everything. The captain of the Third Squad had finally appeared. He immediately questioned Jin Zetian, also a captain, about his real reason for joining the Emperor's gang. Jin Zetian had just single-handedly turned the tide of battle. The only pity was that he accidentally let Li Rongshu, ranked 8th in the Union, escape. And Li Rongshu had left Jin Zetian with a meaningful smile before leaving. Then he rode off on his motorcycle without looking back, completely disregarding his subordinate's fate. Although Jin Zetian was puzzled, he didn't dwell on it much. So he started handling Hejuan's report, the second squad's ace. He stated that Captain Guo Zhijiang had been safely extracted. As for the Union guys, they've mostly been dealt with. Only a few stubborn ones were still struggling. He wondered if they should finish them off. Hearing this, Jin Zetian turned to look. He found the opponent's hostility was strong, constantly cursing, but they had never met before. Where did this hostility come from? Surely it couldn't be just because they belonged to different organizations? After some thought, Jin Zishian became more determined to end this situation. So he let the opponent go. Unexpectedly, a foot suddenly stepped on that person's head. This shocking scene left everyone present stunned. Just a stinking bug, yet so talkative. Then, ignoring others' persuasion, he kicked the person away. What the hell are you doing? Didn't you hear the captain order a retreat? The person's actions displeased the man. Just as he was about to teach the youngster a lesson, Hezhuan intervened in time. It's been a while, Captain Lien Jishuan. This surprised the man. He didn't expect someone to recognize him. Jin Zishian also realized that the guy in front of him was the captain of the third squad. Seeing how polite the other was, Lien Jishuan dropped a bombshell about Guo Zhejiang. Your captain seems to have had his heart broken. But when Hezhuan asked why he was here, Lien Jishuan looked at Jin Zishian, then came to him and asked, Jin Zishian, the pride of Qingbi, I want to know, why did you, who always acted alone, suddenly decide to join the Emperor's gang? Tell me your real reason for joining the Emperor's gang. But Jin Zishian didn't respond, just staring at him seriously. This aroused the curiosity of the two nearby. They didn't know what this question meant. Could there be reasons other than wanting to follow the boss? Because they had heard their captain say before that Jin Zishian joined the Emperor's gang because he saw the boss's greatness. After all, any man would want to follow someone like the boss. It wasn't until half a minute later that Jin Zishian asked why he was asking this. I just feel that your joining the Emperor's gang might become the spark that burns it down. Jin Zishian replied, you seem quite xenophobic. But these words shouldn't come from someone who knew Guo Zhejiang was in danger yet stood by. I didn't expect you to be so talkative. But even so, I only do what I should do. Besides, I never wanted to care about Guo Zhejiang's life or death. With that idiot's personality, he's bound to make a huge mess sooner or later. And that sentence you just said sounds awful. Do you even know what xenophobia means? After speaking, he attacked Jin Zishian at lightning speed, with one hand still in his pocket. This scene made the two nearby break out in cold sweat, clearly not understanding the situation. Do you understand now? This is xenophobia. The cigarette but stopped in front of Jin Zishian's face, just 5 centimeters from his eyeball. And Jin Zishian didn't even blink during the process. Only then did Hezhuan breathe a sigh of relief. But inwardly, he was complaining. No matter what, you shouldn't do this to Jin Zishian from Qingbi. Lien Jishuan withdrew the cigarette butt. After all, the other's reaction was too uninteresting. However, he put his other hand on Jin Zishian's shoulder, saying he could roughly tell a person's thoughts through their eyes. And you have eyes that harbor ulterior motives. Even if you can fool Park Sukha and Guo Zhejiang, you can't fool me. I came here to make you behave yourself. Otherwise, that brother of yours who you keep in your mouth afraid he'll melt won't have it so easy. The boy's brother was a burly man. Whenever he was bullied, his brother would rush to his side no matter what, and beat up the little punks who bullied his brother. But now someone dared to threaten Jin Zishian with Jin Taiyang's safety right in front of him. He immediately grabbed Lien Jishuan's right hand in anger, warning Lien Jishuan to watch his words. Otherwise, I don't mind crippling your arm. But the other person made the first move, praising his interesting reaction. This is exactly what I wanted. Seeing this, Jin Zishian didn't back down and quickly counterattacked. This scene made the onlookers break out in cold sweat. They didn't expect the two captains to really start fighting. Lien Jishuan's speed was extremely fast. He could easily dodge Jin Zishian's kicks and counterattack during his recovery. After these exchanges, even Jin Zishian had to admit that the other's speed was indeed much faster than his, but his strength was greater. Lien Jishuan was clearly displeased. Just because I'm in the intelligence squad, everyone seems to underestimate me. This is really troublesome. He then charged towards Jin Zishian. At this moment, Hezhuan, disregarding his own safety, stepped between them, telling them to stop fighting. This action greatly angered Lien Jishuan. Are you crazy? He quickly apologized, saying he had urgent news to report. Qingbi was under attack by the Union. Meanwhile, Huang Xiaomin also met the person the strategist wanted him to meet. It was Liu Shangxin, the general manager of the Nine Curves group and the strategist's brother. Huang Xiaomin quickly bowed in greeting, but the other didn't respond, just staring at him intently. Despite this, Liu Shangxin's oppressive aura was still strong, making it hard to breathe. Before leaving, he left a puzzling remark. How rare. Huang Xiaomin was confused. So he asked Liu Shangxai, why did you want me to meet him? Liu Shangxai replied that he just wanted to show him that he also had relatives he wanted to eliminate. Then he said goodbye to Huang Xiaomin. But as soon as he left, he called Wu Yunzi, telling him to have his men ambush Qingbi, and not to spare anyone wearing a Qingbi school uniform. Also, among the Union members participating this time, there might be moles. So it's necessary to thoroughly investigate, and they must carefully investigate everyone. If they can't find anything, then Huang Xiaomin is 100% a fake boss. When Jin Zishian returned to Qingbi, he was shaking with anger. He couldn't believe the Union people had been so ruthless. They hadn't spared a single person. Fortunately, a few were lightly injured and could roughly describe what happened. The leader was a guy with a mohawk. Jin Zixuan immediately remembered Li Rongshu's nasty smile when he left. So that was the reason. But he then thought of a worse situation. Could his brother Jin Taeyong have been harmed? So he rushed back home, only to find Jin Taeyong with Park Suk-ha, the captain of the first squad. He was slightly taken aback. The other said, "The boss told me to protect Jin Taeyong. But I don't understand. No one came to cause trouble for your brother. Yet the boss wanted me to be a bodyguard." It seemed Zheng Taizhong hadn't shared Jin Taeyong's situation with others. This was also thanks to him being someone who couldn't stand to see others doing well. Seeing Jin Zixuan return, Park Suk-ha prepared to leave. After all, he had no time to waste here. Jin Zixuan asked, "Has something big happened?" It's not just something big now, it's the beginning of a full-scale conflict. Although there were many conflicts between the Union and the Emperor's gang before, they were all handled in a more conservative way. Once the balance between the two sides is broken, the situation will instantly tilt towards either side. So everyone has been avoiding this situation. But the Union has escalated this incident from Guazhijiang to Qingbi. The boss had no choice but to issue retaliation orders. Now many people have gone to attack Qishan Cave in Zhongqiu. That's the territory of Li Rongshu, ranked 8th in the Union. Didn't you want to see what the boss planned to do? Well, now you can wait and see. Because after a full-scale conflict, only one force will remain. The all-out war between the two top gangs was about to break out. From now on, only one force would remain in Big Phil. However, the 4 captains of the Emperor's gang each had their own agenda. One suspected gang members, one suspected outsiders, another suspected the boss, and the last one wasn't prepared to face this outcome. Because his goal was different from the other 3 captains. He wanted to end this damn battlefield. Meanwhile, another person seeking revenge for the dead was about to uncover the truth. Jin Lechuan found a helmet with a dragon pattern by the river, so he took it home to study. He found this modified helmet familiar, as if he had seen it somewhere before, but Jin Lechuan couldn't remember where. Finally, the golden dragon pattern gave him an idea. He remembered the scene of being beaten up by Emperor Huang. At that time, to seek revenge later, he decided to secretly follow to gather more information. But Emperor Huang left on a motorcycle as soon as he walked out of the alley. However, he would never forget the helmet he wore before leaving. After all, this wasn't mass-produced. The dragon pattern was hand-drawn stroke by stroke. In other words, this was a unique, custom helmet. But why would Emperor Huang's helmet appear under Jiachuan Bridge? Could he have discarded it? Logically, he should have loved this exquisite helmet. This made Jin Lechuan fall into deep thought, trying to find a reasonable explanation. Meanwhile, Li Rongshu, ranked 8th in the Big Phil Union, was running fast through a small alley. But every direction was blocked by Emperor's gang people. Just as he was about to change direction to escape, Jin Zixuan had already caught up from behind. Seeing the other about to call his subordinates to act, Li Rongshu immediately shouted to stop Jin Zixuan, saying he knew he was wrong. "I shouldn't have attacked your brothers. But this is war. I was just following orders." But Jin Zixuan walked up and confronted him. "War? You're really joking. When you left, you were clearly happy about the chance to trample Qingbi that I wasn't guarding. This isn't a battlefield where we must fight to the death, but it's gathering a group of people who enjoy making others submit. So you must pay the price for this. After all, you've already enjoyed that pleasure." Seeing that Jin Zixuan wasn't going to let him go, Li Rongshu made the first move. But the gap between them was huge. Jin Zixuan knocked him down with one punch. Just as Li Rongshu tried to get up, he was surrounded by a group of vicious eyes. What followed was an unsurprising beating. The person responsible for this scene was Huang Xiaomin. Because of Qishan Cave's special geographic location, only by taking it could they open up the situation. Just then, Huang Xiaomin received a short message from Park Suk-ha. "Boss, isn't it time for you to come back?" At first glance, it seemed like a simple greeting, but it actually hid suspicion towards the boss. After all, the full-scale conflict had already begun. Judging from the series of orders issued by the boss, he seemed to want to determine a victor. But why did he only send text messages and never call? Most importantly, given his personality, he shouldn't start a full-scale conflict while absent, even if his heart was broken by emotions. It's strange. This sense of incongruity makes me feel that although the boss keeps in touch with me, those messages might not really be from him. As Park Suk-ha was pondering, a subordinate kicked a can, drawing his attention, so he asked what had happened. It turned out the guy had been scammed. His girlfriend messaged asking to borrow money, but he found out she was cheating. The person messaging was her lover. After transferring the money, that guy ran off with her bank book. So, he should have called before transferring the money. After hearing this, Park Suk-ha fell into deep thought. He had completely overlooked this point. What if the person sending messages wasn't the boss? Although it's impossible for his phone to be stolen, what if Ma Heli's plan had succeeded? Then the current boss's identity would be uncertain. Unexpectedly, even the most loyal person in the gang was now doubting the boss's identity. Earlier, Guo Zhijiang had found the intelligence squad captain, Lin Jixuan. He questioned whether he had known all along that it was Brother Suk who incited the boss to punish Ma Xiaoxing. However, Lin Jixuan didn't know what Guo Zhijiang was talking about. Who's Ma Xiaoxing? Don't you remember? It's because the boss beat a union member into a vegetative state, causing the Emperor's gang to face a major crisis. After hearing Guo Zhijiang's description, Lin Jixuan finally remembered this incident. At that time, the boss went crazy wanting to eliminate that person. Are you saying this was incited by Park Suk-ha? Guo Zhijiang saw that the other was still playing dumb. Emotionally agitated, he directly exposed his lie. Stop pretending, don't you know everything? But Lin Jixuan didn't change his attitude. Instead, he felt Guo Zhijiang was getting too cocky. So he decided to teach him a lesson, to let him know that people should at least be polite. I never expected you to call me brother, but you can't be so loud and rude. Guo Zhijiang thought the other was crazy. In this situation, does the form of address really matter? Then how do you address Jin Zixian? Brother Zixian. This answer infuriated Lin Jixuan. You brat, that's why I think forms of address are important. After saying this, Lin Jixuan charged at Guo Zhijiang again. It wasn't until he said, Ma Xiaoxing's younger sister is Ma Heli, that Lin Jixuan stopped. Don't you find it suspicious? If it were you, could you date someone who hurt your family? And there are too many questionable points, like why Brother Suk would incite the boss, why Ma Heli would date her enemy, and so on. After pondering, Lin Jixuan asked the first question. Are you sure all of this is true? After all, Guo Zhijiang wasn't one to make things up. After Guo Zhijiang confirmed it was true, Lin Jixuan asked him, how long has it been since the boss left to tour the country? About a month, I guess. He never calls, only gives orders through messages. Is this true? That's true, but you seem to be going off topic again. We need to confirm first if Brother Suk. No, confirming the boss's safety is the most important now. As for the question you asked me earlier, I did know that Park Suk-ha incited the boss, but there's nothing wrong with that. After all, if something appears that could harm the boss's interests, it should be reported to the boss. You're not wrong about that. But the key is, what he used to incite the boss made him lose his reason. And it led to Ma Xiaoxing becoming a vegetable. Although the boss eventually escaped imprisonment, what if Park Suk-ha's purpose wasn't just that? Like deliberately making the boss create enemies, just to use that person to harm the boss? Lin Jixuan said, I know all the dynamics in Big Phil, but I know nothing about the boss. This made Guo Zhijiang feel confused. He didn't know what the other was trying to say. I mean, the boss might not be alive anymore. After all, Park Suk-ha and the boss are old friends, so he might want to get rid of his eternal second-place position. Hearing this, Guo Zhijiang immediately took out his phone, wanting to prove he was wrong. The boss has been sending me messages all along. Regarding this point, Lin Jixuan couldn't confirm, because the boss didn't send him messages much before. If that's the case, the boss indeed hasn't lost contact. But no matter what, I must see him in person. This made Guo Zhijiang so angry he couldn't help but shout. Do you really think Brother Suk harmed the boss? Lin Jixuan told him. There's no 100% trust between people, and those who trust others 100% often end up being betrayed. So you must not let others know we've become suspicious. After all, this is a matter of life and death for the Emperor's gang. The usually brave gang captain was now shaking with fear. He almost wanted to jump off a building and kill himself, because just now, he had actually questioned the strongest man in Big Phil, wanting to confirm if the boss was real. But if he was real, Guo Zhijiang would be guilty of great disrespect. His life probably wouldn't be enough to pay for it. But Lin Jixuan, also a captain, didn't think so. After all, if the current boss is fake, wouldn't the boss who has already ascended to heaven die in vain? Hearing this, Guo Zhijiang was slightly stunned. Thinking carefully, it did seem so. So he rallied himself again. However, if the current boss is real, I'll definitely send you on your way before I die, Lin Jixuan said, provided you have that ability. Also, you haven't told Park Suk-ha about this, right? After getting his answer, Lin Jixuan shared his hypothesis. If the boss is really gone, it must be Park Suk-ha's doing. But Guo Zhijiang refused to believe this hypothesis. But what if I'm right? Then whether it's the fake boss or Brother Suk, they'll have to pay with their lives. If the boss doesn't appear on Jiachuan Bridge in 3 days, by then, I'll bloodily cleanse the Emperor's gang. Meanwhile, Huang Chaomin was in a dilemma. He hadn't expected Guo Zhijiang to say such things. It left this model student completely unable to focus on class, because Guo Zhijiang was the most loyal person in the gang. So after he made such a request, Huang Chaomin felt at a loss. He couldn't understand why Guo Zhijiang would suddenly doubt his identity, and how to make him believe he was Emperor Huang. Even by lunchtime, Huang Chaomin still hadn't found a good solution. Huang Caomin's reaction was noticed by Song Manhua, who was dining with him. So he asked if something had happened recently. Why do you always look so gloomy? But Huang Chaomin asked a puzzling question. If you want to make a deceased person appear alive, how would you do it? It was such a strange question, but surprisingly, Song Minghua actually gave his own insights. Maybe you could try making a scarecrow. After all, in the Romance of the Three Kingdoms, Zhuge Liang used a scarecrow to fool the enemy. But Huang Chaomin thought that was just something that happened in books. It's impossible in reality. Just then, Jin Lichuan approached Huang Chaomin, wanting him to come to the rooftop for a talk. Then he got straight to the point, asking Huang Chaomin why he didn't tell him he was Emperor Huang's brother. This made Huang Chaomin break out in a cold sweat, not knowing what to do. But the next second he said this was told to him by the strategist. I heard you really hate your brother, right? That bastard is even so cruel to his own family. It seems the strategist must believe that even if Jin Lichuan knows about my relationship with Emperor Huang, I wouldn't tell him that guy has already passed away. After all, from my current standpoint, unless I want to hinder him from continuing to search for Dragon Day, there's no need to reveal Emperor Huang's situation. This indirectly shows that the strategist is still suspecting me, and is constantly waiting for me to show a flaw. I never thought I'd have to engage in a battle of wits with him even at school, but for now, I'll just go along with him. So Huang Chaomin told Jin Lichuan, I was afraid you would hate me too. That's why I haven't told you yet. The other believed it and said, you haven't done anything wrong. How could I hate you? And I feel very excited. After all, my first friend in Big Phil is Emperor Huang's own brother. Doesn't this mean I'm sure to succeed in my revenge? Oh, I almost forgot to tell you because I was too happy. You should be careful recently. Emperor Huang seems to be in Big Phil too. Hearing this, Huang Chaomin couldn't help but look puzzled. He didn't know why Jin Lichuan had such an outlandish guess, but he had a lot of things to consider now, so he prepared to brush off Jin Lichuan. However, Jin Lichuan said he found Emperor Huang's helmet under Jiachuan Bridge. As soon as he heard this, Huang Chaomin immediately lost his composure. He quickly asked if it had a yellow dragon pattern on it. After getting Jin Lichuan's affirmative response, Huang Chaomin remembered the scene when he was bullied by Han Changxi. The helmet fell into the river at that time. He never expected Jin Lichuan to find it. This was truly a godsend. The young man became the Black Gang Emperor of South Korea, relying on his deceased brother's phone. But he hadn't been in charge for long before someone started doubting his identity. They hoped he could come to Jiachuan Bridge in 3 days. Faced with such an unreasonable request, how should Huang Chaomin respond? He chose to throw this question to his good friend. Huang Chaomin asked, how can you make a deceased person appear alive? Faced with this puzzling question, Song Zhongmin actually gave an answer. He said, you could try making a scarecrow like Zhuge Liang in the Romance of the Three Kingdoms. These words gave Huang Chaomin a great inspiration, because he accidentally learned that Jin Lichuan had found Emperor Huang's helmet. So Huang Chaomin thought of using this opportunity to trick Jin Lichuan into playing the fake boss, and the entry point would be the other's determination for revenge. After all, Jin Lichuan didn't know Emperor Huang had already passed away. However, the Emperor's gang's 1,000 subordinates and 4 captains would be enough to give him a hard time. So, do you think you can break through these people's encirclement and attack Emperor Huang? Surprisingly, Jin Lichuan actually believed that as long as he charged forward boldly, he could do it. Just a week ago, he was beaten to the point of doubting life by Guo Zhejiang. So Huang Chaomin directly told him, you can't get revenge that way, because an individual is absolutely no match for a group. Even if you risk your life, it won't work. These words angered Jin Lichuan, who grabbed Huang Chaomin's shoulders. Jin Lichuan told him, as long as your will is strong enough, nothing is impossible. But Huang Chaomin calmly retorted, if it were really like you say, no one in this world would suffer injustice. It turned out that to take revenge on those who bullied him, Huang Chaomin had resolved to become stronger. So he learned various martial arts techniques online, preparing to counterattack when school started. But things didn't go as he wished. As soon as Huang Chaomin met his enemy, he slapped him. He said, this is payback. From now on, I won't tolerate it anymore. Then Huang Chaomin took a boxing stance, wanting to show off his skills. But unexpectedly, the other person called for his friends. As a result, Huang Chaomin was severely beaten by them. So, he deeply understood a truth. People who can overthrow a kingdom single-handedly only exist in anime. After hearing this, Jin Lichuan fell into deep thought. He used to be really afraid of that guy's subordinates. So you're asking me to give up on revenge, to forgive the person who trampled on my friend? Seeing the other misunderstand, Huang Chaomin quickly explained, I just want to tell you that one person absolutely can't beat a group. But forming a group to seek revenge is a different story. But how can I form a new organization in Big Phil? There's one ready-made right now, and it's the only group that can match the Emperor's gang. But isn't the Big Phil Union the Yushan size? How could he help me get revenge? Don't worry, if you follow my instructions, he will definitely agree. After instructing Jin Lichuan, Huang Chaomin called for Jin Zixin and Ma Heli. He told them everything that had happened these days. When the two heard about Guo Zhejiang inviting Huang Chaomin to meet, they both broke out in cold sweat, very surprised. It wasn't until they heard Huang Chaomin had a plan that they breathed a sigh of relief. But after hearing his plan, they both gaped in shock. They suspected Huang Chaomin had gone mad, because he planned to let the Union guys deal with Guojijiang. He asked Jin Zhexian, who at Qingbi has Zheng Taizhong's phone number, but Jin Zhexian thought this method seemed simple and effective. However, it would cause the Emperor's gang to lose fighting power, a fatal blow. Huang Chaomin said, "Don't worry, I don't plan to really eliminate him." Jin Zhexian asked, "Then why still find the Union guys to come?" Huang Chaomin replied, "I just want to create a more chaotic scene. After all, given Zheng Taizhong's ability, expecting him to handle Guojijiang is unrealistic. But even so, Guojijiang can't possibly defeat an entire group alone. After pushing him to the limit, the protagonist should appear. Who would have thought that the entire gang would come out just to take off a man's helmet?" It turned out that 2 captains of the Emperor's gang had come to Jiachuan Bridge as agreed, but their much-anticipated boss didn't show up. Lien Jishuan felt annoyed and said, "If he doesn't appear in another 10 minutes, you know what?" Guojijiang beside him was anxiously grinding his teeth, saying, "No need for your blabber," because in his heart, he firmly believed the boss would rush out from over there, then give them a good scolding. Yes, it must be like this. Thinking of this, Guojijiang clenched his fists, but instead, they were greeted by a group of Union members. And the man leading them was Zheng Taizhong, ranked 10th. He had only come to try his luck, not expecting Guojijiang to really be here. Looks like the message I received was true. So he prepared to take down the 2 Emperor's gang captains, relying on their superior numbers. But faced with this situation, the 2 captains remained unfazed. They prepared to take out the Union people first. After all, the enemy was right in front of them. Huang Chaomin, standing at a high point, silently watched everything, because he was certain that even if the 2 were outstanding, they couldn't easily defeat a group. Now he just needed to wait for the Union guys to push them to the limit, then let Jin Lechuan make his appearance. But things often don't go as smoothly as imagined. No matter how many enemies appeared, the 2 handled them with ease. They could even discuss whether the boss would come or not. This scene infuriated Zheng Taizhong. He couldn't believe these subordinates were so useless, so he had to lead the charge himself to boost morale. But he didn't rush up to draw fire. Instead, he let his subordinates go first. He himself hid to sneak attack, kicking Guojijiang once and running away. He even flashed a sly grin at Guojijiang to provoke him. Just then, another figure emerged from under the bridge. Guojijiang heard footsteps and immediately turned to check who was coming. Unfortunately, it wasn't the boss he had been hoping for. Instead, it was Jin Zhexian, the captain of the Emperor's gang's 4th squad. Behind him followed a group of squad members. Seeing this, the Union people's faces changed drastically. They hadn't expected the enemy's reinforcements to arrive so quickly. But the bigger shock was yet to come. Even Lien Jishuan stopped his actions. Only Zheng Taizhong was still immersed in the fear of seeing Jin Zhexian. It wasn't until a subordinate behind him spoke up that he looked towards Jiachuan Bridge. But the scene before him made him break out in a cold sweat, because a familiar man was standing on the bridge, and he was wearing Emperor Huang's exclusive dragon-patterned helmet. Little did they know this was all part of Huang Xiaomin's plan. He would let Jin Lechuan appear only after Jin Zhexian had scared the Union to death. But this was just the beginning. The real plan was yet to come. As for why Jin Lechuan agreed to do this, it was because Huang Chaomin told him. This was the only way to deal with those Emperor's gang executives. But Huang Chaomin still swallowed nervously. After all, this plan was extremely risky. It placed almost all hope on the strategist. They'd have to see how he would react. As Huang Chaomin expected, the strategist ordered people near Jiachuan Bridge to gather immediately. Because Emperor Huang had appeared, they must take off his helmet. Although people were puzzled, they decided to go and see what was happening. Meanwhile, Guojijiang was overjoyed seeing the boss on Jiachuan Bridge. But Lien Jishuan was somewhat suspicious if that person was really the boss. Guojijiang insisted it must be. After all, that's the handmade unique helmet I made for him. Then he rushed forward recklessly, desperate to get to the boss's side. But Lien Jishuan still felt this was a fake boss, even though that was indeed the boss's helmet. And it couldn't have been stolen by someone else. So much so that Lien Jishuan got distracted during the fight. Fortunately, Guojijiang's timely warning alerted Lien Jishuan to watch his back, allowing him to block the attack just in time. However, this only made Lien Jishuan more confused. He had just met the boss when the Federation guys rushed over. Upon seeing Li Xiaomu, ranked 5th, Zheng Taizhong politely came over to greet him. But Li Xiaomu didn't pay much attention, as he usually wouldn't do anything else while exercising. He only came because he heard there was an interesting event nearby. After saying this, he turned to look at Huang Wudi, demanding to know why he hadn't shown his face for so long. "I feel like I'm about to rust. Finally, I have a chance to take him down." He then charged towards Huang Wudi like a madman. This scene made Zheng Taizhong behind him break out in a cold sweat. He hadn't expected that rumor to be true, Li Xiaomu was someone who trained relentlessly just to surpass Huang Wudi. But before he could get close to Huang Wudi, Guo Zhijiang intercepted him. The moment they met, tension filled the air, and they immediately started fighting. Li Xiaomu held his ground, matching Guo Zhijiang blow for blow. There was a saying within the Federation. The top 5 ranked members could each take on an Emperor Gang captain one-on-one. At first, Zhang Taizheng didn't believe it, but now he was convinced. But the next second, a fist smashed into Zhang Taizheng's face, sending him flying. The one who threw the punch was Jin Zishian, captain of the 4th squad. He then turned to look around, because more and more Federation members were arriving. New fighters kept joining the battle. There were 3 Emperor Gang leaders here, and if this continued, the skirmish would escalate into a full-scale war. At that point, not only would they fail to allay the leader's suspicions, but one mistake could cause the entire Emperor Gang to fall apart. So, Huang Xiaomin, what exactly are you trying to do? Everyone knows that sneaky people who kick others during a one-on-one fight will be cursed at. But Li Xiaomu forgot that he had also launched a sneak attack when he first arrived. Luckily, Guo Zhijiang warned him in time, allowing Lin Jixuan to barely block the attack. That kick just now was Lin Jixuan's retaliation. Guo Zhijiang angrily berated Lin Jixuan, asking how he could interfere in someone else's duel. This way, even if that guy loses, he'll have an excuse to cry foul later. To escape Guo Zhijiang's nagging, Lin Jixuan deliberately pointed towards the boss, gesturing for him to look that way. On the Jiachuan Bridge, a group of people were rushing towards the boss. Seeing this, Guo Zhijiang became enraged, completely forgetting about his fight with Li Xiaomu. He desperately wanted to be by the boss's side right away. Li Xiaomu also cursed under his breath before rushing towards the bridge. He wanted to defeat Huang Wudi with his own hands. Little did they know, the Federation members only wanted to remove the boss's helmet, though they didn't know why. Completing the strategist's orders would surely bring rewards. But this was no easy task. They could only use their numbers to firmly restrain the boss. Jin Lechuan, weighed down by his equipment, couldn't break free from the restraints. So he used his hand to hold onto the helmet to prevent it from being removed. Finally, unable to hold on any longer, he chose to jump off. Just as Guo Zhijiang reached the bridge, he saw the boss fall into the water. He witnessed the moment the boss fell into the water. Unable to contain his anger, he charged straight at the enemies before him. Lin Jixuan also saw this scene. He couldn't believe that the boss had been pushed off by a few Federation nobodies. When Jin Lechuan surfaced, he had reached the other side of Jiachuan Bridge. But as soon as he got ashore, he was startled by LV Shangcai standing in front of him. He was so shocked that he couldn't even hold onto his helmet, which fell to the ground. Meanwhile, the battle on the other side wasn't over yet. New enemies kept joining the fight at regular intervals. Although Jin Zishian was a formidable fighter, he was now drenched in sweat. So he couldn't help but look towards Huang Xiaomin, wanting to know what his next move would be. After all, the fake Huang Wudi had already fallen off the bridge. It was only a matter of time before his identity was exposed. How exactly are you going to prove that the boss is still alive? Just having someone appear wearing Huang Wudi's helmet won't prove anything. Perhaps Guo Zhijiang would believe it, but the captain of the 3rd squad wouldn't be so easily fooled. Moreover, Lin Jixuan was already suspicious and wanted to confirm with his own eyes. The boss had fallen into the water just across the bridge. By the time the Federation members realized it, they wouldn't be able to catch up to him. But he suddenly stopped, because a group of people blocked his way. The leader was Wu Yunzi, ranked 4th. However, instead of fighting, he said something and then turned to leave. We don't have enough manpower to fight against the 4 of them together right now, so this is a meaningless war of attrition. But Lin Jixuan was shocked. Including the boss, there were exactly 4 people. Could it be that I guessed wrong? Even Jin Zishian was greatly surprised. He didn't know how Huang Xiaomin had managed it. It turned out that when the strategist confirmed that the person wearing Huang Wudi's helmet was Jin Lechuan, he called the president to confirm that Huang Wudi was still alive. The strategist didn't want the Emperor Gang members to know about the boss's death. When Huang Xiaomin saw the Federation members start to retreat, he finally smiled, because his gamble had paid off. After all, in this situation, the only person who could prove Huang Wudi was still alive wasn't Jin Lechuan or Huang Xiaomin, but the strategist, who wanted to eliminate Huang Wudi more than anyone else. Jin Lechuan was confused, not understanding why LV Shangcai had left without saying a word, but he was too embarrassed to ask, so he just picked up his helmet and left, cursing under his breath. Little did he know, Li Xiaomu had witnessed this scene from behind, but as a battle maniac, he couldn't understand the situation before him. He could only mutter, "Damn it, what's going on?" The twin brothers had vastly different fates. The older brother was physically strong but simple-minded. He ruled half of H country's underworld but ultimately died in a car accident orchestrated by his girlfriend. The younger brother was physically weak but intelligent. He manipulated the emperor gang his brother had created with ease. Even Jin Zhexian from the same faction had to admire his courage, praising him as worthy of being Huang Wudi's brother by blood. Huang Xiaomin successfully used the strategist to dispel the two captains' suspicions. Among them, Guo Zhijiang from the combat group was crying his heart out. He felt the boss must be extremely disappointed in him. After all, it was his suspicion that called the boss out. Meanwhile, Lian Jishuan from the intelligence group had a completely different reaction. He mocked the other. Why is a grown man crying? Isn't it enough that the boss is alive? You've got some nerve to say that. It's all because you were fanning the flames on the side. How exasperated must the boss have been to be pushed off the bridge? Jin Zhexian tried to extract information from them. Your suspicion of the boss was normal. He has been acting strange lately. Not only has he not appeared for a whole month, but he's been giving orders through messages. Anyone in their right mind would be suspicious, right? So, have your doubts been cleared now? That's not important. The strategist withdrew the Federation's forces after confirming. This proves we were wrong. After all, the strategist wouldn't be scared by a fake boss, nor would he claim a fake to be real. This was all part of Huang Xiaomin's plan. However, speaking of plans, this was more like the only choice. Because when the captains were suspecting internal members, the strategist, as an outsider, became the most credible person. Jin Zhexian became curious about this. Why do you think the strategist doesn't want to reveal that Huang Wudi is gone? I once told the strategist about Huang Wudi's death, but he didn't tell anyone. So I suspected he might want to secretly get the phone and manipulate the Emperor gang. That's why I deliberately made a big fuss. This way, I could make the captains believe Huang Wudi is still alive. Jin Zhexian was impressed by this analysis. However, there's one thing that bothers me. When they left, they said something strange. They told me not to tell Park Sukha about today's events. I don't understand. Did you call the boss out without his knowledge? That's about right, but I can't reveal more. It's for the sake of the Emperor gang. Even Huang Xiaomin was puzzled, not understanding why they wanted to keep this from the captain of the first squad. Initially, he thought everything was Park Sukha's doing, but now they were keeping secrets from him. So Huang Xiaomin began to analyze this. They called the boss out because they suspected an imposter. Surely Huang Wudi's death couldn't be related to Park Sukha? Jin Zhexian said, although I don't know the specific reason, secrecy between captains is a sign of organizational division. This isn't good in our war against the Federation. After all, only a stable organization can lead to victory in war. And resolving internal issues is also the leader's responsibility. Huang Xiaomin sighed, there's so much to do. Tough day for you though. I'll keep this in mind. By the way, I almost forgot about this. Since we're talking about stability, let's discuss the ace. I have a suitable candidate here. Meanwhile, Jin Lichuan was agonizing over today's events. He didn't know how to apologize to LV Shangcai, and the other hadn't replied to his messages. Jin Lichuan was at a loss. He couldn't help but complain. Why did he have to see that scene? What confuses me most is, why did that usually invisible guy come to check in person? Jin Lichuan only felt slightly relieved when he remembered what Huang Xiaomin had told him. Initially, Jin Lichuan had refused. He felt guilty about deceiving LV Shang, but Huang Xiaomin told him, your purpose for coming to Big Phil was to defeat Huang Wudi, not to make friends with LV Shangcai. Although it might sound inappropriate, the Big Phil Federation led by LV Shangcai is also a notorious organization. In fact, our school was once absorbed by the Federation and humiliated. This has led some people to believe that LV Shangcai is just like Huang Wudi. So he's someone you can use, not someone to be loyal to. You wouldn't selectively apply your sense of justice just because he's been nice to you, would you? Thinking about this, he couldn't help but sigh. It was all because that Huang Xiaomin guy was too persuasive. But come to think of it, he wasn't wrong. Looks like I'll have to deal with Huang Wudi on my own from now on. Just as this thought crossed his mind, LV Shangcai called. He wanted to take this opportunity to explain what happened earlier. But to his surprise, LV Shangcai didn't seem to care about it. Instead, he asked if Jin Lichuan was at home. If so, he should come out for a bit. I'm right outside your house. The scene shifts to a hospital room, where Ma Heli had just finished a phone call with Huang Xiaomin. Suddenly, an unexpected person entered. It was Guo Zhijiang, the captain of the Emperor Gang's second squad. Before Ma Heli could react, he was already at her bedside. He threatened her to answer his questions truthfully. Don't think I won't do anything rash. I've been very worried about our Emperor Gang lately, so I've become extremely paranoid. And you're a rather unique woman, who occasionally says strange things and is hard to read. But you do have a cunning side. However, because you're the boss's woman, I had to put aside my suspicions for now. There's one thing that, no matter how I think about it, just doesn't make sense. That is, you're actually dating the man who turned your own brother into a vegetable, and you appeared right after the boss put him in that state. So, can you tell me? Why are you with the boss? Ma Heli chuckled at this, revealing an eerie expression. What else could it be? Of course, it's because I love him that I'm dating him. These words made Guo Zhijiang grind his teeth in anger. He couldn't help but grab Ma Heli's hair. You crazy woman, don't joke with me. Weren't you hanging out with people who badmouthed the boss not long ago? You think I forgot? I might not have realized it then, but now I understand. You must be planning some silly scheme to get revenge on the boss. Am I right? In response, she swatted away his right hand, stating that Huang Wudi also knew she was his sister. You dare lie to me? Would the boss be with a woman who might stab him in the back? That's right. After all, love is inherently irrational. Just like how I fell in love with the man who left my own brother half dead. So our relationship isn't as superficial as you think. If you really don't trust me, you can ask him yourself. If you can't stand me, you can try to convince Emperor Brother, instead of secretly investigating me and then coming to cause trouble. In the end, Guo Zhijiang had to leave temporarily because security arrived. Ma Heli took this opportunity to mock him, telling him to talk to the boss properly. After all, you've done something that greatly disappointed Emperor Brother. This angered Guo Zhijiang so much that he broke free from the restraints and stormed off. All this was thanks to Huang Xiaomin's strategy, which made Guo Zhijiang believe Huang Wudi was still alive. This allowed her to take the initiative and leave him speechless. He didn't even have a way to verify and could only curse her as a vixen under his breath. However, before leaving, he warned Ma Heli. I may not understand what love is, but since the boss loves you, I'll let you off the hook. But just in case, I still have to say this. If you're trying to get revenge on the boss, you've picked the wrong person. The reason the boss put your brother in this state was because he was induced and used by certain people. So don't do anything stupid, got it? In Guo Zhijiang's mind, the boss was the strongest man. The only one who could threaten him was Ma Heli. He never expected that high school student who hated evil would join the Emperor gang, becoming a subordinate to his own enemy. What could have happened to make Jin Lechuan make such a decision? It turned out that Jin Zhexian, the pride of Qingbi, had come to Dragon Day High. This scene shocked everyone. Even Song Minghua sighed that the pressure was too intense, 100 times stronger than facing Du Jianfu. I almost wet myself then. Now I feel like I'm about to soil myself. The next second, Jin Zhexian stopped in front of him and asked where the guy called Jin Lechuan was. Hearing this, the two people nearby couldn't help but gloat, thinking that kid was thoroughly targeted now. Just then, Jin Lechuan, who had heard the commotion, came over and surprisingly greeted the other party actively. Jin Zhexian remembered what Huang Xiaomin had told him. If you say the Emperor gang wants to recruit him, he'll definitely show strong resistance. But don't worry, I'll convince him. So Jin Zhexian was preparing to make a normal proposal, but before he could start, the other party surprisingly volunteered to join the Emperor gang. This scene surprised Huang Xiaomin greatly. He hadn't expected things to turn out differently from his expectations. Han Changxi and the other guys' jaws dropped, believing Jin Lechuan must have gone crazy. Jin Zhexian's reaction was different from the others. He appeared calm on the surface, but inside he thought, this is impossible. Something must have happened in between. It turned out that 2 days ago, LV Shangzai had approached Jin Lechuan, saying he hadn't realized at the Jiachuan Bridge that Jin Lechuan seemed to have fallen into the water because of the Federation people. Are you alright now? But Jin Lechuan felt extremely guilty. The other person cared so much about him, yet he had deceived him. He was so nervous that he started to stutter. LV Shangzai saw through his thoughts and told him not to take it to heart. This is a good strategy for you. After all, you came to Big Phil to get revenge on Huang Wudi. It's normal to want to use the Federation's power to deal with those troublesome captains. Although his little trick was seen through, he still felt guilty. After hesitating repeatedly, he decided to apologize to LV Shangzai. I told you it's okay, but you've surprised me quite a bit. I originally thought you were a fool who only cared about justice. I didn't expect you to be someone with human emotions. I came to find you this time because I support your revenge. This has nothing to do with the current standoff between the Emperor gang and the Federation. It's simply because bad people should be punished. So, now that I know how much you want to take down Huang Wudi, I want to suggest something. Since it's come to this point, why don't you join the Emperor gang? Hearing these words, Jin Lechuan was shocked and immediately protested loudly. Don't be ridiculous. You want me to be Huang Wudi's underling? This reaction was within LV Shangzai's expectations. So LV Shangzai told him, if you follow my instructions, you'll definitely be able to take down Huang Wudi. To achieve his goal, Jin Lechuan was willing to do anything, even if it meant being Huang Wudi's dog. Jin Zhexian, unable to confirm his suspicions, cautiously looked at Huang Xiaomin. After getting a confirming nod, he agreed to the request. He told Jin Lechuan to go to Donghai Park after school, then left directly. But the people present weren't so calm. If Jin Lechuan really became a gang member, wouldn't he be in charge of the school under the Emperor gang's management? As people were whispering among themselves, someone's arrival interrupted them. It was Du Jianfu, the school bully of Dragon Day High. But now he couldn't suppress his inner joy. Since Jin Lechuan was acquainted with the Federation's strategist, this must be the strategist's plan. So as soon as he saw Jin Zishian, he started mocking. You personally coming to recruit gang members really shows your sincerity, doesn't it? But Jin Zishian didn't want to engage, only reminding them to gather the Emperor Gang's protection fee next month as well. Despite this, Du Jianfu's smile remained. He believed the strategist wanted to plant a spy within the Emperor Gang. Then, when the Federation regained the upper hand, perhaps Dragon Day wouldn't have to be under that damned Emperor Gang's control anymore. That way, he could control these guys again and collect more protection fees from them. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but break into a maniacal grin. Jin Lechuan's thoughts, however, were completely different from Du Jianfu's. He hadn't expected joining the Emperor Gang would be so easy. It wasn't until Huang Xiaomin came over to chat that he snapped out of his shock. So the two started talking. Huang Xiaomin learned that the strategist wanted Jin Lechuan to infiltrate the enemy ranks, to attack Huang Wudi's weak points. Plus, Jin Lechuan originally thought he should use his brain more, so he decided to pursue effectiveness. Meanwhile, Huang Xiaomin was pondering what scheme the strategist was playing this time. The strategist had clearly been used, yet he gave Jin Lechuan such a proposal. Actually, it wouldn't be strange if he was angry. But he's really generous, not only suggesting I be a spy in return, but even saying that as long as I join the Emperor Gang and give him information, he'll definitely create opportunities for me to take down the boss. At this point, Huang Xiaomin understood the strategist's intentions. So he told Jin Lechuan, this is indeed a good method. If you provide information beneficial to the Federation, it will increase the chances of eliminating those Emperor Gang captains. But before they could chat much longer, the bell for PE class rang. Meanwhile, Huang Xiaomin took the opportunity to think. When the strategist suggested Jin Lechuan enter the Emperor Gang, he must have considered that if I were really a fake boss, this would also reach my ears. Can I take this as a signal that he no longer suspects me? If not, could he be trying to turn the tables and openly verify once again whether I'll play tricks on Jin Lechuan, who's acting as a spy? Thinking of this, he couldn't help but smirk slightly, because the development of events was too much to his liking. From the strategist's perspective, if I'm not a fake boss, he can benefit through Jin Lechuan spying in the Emperor Gang. Conversely, if I am a fake boss, then I'd have to pretend not to know about Jin Lechuan leaking information to avoid suspicion. In other words, the Federation benefits either way. Moreover, during Gua Zhijiang's rescue earlier, the strategist had already considered the possibility of spies within the Federation. And after this Huang Wudi appearance incident, he must have seen that Jin Lechuan was ready to take more practical action for revenge. I originally hoped he'd suggest Jin Lechuan infiltrate the Emperor Gang as a spy based on these two events. I didn't expect it to actually happen as I wished. Since that's the case, there's no need for me to suggest that Jin Lechuan leak information to the strategist after joining the Emperor Gang. If you ask me why I'm creating this situation that's clearly disadvantageous to myself, it's because I can use this to lay the groundwork for a future surprise attack on the strategist. So, strategist, remember that seemingly free benefits always come with a price, whose vision will prove more far-sighted in the end. The boy was willing to be his enemy's dog just for revenge. He almost didn't even qualify to be a dog. It turns out that just now, Jin Lechuan had gone to Donghai Park as agreed, but they hadn't prepared any welcome ceremony for him. On the contrary, the atmosphere here was terrifyingly cold, because Jin Lechuan had to take the gang entry test. The next second, several Emperor Gang members surrounded him. At first, Jin Lechuan thought he just needed to defeat them, until Jin Zishian came in front of him and said, "Your opponent is me. However, you don't need to defeat me. Just fight me within the area these guys have marked out. If you can last 10 minutes without being knocked out of bounds and land one punch on me, you pass. Conversely, if you're knocked out of bounds or fail to hit me within 10 minutes, you'll be eliminated." Hearing this, Jin Lechuan scoffed disdainfully. He thought the other was underestimating him. If the test ends too quickly, you might be embarrassed. Don't you mind? Then he threw a punch at his fastest speed, but Jin Zishian dodged it by stepping aside. Actually, this was all within Jin Lechuan's expectations. That previous attack was just setting up for his next strike. This way, the opponent wouldn't be able to dodge. But unexpectedly, Jin Zishian's flexibility was astonishing. He not only completely dodged it, but also counterattacked using Jin Lechuan's follow-through. He kicked Jin Lechuan flying. I forgot to mention earlier, if you pass out, you'll also be eliminated. Meanwhile, at another location, Song Minghua was discussing Jin Lechuan with Huang Xiaomin. He should be considered somewhat famous now. Otherwise, he wouldn't have joined the Emperor Gang so easily. But Huang Xiaomin didn't think so, because he had talked with Jin Zishian earlier. I'll persuade Jin Lechuan to join the Emperor Gang, but he must pass my serious test first. Huang Xiaomin had told Jin Zishian to go easy on him. After all, I don't intend to use his fighting skills. But on this point, Jin Zishian refused to budge. While I greatly admire your bold strategy, we absolutely cannot equate this war with a game of chess, because the gang members in the Emperor Gang are different from chess pieces. Each of them is a person with independent thoughts, and their loyalty comes from the pride of belonging to the Emperor Gang. So, without going through any test, suddenly parachuting in an unheard of ace is equivalent to insulting their pride. This will immediately turn into suspicion of the captains, and then severely damage my credibility. If that happens, I won't be able to fully implement the tactics. But Huang Xiaomin didn't understand and asked, "What tactics?" "Our goal is to destroy the Big Phil Federation. If you set up flag after flag to indicate the necessary route to reach the destination, that's strategy. Then, thinking of countermeasures and taking action to reach the destination is tactics. And victory in war comes from a combination of strategy and tactics. So even if the strategy is flawless, if it can't be executed, the tactics become meaningless. Although I don't know what kind of strategy you plan to use Jin Lichuan for. Simply put, if he's not someone who can gain the recognition of the gang members, then you must abandon this strategy. I'm glad I chose to work with you. Everything you just said was indeed something I overlooked. Let's do it your way then. Hold a serious initiation test. Although in my mind, I already have a method to use Jin Lichuan to attack the strategist's weak points, but as Brother Zishian said, if Jin Lichuan can't join the Emperor Gang fair and square, then my method will completely lose its meaning. However, at that time, he even struggled against Guo Zhijiang, and Brother Zishian's strength is above Guo Zhijiang's. If Jin Lichuan hasn't improved at all since then, he won't be able to pass Brother Zishian's test, and the result was just as Huang Xiaomin had predicted. At this moment, Jin Lichuan was being beaten one-sidedly, but 5 minutes had already passed. If he couldn't land a hit on the opponent in the remaining time, Jin Lichuan would be eliminated. But during this process, he learned that Jin Zishian not only had strength and speed, but also excellent flexibility. This reminded him of Guo Zhijiang, whom he had encountered before. He couldn't help but complain, "Are all the Emperor Gang guys monsters?" Before he could think further, Jin Zishian attacked again with a punch. It hit Jin Lichuan hard, almost knocking him out of the designated area. Fortunately, he managed to grab onto someone nearby, stabilizing his footing. The rules didn't say he couldn't touch them, so Jin Zishian didn't say anything. But there were only 3 minutes left. "If this continues, you'll have to admit you're just all talk." Jin Lichuan replied, "I hate such people too, but if you asked me to cut down a tree in an hour, I'd spend 45 minutes sharpening the axe. So from now on, I'm going to start chopping." Meanwhile, the other two were discussing whether to go to Donghai Park to watch. Just then, a beautiful woman appeared, looking around. This caught Song Minggua's attention. He complained that he might never experience a beautiful woman suddenly grabbing him and running off. But the next second, she ran towards the two of them. However, she didn't grab Song Minggua's hand, but Huang Xiaomin's. This scene left Song Minghua dumbfounded, unable to react for a long time. Even Huang Xiaomin didn't understand what was happening, but Ma Heli said she had urgent business. For someone with such a strong sense of justice, he's even more vicious than villains when it comes to tricks, because this was his only way to win. It turns out that with only 3 minutes left in the initiation test, Jin Lichuan finally landed a hit on Jin Zishian, but his attack was blocked, which according to the rules, still didn't count. So he prepared to capitalize on his momentum and continue attacking Jin Zishian. But unexpectedly, the other caught his follow-through and counterattacked, sending him flying with one punch. When Jin Lichuan managed to stand up again, there was only 1 minute left. Meanwhile, Jin Zishian felt sorry for Huang Xiaomin. With this level of skill, he couldn't possibly pass the test. But the next second, he saw a smile appear on Jin Lichuan's face. Just as he was puzzled, the other had already rushed to his front. So he dodged sideways and raised his hand to counterattack. Unexpectedly, Jin Lichuan pulled a dirty trick, throwing a handful of dirt at his face. This successfully interrupted Jin Zishian's punch, but didn't temporarily blind him, because Jin Zishian had quickly used his hand to protect his eyes. However, this also greatly surprised him. He hadn't expected this kid to grab a handful of dirt when getting up. Jin Lichuan took this chance to attack his opponent. Unexpectedly, Jin Zishian's reaction was amazing, managing to dodge this attack while launching a back kick. This made Jin Lichuan complain that Jin Zishian's combat ability was too exaggerated. But he didn't give up, instead choosing to take the hit to his face. Then he used all his strength to grab Jin Zishian's right leg. Because Jin Zishian had already lost his balance, this was his only chance. The result was that Jin Zishian fell to the ground. When he tried to stand up again, Jin Lichuan immediately jumped on him, pinning him down. This meant he couldn't get up for a short while. Thus, the two were locked in a stalemate. This scene made the onlookers comment in amazement. This guy actually wants to use that position to restrain the captain and push him out of bounds. At this point, Jin Zishian was only a few centimeters from the red line. He was shaking with anger. "You bastard. You seemed so determined before, but now you're trying to win through such underhanded methods?" As he said this, his hands were also gripping the ground tightly. Although Jean Lechuan didn't want to win in such an embarrassing way either, he had no choice. "I have to admit, I can't defeat Huang Wudi as I am now. The idea of making him kneel before me for revenge was too arrogant. So even if I have to crawl on the ground like a lowlife, or use despicable methods, I need to find a way to defeat him. In the current situation, this is the only way I can win." However, within the time limit, he still failed to push Jean Zetian out of bounds. But Jean Zetian let him pass the test anyway. At this point, Jean Lechuan finally sighed in relief and collapsed on the ground, because every time he finished lower body exercises, he would feel dizzy. Jean Zetian then walked to his subordinates, took a prepared uniform, and threw it to Jean Lechuan. He praised Jean Lechuan's tactics as excellent and welcomed him to the Emperor Gang. But the others didn't welcome him, because he had thrown dirt at the captain earlier, which was too despicable. However, in that instant of power struggle, he did overpower Captain Zetian. From this perspective, he's tougher than normal people. It's better not to provoke him casually, or the consequences might be severe. Seeing that his desired effect was achieved, Jean Zetian breathed a sigh of relief. Just as he was about to call Huang Chaomin to report this matter, the other party called first. He said that a big problem had occurred. The Federation people had kidnapped Maheli. The girl only said one sentence, but it made everyone present break out in a cold sweat, because her boyfriend turned out to be the famous Huang Wudi. It turns out that just now, Maheli wanted to take Huang Chaomin to see something. But when they were about to take a shortcut, they ran into a group of Federation people. The man in charge, upon seeing Maheli, was deeply attracted and invited her on a date. Huang Chaomin whispered in her ear, suggesting they take another route. Unexpectedly, Maheli seemed to have eaten gunpowder today. She directly told the man to get lost. This scared Huang Chaomin so much his jaw dropped. He questioned, "What are you doing? Couldn't we just walk in another direction?" If it were usual times, Maheli would definitely handle such situations smoothly, but what's wrong with her today? The man, feeling treated like a nobody, was very displeased. He prepared to teach her a lesson. Otherwise, the Federation's face would be lost. But this attack was blocked by Huang Chaomin. He said, "I'm sorry, brothers. She's particularly sensitive today for some reason. We're just ordinary passers-by." Hearing this, the group was slightly taken aback, not expecting an apology. But then they burst into laughter, because this scene seemed familiar to them. It was like those cliches where someone pretends to be weak to avoid conflict. Seeing them misunderstand, Huang Chaomin quickly explained, "That's not what I meant." But he also knew conflict was now unavoidable. So he whispered to Maheli, telling her to escape first. However, the lead man wasn't about to let them go. The next second, he was sprayed in the face with pepper spray. He couldn't open his eyes from the pain and called for help loudly. Huang Chaomin was surprised that Maheli would carry such a thing. But given the current situation, this only added fuel to the fire. So he grabbed Maheli and started running. But her hair was caught by the other side, forcefully pulling her back. Seeing this, Huang Chaomin cursed, "Damn it," and charged back towards the crowd. In the end, not only was he beaten black and blue, but he also failed to rescue Maheli. With no other choice, he had to call Jean Zetian for help. Before leaving, that man told him if he wanted to save his girlfriend, to come to Gaoshou Industrial. But this school's location was quite awkward. It was surrounded by Federation-controlled Dundang and Dairim. They might be surrounded. Moreover, this wasn't within the Emperor Gang's sphere of influence, so he had no reason to suddenly deploy gang members there. The situation was tricky. They'd have to fight their way through while advancing. Seeing this, Jean Zetian said he would lead the attack. Huang Chaomin was slightly taken aback, about to say something. Jean Zetian mentioned that Maheli had once promised that the moment the Emperor Gang defeated the Federation, she could dissolve the Emperor Gang, making this troublesome big Phil battlefield disappear instantly. Although Maheli is a woman, she's also our comrade in arms. Our comrade in arms. So I can't ignore her situation. But the current situation is very unfavorable for us. Jean Zetian then said, "Tactics and strategy are equally important. I've been benefiting from your insights all along. This time, leave it to my tactics. If that's the case, then I'll trouble you with this matter. I'll also find ways to help." After hanging up the phone, Huang Chaomin was in a dilemma. Although Jean Zetian's abilities were undoubted, he was essentially delivering himself into the tiger's mouth. Meanwhile, at Gaoshou Industrial, someone rushed out of the library to report to the two men. They said Maheli claimed to be Huang Wudi's girlfriend, and no one dared to touch her. Hearing this, the man pushed through the crowd, grabbed Maheli's collar, and sneered. "What nonsense! Huang Wudi's girlfriend? Even if you were. So what? Call Huang Wudi here. I'll beat him to a pulp." However, Maheli saw through his bluff with one glance. "Although you talk big, your eyes are darting around. If you really had the confidence to defeat Huang Wudi, you would have dealt with me already. instead of just grabbing my collar. Am I right, you coward scared of Huang Wudi? The man's eyes turned red with anger. He could no longer suppress his inner rage. He raised his fist, intending to teach Ma Heli a lesson, but his fist stopped in midair. Because at that moment, the sound of motorcycle engines came from outside. When one of the underlings looked out the window, he saw that the Emperor gang had arrived. On his first day joining the gang, the boy was already isolated. It was supposed to be a group activity, but they didn't include the newcomer. Little did he know this was at his good brother's request, because he had seen Ma Heli before. Just now, the Emperor gang had raided the United Association's Gaosho industry. When the boss Gao Jibing learned of this, he was suddenly jolted awake. No longer paying attention to the two beauties beside him, he went straight to the balcony. Looking at the scene before him, he couldn't help but frown, because his position wasn't due to money, nor was it due to his fighting skills, but his connections, the so-called backing. Gao Jibing had long understood this point. Even though his grades were good, he still chose to follow Brother Fengshan to Gaosho industry. After all, back in the nursery building, Brother Fengshan had taken care of him like a real brother. Gao Jibing's strategy was perfect. Under Brother Fengshan's favor, he naturally became someone the whole school dared not to provoke. Brother Fengshan's reputation intimidated students of the same grade. In front of Gao Jibing, they were no match. So he naturally became the candidate for the next school bully. To establish his image, he imitated Brother Fengshan's hairstyle and beard. He copied the hairstyle, beard, and all other details to match Brother Fengshan's style, finally successfully inheriting the position of Gaosho Industries' boss. This position was more wonderful than he had imagined. Whether it was money, reputation, or women, he could easily obtain them. So he chose to join the United Association to enjoy these benefits more freely, and used the geographical advantage of the school's distance to implement a plan of eating, drinking, and having fun for a year before graduating smoothly. The fact that the Emperor gang had suddenly raided Gaosho industry was hard for Gao Jibing to accept. Why test my leadership at this time? He questioned his underling if this was a prank, to tell him the truth quickly. It couldn't be that the Emperor gang was just bored and decided to invade our school, right? It was then that he learned some members had brought a girl to play with. But that girl seemed to be Huang Wudi's girlfriend, which led to this situation. Gao Jibing broke out in a cold sweat upon hearing this, and was about to ask who was responsible for this mess when he suddenly remembered something. So he stopped and confirmed with his underling, is that girl really Huang Wudi's girlfriend? It should be right, after all, we just brought her back. The Emperor gang's people raided this place right after. I think it's better to send that girl back and deal with the current situation. Otherwise, causing trouble for no reason and losing would also make us lose face in the United Association. But Gao Jibing rejected his underling's suggestion, instead seeing this as an opportunity. This was a chance for him to climb to an even higher position. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but smile. So he told his underling to bring that girl to him. Meanwhile, Jean Lichuan sat on a wooden chair, deep in thought. He was very curious if these guys wearing this jacket had any complaints about being summoned to war at any time. If that's really the case, what kind of person is this Huang Wudi? At this moment, he received a text message. The scene shifts to the battlefield at Gaosho Industry. The students here were being beaten one-sidedly. Despite this, Jin Zhexian didn't dare to dawdle, urging his subordinates to hurry. The United Association's reinforcements could arrive at any time. To quickly resolve the battle, the Emperor gang members began to employ tactics. After driving the United Association guys into one area, under Jin Zhexian's lead, they used parallel driving, sending the enemies flying. This scene surprised Jin Zhexian. He didn't expect it to go so smoothly. Only Jin Lichuan felt a bit regretful for not experiencing such a scene. At present, except for a few captains of the Emperor gang, no one else knew that Ma Heli was Huang Wudi's girlfriend. In other words, this battle is officially a guerrilla attack on Gaosho Industry. I must rescue Ma Heli alone. In another classroom, Ma Heli understood why Gao Jibing had called her over. So she told him to call the strategist immediately, which confused Gao Jibing. The king's woman revealing her identity. What was her intention? The man just shouted one sentence through a megaphone, causing everyone to burst into laughter. Rather than saying the gang leader has a girlfriend, it's more like he wants to go back to school. Because in everyone's eyes, the gang leader is just a guy who only knows how to fight. It turns out that not long ago, the United Association's people had kidnapped Ma Heli. Huang Chaomin was puzzled. Ma Heli actually brought self-defense items. Given her personality, it's impossible for her to carry such things. Could it be that she sensed some danger? What was she trying to show me earlier? Judging by her appearance, she seemed very anxious. No matter what the reason, I need to rescue her as soon as possible. Meanwhile, Ma Heli wanted Gao Jibing to call the strategist. Tell him that the person they caught is Huang Wudi's girlfriend. But Gao Jibing didn't follow her request, instead giving her a slap. He said, "You might have misunderstood something. Although my underlings were a bit scared when they heard you were Huang Wudi's girlfriend. But I'm different from them. I'm good at analyzing the big picture. This place is behind the front lines. If the Emperor Gang's people come here, they might easily be surrounded. Huang Wudi probably wouldn't want to commit troops. But now, just because you were captured at Gaoshou Industry, they pounced on us like hungry wolves. This shows that Huang Wudi values you greatly. So, it's not me who's in a passive position, but the Emperor who's trying to rescue you. Just as Gao Jiabing finished speaking, an underling burst in with a megaphone. Then Gao Jiabing, grabbing Ma Heli with his left hand and holding the megaphone with his right, walked to the window. He shouted to the crowd, "Friends from the Emperor Gang, hello. I'm the boss of Gaoshou Industry." Gao Jiabing's shout successfully attracted the attention of others. "Although I don't know why you're here. Take a good look at her. This is your empress. Also Huang Wudi's girlfriend. So from now on, if anyone dares to move, I'll throw this girl down. It's only the 3rd floor. But for such a fragile girl falling from here, she'd at least break some bones, maybe even die. If that happens, your gang leader will surely be heartbroken. And you guys who couldn't take appropriate action certainly won't get off just with a group scolding. If you understand, form 2 columns and kneel down." After saying this, Gao Jiabing couldn't help but snicker. What a bunch of idiots, we have a hostage. Yet they dare to barge in so openly. The underling seeing this also chuckled. The boss might like women, but he's reliable in situations like this. Meanwhile, the guy who brought Ma Heli back finally realized that girl really was Huang Wudi's girlfriend. So he waved at the Emperor Gang members, signaling them to come and kneel quickly. But the two were very confused, not knowing what he wanted. The man was clearly not on the same page as them. Just as he thought the two were about to kneel, he was met with a beating instead. It turns out Ma Heli insisting she was Huang Wudi's girlfriend in this situation was something they hadn't expected. How could their gang leader have a girlfriend? Hearing this, Gao Jiabing broke out in a cold sweat, suddenly deflating like a balloon. He thought, if that's the case, why did they come? Maybe a rumor spread that Gaoshou Industries' boss is a wimp. At these words, Gao Jiabing gritted his teeth in anger. Since you're no longer valuable. With that, he threw Ma Heli from the 3rd floor, then turned to leave, preparing to report this to the strategist. But Ma Heli, falling from the height, was caught just in time by Jin Zhexian, who had arrived, successfully saving her. Jin Zhexian told her to leave first, as he still had to lead the 4th squad members out. After all, supporters from United Association-affiliated schools would arrive soon. As for Gao Jiabing, he reported this to the strategist and requested his support. But the strategist was furious, believing the other side was purely making things up. How could the Emperor Gang possibly come to Gaoshou Industry? Just as Gao Jiabing was about to explain, he felt a chill down his spine. Jin Zhexian had somehow made it to the 3rd floor, his whole body radiating killing intent, intending to teach a lesson to the trash who threw a woman out the window before leaving. Although both were school bullies, their strength was worlds apart. Gao Jiabing had gained his position by imitating someone, while Jin Zhexian was destined to be a leader from birth. Seeing Jin Zhexian approach, Gao Jiabing broke out in a cold sweat, because he knew very well he was no match. To avoid conflict, he urged Jin Zhexian to leave, citing incoming reinforcements. "You can rest assured about that. I'll definitely finish you off before your reinforcements arrive." Saying this, he charged straight at Gao Jiabing, delivering an elbow strike to his stomach. That wasn't all, followed by a smooth series of small combos, sending Gao Jiabing flying. Just as he steadied himself, Jin Zhexian attacked again, a sweeping kick knocking him head over heels. When he finally managed to get up, his whole body was shaking with pain. But his first action was to look around, and only after confirming no one was there did he breathe a sigh of relief. He urged Jin Zhexian to leave, saying the United Association's allied forces would arrive soon. "If this continues, your people will surely be beaten to a pulp, and it'll be difficult for you too. Why don't we give each other a way out and cut our losses?" Gao Jiabing did this to avoid others seeing him being overwhelmingly defeated. A boss can only keep his subordinates in check by maintaining an imposing image. As for the United Association, it meant nothing to him. Only enjoying the present was most important. These words disappointed Jin Zhexian. He didn't expect his opponent to be this kind of person. Regarding a way out, "I can create my own." Saying this, he kicked Gao Jiabing out of the school building. The underling looked at the boss lying in his arms, breaking out in a cold sweat. At this time, the battle outside was also nearing its end. Meanwhile, the strategist had just confirmed the news, learning that Jin Zhexian had brought about a platoon's worth of men. The reason he did this was because a girl claimed to be Huang Wudi's girlfriend. However, I'm not sure if this information is true or false. If that's the case, use Dunzhong and Dailin's people to subdue them. They are trapped rats no matter what. This is a good opportunity to make the 4th squad suffer a setback. Please swallow up these guys who dare to run wild right under our noses. The bosses of the 2 schools received the order and immediately organized. Meanwhile, Jin Zhexian had just come out of the classroom when his underlings immediately surrounded him to report the situation. The United Association's reinforcements will arrive soon. It's time for us to withdraw. Don't worry, I just took a look around and found a small path behind the school. So we'll go that way this time. But the underlings behind him were very confused, because the direction he pointed to was a dead end. At the same time, the reinforcements had arrived at Gaoshou Industries school gate. Dun Zhang's boss Oh Chun-Xian wanted to charge in with his underlings, but was stopped by Dai Lin's boss Hong Qian. He told the other to take his men and wait at the dog hole, because there's a small path behind Gaoshou Industry. It's better for us with more motorcycles to block the school gate. Surrounding them outside is safer than charging in. Learning that Hong Qian wanted to wear them down, Oh Chun-Xian readily agreed. He led his underlings towards the dog hole, unaware he had been tricked, because Wu Yunza had said the strategist fully trusted them. And after Zhang Taizheng was taken down by Jin Zixian, the 10th place in the United Association had been vacant. According to the United Association's rules, although I don't know who's ranked 11th, based on overall evaluation, I'm definitely the 11th. In other words, if I can swallow up Jin Zixian who's fighting here, I can become the 10th in the United Association. So Hong Qian chose the school gate where the probability was higher, while Oh Chun-Xian led his men to the dog hole. Now both exits of Gaoshou Industry were blocked. The rest depends on which side Jin Zixian and his team break through. The sound of motorcycle engines came, and the two looked towards the source. But the result was unexpected. Jin Zixian flew out on a motorcycle. The people from the school followed closely behind and successfully flew out, confirming Jin Zixian's earlier statement that, if there's no way out, I'll make one myself. But can the 4th squad who broke through the encirclement really return safely? Jin Zixian simply said, "We'll go out from here." This scared the usually brave gang members, leaving them frozen in place, because the direction he pointed to was a wall, with no exit at all. It wasn't until Jin Zixian led them to the playground that they discovered the way out was actually the broken playground railing. Under Jin Zixian's command, everyone placed the railing against the wall, but they were still doubtful whether motorcycles could fly out along the railing. At this moment, someone came to report that the United Association's reinforcements had arrived, blocking the main gate and the dog hole entrance, preparing to wait for them to fall into the trap. As everyone hesitated, Jin Zixian revved his engine and went out first, wanting to set a good example for everyone. As a result, Jin Zixian successfully flew out, and the underlings behind him began to imitate, preparing to follow their captain's lead. On the other side, Gaoshou Industries' boss Gao Jiabing had just regained consciousness, trembling as he stood up, wondering why he was here. It wasn't until he saw the scene before him that he remembered what happened half an hour ago. All of this was because of that damned girl. As he said this, he finally reacted, looking around trying to find Maheli, but she wasn't among those lying on the ground. Gao Jiabing remembered clearly that he had thrown her down. This was the 3rd floor after all. She couldn't be unharmed, unless someone caught her. Plus the fact that I was successfully ambushed by the guerrilla team. Not only can I not maintain my position within Gaoshou Industry, I'll also become a laughingstock in the United Association. My only option now is to find that girl. If I can hand her over to the strategist, I can make a great contribution to the United Association. This way I can recover from this embarrassment. Meanwhile, a chase scene was unfolding on another street. To successfully surround the 4th squad members, Hong Qian chose to split his forces. He had half of his men continue the pursuit, while he led the rest to take a shortcut. Because he was very familiar with the nearby streets, the path the 4th squad took only had a right turn. All they needed to do next was to enter from both sides for a perfect encirclement. But would things really develop as he imagined? When the other group caught up, they found the Emperor Gang's people coming towards them, and their numbers seemed to have decreased. Jin Zixian smiled slightly. It's too late to realize now. You're the ones who've fallen into the trap. Then, a group of Emperor Gang members appeared behind them. This way, the United Association was truly caught between two fires. When Hong Qian arrived with his men, he saw this scene. It wasn't until he got off his bike to question that he learned Jin Zixian had diverted a group of men to attack from behind. Hong Qian was shaking with anger. He didn't expect Jin Zixian to have predicted his move, but he still chose to continue the pursuit. He didn't want to miss such a good opportunity for promotion. On the other side, Maheli, who was escaping, was stopped by the sudden appearance of Park Sukha, the captain of the 1st squad. She immediately broke out in a cold sweat, demanding to know if he had been following her all along. If that's really the case, then you stood by and watched as I was captured. It's clear you're Huang Wudi's enemy. Does not saving you mean I'm his enemy? It seems you have some misunderstandings. I have no obligation to help you, who has nothing to do with the Emperor Gang, because you're just that guy's woman. Although that's not wrong. If Emperor Brother heard what you just said, he'd probably be very hurt. After all, I'm your brother's girlfriend, and Huang Wudi loves me very much. If something were to happen to me, he'd certainly be heartbroken. Taking care of the gang leader's emotions should be within the second-in-command's responsibilities, right? You're quite the talker. No wonder you could hook Huang Wudi. Sorry, I seduced him with my face. This back and forth was witnessed by Huang Chaomin, who had just arrived. It turns out Ma Heli had sent a message to Huang Chaomin as soon as she escaped, so he took a taxi to Xing Street. As soon as Huang Chaomin got out of the car, he saw this scene on the street. Park Sukha was questioning Ma Heli. "Are you sure it was really Huang Wudi who saved you?" How would she answer this sharp question? The man just smiled, which scared the girl so much she trembled all over. Her eyes welled up with tears, and she couldn't help but choke up, because she knew him very well. She, who knew Huang Wudi was dead, absolutely wouldn't survive tonight. The story goes back to 3 days ago. Guo Zhijiang approached her and said, "If you want revenge, you're looking for the wrong person. The reason the gang leader turned your brother into this state is because he was manipulated by certain people." From that moment on, Ma Heli began to wonder if she had missed some clues. To verify her thoughts, she found her brother's friend, wanting to understand the situation when the Emperor gang attacked. But this action displeased them. They asked who she was. What right did she have to make them recall those damn memories? A man nearby recognized her identity. "Aren't you Ma Xiaxing's sister?" Seeing this situation, Ma Heli was very pleased, not only praising his good eyesight, but also proactively linking arms with the two, ready to find a place to sit down and chat. After some casual conversation, Ma Heli learned the following information. At that time, her brother's Mingyun was located far behind the Emperor gang's battle line, but Huang Wudi personally came there, and at that time, he had a murderous look on his face. This caused her brother to panic a lot, because things had developed beyond expectations. In the end, Ma Xiaxing was beaten into a vegetative state by Huang Wudi, but there was no connection between the two at all. In other words, Huang Wudi went to the rear of the battle line to attack someone he had never met before, personally going to the rear of the battle line. This was very different from the Huang Wudi that Ma Heli knew. In her memory, Huang Wudi was a man of steel, who wouldn't submit to anything, only acting on his own will and decisions. He was the embodiment of force, so who could possibly use and induce him to take certain actions? In Ma Heli's understanding, only two people could do such a thing. One was herself. The other was Park Sukha, Huang Wudi's only friend. So it was this bastard who provoked Huang Wudi to attack my brother. When Park Sukha noticed Ma Heli suddenly going quiet, he roughly guessed the truth, so he couldn't help but laugh. But this smile made Ma Heli very angry, because this was the second time she had seen Park Sukha smile. The first time was when Huang Wudi first introduced her to them. At that time, your expression was very subtle, but I still caught it. And after that, you never smiled like this again. This smile now, is it because you feel certain things are going smoothly? But Park Sukha's mouth twitched. He asked, "What exactly are you trying to say?" But just as he said this, he suddenly thought of something. So he showed a manic smile. "I guessed right, it was you who killed Huang Wudi." Ma Heli also frankly admitted the fact, because she knew she couldn't fool the guy in front of her. But this scene made Huang Chaomin, who was eavesdropping behind the wall, break out in a cold sweat, not understanding what Ma Heli was doing. "You followed me to confirm if things were going smoothly, right? If they are, you're going to deal with me. Who knows Huang Wudi is dead? Am I right?" It was only at this moment that Huang Chaomin realized. The reason Ma Heli wanted to bring self-defense items was that she felt her own safety was threatened. And that threat was Park Sukha, the captain of the Emperor gang's first squad. Just then, Ma Heli suddenly smiled. "You coward. What took you so long to get here?" This puzzling sentence made Park Sukha's body shudder. He turned around and saw Gao Jiabing coming in this direction, and the other also noticed him. In that instant, the fear of being overwhelmed by Jin Zixian, the captain of the Emperor gang's fourth squad, surged in Gao Jiabing's heart. This caused the motorcycle to skid. The accident caused the speeding motorcycle to crash into Park Sukha, while Ma Heli behind him was rescued in time by Huang Chaomin. But Ma Heli told him to run quickly. Park Sukha was still over there. It wasn't until Huang Chaomin spoke up that she learned Park Sukha wasn't moving anymore. But before the two could celebrate too early, Gao Jiabing shakily got up. He noticed Park Sukha lying on the ground and was slightly stunned. But to confirm whether he was dead, he had to crouch down beside Park Sukha. The next second, a smile appeared on his face. He boasted to the two in front of him. "You saw it just now, right? I personally took down the Emperor gang's second-in-command." The usually invincible gang captain now only had one last breath. It turns out that just now, Gao Jiabing's fear caused the motorcycle to skid, accidentally hitting Park Sukha. When Gao Jiabing realized this, he was immediately excited. So much so that he forgot the fear of almost causing a death. So he wanted to capture the two to gain even greater honor. Seeing this, Huang Chaomin prepared to stay behind to block him, to let Ma Heli run first. But after hesitating for a moment, she rushed over without hesitation. This scene puzzled Huang Chaomin. But in that moment of distraction, Huang Chaomin was thrown aside by Gao Jiabing, and his free hands allowed Gao Jiabing to easily block the attack. He couldn't help but mock her. "Did becoming Huang Wudi's girlfriend make you so arrogant?" But today you must pay the price for your loose tongue." Just as he was about to act, Ma Heli took out a can of pepper spray and sprayed it wildly at Gao Jibing's eyes. This successfully made him panic. Gao Jibing kept cursing Ma Heli, and his hands weren't idle either. But when Gao Jibing found this wasn't effective, he immediately stopped, swinging his fist to vent his anger. What annoyed him most was that she actually tried to use such a thing to take down him, a school bully. So he endured the pain, determined to teach Ma Heli a lesson. But on the other side, Huang Xiaomin suddenly rode his motorcycle and crashed into him. This light collision sent Gao Jibing flying over 10 meters. Even Huang Xiaomin was very surprised. He didn't expect the motorcycle to have such power, but he still took advantage of the other's unconsciousness to escape with Ma Heli. But at this time she asked Huang Xiaomin, "When did you arrive at the scene?" But before Ma Heli could finish speaking, Huang Xiaomin interrupted her, saying he had heard almost everything and could guess the rest. "But what I'm more curious about now is, where were you going to take me earlier?" "Then let's go. Huang Wudi's home is just nearby." Meanwhile, the fourth squad led by Jin Zixuan was still fleeing. But at a corner, he encountered pursuers. Jin Zixuan couldn't help but frown. They didn't expect them to keep using the remaining forces to chase us from other roads. Jin Zixuan quickly made a decision, directing everyone to follow him and escape from the left. Little did he know, this was exactly what the enemy wanted, as they had already arranged men there. The only thing that displeased him was that he had to cooperate with that idiot. But Oh Chen-hsien was even dumber than he imagined, actually letting his underlings use their bodies to crash into them. Faced with this situation, Jin Zixuan had to tell everyone to prepare for a breakthrough. Although the United Association's casualties were clearly more than theirs, due to the large number of opponents, quite a few teammates were still knocked down. Jin Zixuan looked at the scene behind him, cursed under his breath, and jumped off his motorcycle without hesitation, preparing to fight with the United Association crowd. But as the enemy reinforcements were about to arrive, Jin Zixuan realized the fourth squad couldn't escape by breaking through. So he charged towards the leader of this team. Before Oh Chen-hsien could react, Jin Zixuan knocked him to the ground with one punch. This punch intimidated everyone present. Jin Zixuan didn't hesitate, picked up a steel pipe from the ground and threw it forward. Hong Qian, riding a motorcycle, fearing he was the target, swerved to the right. As a result, he crashed into an underling, causing those behind to have accidents as well, all falling to the ground. Seeing his plan succeed, Jin Zixuan breathed a sigh of relief. But before he could rejoice for long, an underling came flying towards him. When Jin Zixuan turned to look, he found the fourth squad members constantly retreating. So he immediately rushed over, standing in front of his squad members. But when he saw the figure in front of him clearly, he couldn't help but shudder. The other person seemed relaxed, greeting Jin Zixuan, saying he was passing by and saw the fight here, so he came to take a look. The underlings behind, seeing only one person, urged Jin Zixuan to attack together. However, Jin Zixuan swallowed nervously, then shouted for all personnel to retreat at full speed, allowing unconditional withdrawal, because the man in front of them was Yu Yuan, the chairman of the Big Phil United Association. On the surface, he was a gentle and refined rich second generation, but in reality, he was a psychopathic gang strategist, because he had a unique hobby, that was to drive the enemy to desperation before hunting them down. Although this seemed terrifying to others, he found it very interesting. Every time he would send out 3 times the enemy's force to surround and kill them. But this time he had underestimated Jin Zixuan's fighting power. If their chairman hadn't happened to pass by, this operation would have ended in complete failure. When Jin Zixuan saw Yu Yuan, he immediately shouted for unconditional withdrawal to all personnel. At these words, everyone quickly ran towards their motorcycles. But Yu Yuan seemed very calm about this, showing no intention of pursuit. Instead, he made a phone call to the strategist, telling him they had started fleeing without looking back. Upon learning this news, the strategist called Quan Chuldu, ranked 3rd in the Big Phil United Association, because they would pass through his territory during their escape. So he asked him to split his forces into 3 routes and arrange his men at designated locations. After giving the orders, he made another phone call, this time to Wu Yuza, ranked 4th in the Big Phil United Association, who was also his mole planted on their side. After the call connected, he asked Wu Yuza how that matter was progressing. Wu Yuza clearly hadn't recovered from the shock. He really couldn't believe the strategist had predicted everything correctly. He really hadn't found a single person. It turned out that just now, he had suddenly arrested all the personnel involved in the operation to capture Guajijiang. But after carefully checking their phone communication records, he found there wasn't a single mole among those involved in that day's operation. Hearing this news, the strategist's face suddenly turned manic. I'm starting to understand why the police sometimes conduct searches based on intuition when they have no physical evidence. He continued analyzing. The only people who knew about Guajijiang's capture were me, Wu Yunzi, Min Doshang, and Huang Xiaomin. The Emperor Gang mobilized several units to rescue Guajijiang. The person who leaked this information wasn't me, nor was it you. It wasn't Min Doshong or his subordinates either. That leaves only Huang Chaomin. Although he doesn't belong to the Emperor Gang, if we assume he's the fake leader, then all the circumstances up to now can be explained. Although there's no physical evidence, I still suspect him. And I believe there's a 99.9% chance that Huang Chaomin is the fake leader. So, Brother Yunza, I need you to go to a place and capture someone. As for the address, I'll have someone send it to you by text message. And the person there is the fake leader. You should know, now is the time of conflict when Jin Zishian is being chased. With the battle continuing until now, he must be carrying means to manipulate the Emperor Gang. Meanwhile, the 4th squad members were fleeing in different directions. But even so, they still couldn't escape the Big Phil United Association's encirclement. Because fleeing from where the chairman was, they could only escape in 3 directions. They just needed to arrange forces in these 3 places, and there would be nowhere to run. Finally, the strategist commented on Jin Zishian's tactics. Although the motorcycle forces have strong mobility, they also have the disadvantage of not being able to escape through small alleys, unless they abandon their motorcycles. Otherwise, they can only flee towards the paved main roads. At this point, he couldn't help but mock those 2 idiots. They just needed to block the final checkpoint, but they couldn't even handle this small task. The most unfortunate was Jin Zishian, because they actually encountered the market alley guarded by Quan Chuldu, and the other side had already set his mind on killing, wanting to take this opportunity to severely trample Jin Zishian, preventing him from making a comeback. Meanwhile, Wu Zhijiang was singing karaoke with the 2nd squad members in a KTV, but he was preoccupied, wondering why Park Sukha wasn't answering his phone. He had planned to meet today and settle things, but the next second his phone rang. As soon as Guo Zhijiang answered the call, he spoke rudely, calling the fellow Captain Yun Jihun a lunatic, asking why he was calling. Yun Jihun was very angry at this nickname, but thinking that Guo Zhijiang was just a damn thug, he let it go. So he got to the point, telling him that Park Sukha was unconscious. Guo Zhijiang's body trembled when he heard the news. On the other side, Huang Chaomin was equally shocked. He was surprised that his brother Huang Wudi actually kept a diary, but lying on the ground, he suddenly laughed. The reason he was so happy was because the one he fought was Wu Yunza, ranked 4th in the Big Phil United Association, but he still felt that with his skills, he could handle someone of this level. And he even boasted that he had already imagined the scene of defeating this guy. Just moments ago, Jin Lechuan had arrived in time and sent Wu Yunza flying. He blurted out, "Why are you here?" Jin Lechuan seemed very calm about this. He simply explained a few words, saying Ma Heli had called him here. Then he questioned the person in front of him. "Who are you to dare touch my friend?" Wu Yunza was extremely displeased. After all, he had just been punched by this nobody. But when he heard these words, he couldn't help but laugh. If the strategist didn't want the means to control the Emperor Gang exposed, I'd really like to see your expression when you learn the truth. But he subtly hinted to the other. "It seems you've made quite a treacherous friend." Jin Lechuan was very confused, not understanding what this meant. Wu Yunza didn't explain, instead taking advantage of the other's distraction to strike back. The pain from this punch immediately brought Jin Lechuan back to his senses. He couldn't help but curse at Wu Yunza, but the next second, his face was hit with another heavy blow. Then came a rain of fists attacking him. It was only at this moment that Wu Yunza spoke. "Thanks to your friend, you're now inexplicably being KO'd by the United Association's number 4. Jin Lechuan wasn't discouraged by this. Instead, it sparked an even greater desire to win. After dodging the incoming fists, he found an opportunity to attack the other. This time, he sent Wu Yunza flying in a face-to-face confrontation. Then he eagerly delivered his victory speech. "Don't underestimate people. After all, I'm also a member of the Emperor Gang." At these words, Wu Yunza's anger was once again suppressed. He thought about the guy in front of him, who didn't even know the fake leader was right beside him. He found it very amusing, but he couldn't tell the truth due to certain reasons, which was frustrating. So Wu Yunza had to charge at the other again, but the fist he swung stopped in midair. This slightly surprised Jin Lechuan. The next second, his right fist suddenly struck, catching Jin Lechuan off guard, and his second attack was the same as before. The swung fist stopped in midair. Only after seeing the other's guarding posture did he attack with his other hand. For a time, Jin Lechuan was beaten back continuously, without any chance to fight back, while Huang Chaomin fell into despair. After all, Wu Yunza had followed them for Huang Wudi's phone. This meant the strategist had already confirmed he was the fake leader. Even if I'm lucky enough to escape from here, I definitely won't be able to escape his suspicion. Am I really doing something meaningful by continuing to do this even if it puts those around me in danger, and lying to those who consider me a friend? Thinking of this, he couldn't help but look at Ma Heli. After all, she was the instigator of all this. It was she who had threatened him to become the fake leader in the first place. But now she was unconscious. Is there really any meaning in continuing to do this? As Huang Chaomin was pondering the answer, Jin Lechuan could no longer withstand Wu Yunza's attacks and was knocked to the ground. Seeing this, the other calmly lit a cigarette, wanting to ask one thing before finishing him off. That was, why had he been smiling all along when he clearly couldn't fight back? But Jin Lechuan didn't answer this question. Instead, he asked Wu Yunza to confirm. You're really ranked 4th in fighting power in the United Association, right? It wasn't until the other confirmed that he revealed the reason, which was, he had already imagined the scene of defeating him. This infuriated Wu Yunza, his veins bulging. He didn't expect the other to have the nerve to act cocky before dying, but his right foot stepping down was firmly grabbed by Jin Lechuan. This caused him to lose balance and fall towards a nearby table. Jin Lechuan took this opportunity to slowly stand up from the ground. Using the move he had secretly learned from Jin Zixian, the scorpion tail, he kicked the other's forehead hard. The force from this roll made Wu Yunza's eyes go white instantly. The mirror fell down. All he had to do was hand over this phone to solve all the troubles. But the man's companion risked his life for this, because now the only hope to rescue Jin Zixian was him. It turns out that just now, Jin Lechuan successfully knocked out Wu Yunza, ranked 4th in the United Association, using the scorpion tail. So he took advantage of the moment the other fell to let Huang Chaomin escape with Ma Heli. He would find a way to deal with this guy, but Huang Chaomin hesitated. He wasn't sure if he should hand over this phone. If he handed it over, would all this really end? But before he could make a decision, Jin Lechuan gave him the answer. You don't need to hand over that phone. But these words surprised Huang Chaomin. He didn't know how the other knew about this. But the two didn't have time to catch up now, because Wu Yunza had stood up again, and he had heard their conversation. He couldn't help but wonder how Jin Lechuan knew about this. But before that, he had a more important task to do, which was to snatch the phone. But he had barely rushed halfway when Jin Lechuan kicked him from behind, sending him crashing to the ground. This scene snapped Huang Chaomin back to reality. So he went to Ma Heli's side and carried her on his back, then prepared to leave. But before leaving, Jin Lechuan called out to Huang Chaomin, telling him to find a way to rescue Jin Zixian. Because at another battlefield right now, Jin Zixian had already fallen to his knees helplessly, and the one who defeated him was Quan Zhado, ranked 3rd in the United Association. Shortly after Huang Chaomin left, Wu Yunza broke free using his core strength, but in his anger, he didn't choose to chase after Huang Chaomin. Instead, he swung his fist at Jin Lechuan. The next second, his face was hit hard, but Wu Yunza didn't fall from this. Instead, he grabbed the other's right foot and threw him flying, but Jin Lechuan still wasn't convinced. He kept taunting Wu Yunza crazily, until he smelled something. Jin Lechuan finally realized. So he immediately stood up from the ground and patted the burning parts of his body. But the scene before him also confused Wu Yunza. He didn't know how this fire started, and he didn't know when it had gotten so big. But Jin Lechuan clearly remembered that all this was caused by Wu Yunza's cigarette butt, so he couldn't help but blame the other. But Wu Yunza was also very uncomfortable. He didn't want things to get this big, so he started to retreat, wanting Jin Lechuan to make way for him. But the other refused without hesitation. He said, "What if I let you pass and you go after Huang Chaomin? That guy still has something he must do now, so I can't possibly make way. Actually, this is better for me. After all, with the fire so big, you'll probably suffocate from inhaling the smoke soon. After you pass out, I can hand you over to the police as an arsonist." These words angered Wu Yunza, his veins bulging. "If that's the case, don't blame me if you lose your life." Then he charged towards Jin Lechuan. Meanwhile, on the other side, the strategist was still calling Wu Yunza, but the other didn't answer. This made him fall into deep thought. It had been an hour since the last call. Normally, he should have contacted me by now. After all, Huang Chaomin couldn't possibly hold out for an hour against Wu Yunza. He could finish the fight in 2.5 minutes at most. Faced with this situation, he had no choice but to call the butler, asking where he was now. Learning that he was on his way back, he asked the butler to check on that house from earlier. It seemed there was a bit of a problem there, and he agreed without hesitation. Just as he turned the car around to head back, he was attracted by a scene beside him. It was fire trucks coming head-on, and not just one. Meanwhile, on the other side, Jin Taiyang was still at home waiting for his brother to come back for dinner, because he had promised to return before dark. But now he was worried that something might have happened to his brother. After all, it was so late and he hadn't come home or contacted him. The usually brave gang captain was now covered in wounds, kneeling on the ground. He didn't even get angry when someone spat on him. He just looked around and asked what they had done with the others. But Quan Zhado sneered. "What else could I do with them? Of course I beat them all down, and they might not be able to take care of themselves for a while. But don't worry, because you'll soon meet the same fate. After all, the chairman has ordered to bring you to this United Association's general meeting for public execution. As for the purpose of this execution show, it should be to boost morale. So I specially suggested a venue for the general meeting to the chairman. And conquer that place, by the way. About the venue, what do you think of Qingbi? Hearing this, Jin Zhexian gritted his teeth in anger. But he could do nothing. And Quan Zhudo was even more excessive. He wanted to have Jin Zhexian trampled in front of his underlings. But before that, you must stay obediently in the warehouse. But, unexpectedly, the next second, Jin Zhexian lowered his proud head. This surprised Quan Zhudo, not knowing what was wrong with the other. Could the sky be falling? But Jin Zhexian asked a question with a dark face. Why do you do such things? And then indulge in that insignificant sense of belonging, even fighting desperately to hurt others. As he said the last sentence, Jin Zhexian couldn't help but shout. But Quan Zhudo stepped on his head, mocking his words as nonsense. Didn't you join the Emperor gang yourself? Isn't the so-called reason just for fun? Just as Quan Zhudo finished speaking, an underling came to report. The car has arrived. So he threw Jin Zhexian into the car, then told the driver to start driving immediately. By the way, does your delivery company also take on this kind of business? Yes, we do anything as long as we're paid. But this voice sounded familiar to Jin Zhexian. If that's the case, then go to the place I just mentioned. Don't worry about the money. But at this moment, the driver was sweating nervously, because he was Huang Xiaomin in disguise. And he did all this to rescue Jin Zhexian. It turns out that after escaping from that house, Huang Xiaomin thought about what Jin Lechuan had told him. You don't need to hand over that phone. Go rescue Jin Zhexian quickly. These two sentences surprised Huang Xiaomin. He really hadn't expected Jin Lechuan to know about the phone's existence. After all, there had been no signs of this before. But Huang Xiaomin didn't have much time to think about this now. He had to rescue Jin Zhexian first. But since a while ago, the other had lost contact. I originally thought the plan had succeeded. But if we deduce from what Jin Lechuan said, then something must have gone wrong during the escape. And Zhexian is good at commanding. For someone like him to fall into a trap means the other side must have also used their brains. Thinking from the United Association's perspective, how would I crush them? Thinking of this, Huang Xiaomin opened the map. He found there were 3 routes to escape to the main road. If it were me, I would definitely set up ambushes on them. So he started off carrying Ma Heli on his back, heading to the nearest route. And things were as expected. There were many Emperor gang members lying on the ground here, but this was still fewer than a full squad. They must have scattered and tried to escape separately. What scared Huang Xiaomin most was that these people were in very bad condition. Clearly they had been severely beaten. Although I don't know how Jin Lechuan knew, but he very clearly told me to save Zhexian. If that's the case, the news of Zhexian's capture must be true. I need to check the other 2 routes. Maybe I can find some useful clues. Just as Huang Xiaomin was about to set off, he heard a cough. So he crouched by the wall and peeked. He saw a member slowly getting up from the ground. He went to his companion and patted his shoulder, wanting him to get up and go rescue the captain with him. After all, he had heard very clearly. They wanted to imprison the captain, and then publicly execute him at the United Association's general meeting. But before he could finish speaking, someone came and stomped his head hard. What's going on here? Why is there no one around? Can Huang Xiaomin really rescue Jin Zhexian? Just now, the delivery center employee finally arrived at the destination. But at this time, the battlefield was left with only a bunch of unconscious Emperor gang members. So he called the customer, asking where he was now. Learning he was in a nearby parking lot, he started flattering him and said he'd be there soon. But as soon as he hung up the phone, he immediately changed his attitude. Damn delivery center, making me be so respectful to a completely unknown brat. But come to think of it, do young thugs these days all wear uniforms? Each generation is crazier than the last. Thinking of this, his emotions clearly became agitated. Until a few years ago, I was also like them, dreaming about life. If not for life's pressures, even a dog wouldn't be a delivery employee. But the next second, he received a heavy blow to the back of his head. The attacker was Huang Xiaomin. He did this because now this was the only way to rescue Zhexian. But since this was Huang Xiaomin's first time driving, he was very nervous all the way. But the people behind didn't notice his abnormality, just chatting among themselves. Until Huang Xiaomin wanted to drive the car to a deserted road to be safe. That's when an accident occurred. He accidentally hit the guardrail, causing the two to lose interest in chatting. They urged the driver to drive carefully. Huang Xiaomin looked at the floor, realizing he had stepped on the brake just now. So he quickly apologized, praying in his heart, please don't mix them up. This scene also made Jin Zhexian break out in a cold sweat. Fearing Huang Xiaomin might accidentally expose himself, he carefully looked at Quan Zhudo, wanting to see if he was sleeping. But just as he felt relieved, Quan Zhudo suddenly said, something's wrong with this delivery center employee, right? The next second, he looked up at Huang Xiaomin. If it was earlier, I couldn't be sure, but now I can confirm your voice is definitely wrong. The two behind were stunned, not knowing what was going on. With his discovery, Jin Zhexian's heart started pounding uncontrollably, but Huang Chaomin ignored him and kept driving, angering Quan Zhado, who lunged at him, wanting to forcibly stop the car. But unexpectedly, Huang Chaomin stepped hard on the accelerator at this moment, making the car's speed instantly reach 100 kilometers per hour, driving straight into a tunnel, while Quan Zhado fell onto the seat due to the force. So Jin Zhexian seized this opportunity and kicked the thug behind him flying. But Quan Zhado quickly came to his senses, lunging at Huang Chaomin again, grabbing half of his face and cursing. And because of this, the car lost control and crashed. The next second, the whole car was billowing with thick white smoke. What was most surprising was, Quan Zhado was the first person to get out of the car. He staggered to the driver's side, yanked open the door, forcefully pulled Huang Chaomin out, demanding to know who sent him. But Huang Chaomin didn't choose to answer, angering Quan Zhado, his face turning black. He couldn't help but mock him. "You don't think you can fool me, do you?" But Huang Chaomin unexpectedly blurted out, "It seems the tinted film on the car blocked your vision." This made him shudder slightly, not knowing what the other meant, until he heard the sound of engines. He was surprised to find the tunnel entrance was surrounded by people. It turns out Huang Chaomin had notified all members of the Emperor Gang before coming. The 4th Squad Captain Jin Zhexian is currently being held by the United Association and is being transferred. Those who saw this message immediately gathered at Gaoshou Tunnel. The one leading them was Guo Zhijiang, captain of the Emperor Gang's 2nd Squad. Seeing his plan succeed, Huang Chaomin couldn't help but smile. For a moment, Quan Zhado was stunned, no longer caring about Huang Chaomin. The 2 thugs in the car had already been dealt with by Jin Zhexian. But what surprised him most was Huang Chaomin. He actually led them to a place where the Emperor Gang could surround them. Meanwhile, Quan Zhado had realized the crisis. He turned around without hesitation, intending to escape through the other tunnel entrance. But no sooner had the idea been born than a man stepped out of the shadows. It was Lin Jixuan, captain of the Emperor Gang's 3rd Squad. Unexpectedly, the whole gang came out just to stop one van. Just now, to rescue Jin Zhexian, Huang Chaomin not only impersonated a delivery employee, but also drove the car into the tunnel, because he had already ordered the Emperor Gang to gather at Gaoshou Tunnel. When Quan Zhado realized this, he tried to run towards the other exit. But unexpectedly, a man walked out from the shadows. It was Lin Jixuan, captain of the Emperor Gang's 3rd Squad. His eyes immediately turned red. Cursing his bad luck, he charged towards the enemy in front of him. But due to being outnumbered, they quickly fell into a disadvantage. But even so, he kept cursing. This behavior strongly displeased Huang Chaomin, not knowing what the other was so proud of. He only beat Zhexian by having more people. Moreover, this isn't some 1-against-100 fighting game, but a battlefield between students. Here, having more people is most important. Seeing the situation gradually improve, Huang Chaomin prepared to untie Jin Zhexian. Meanwhile, Guo Zhijiang couldn't resist joining the battle. With his flying kick, Quan Zhado instantly flew over 10 meters, lying on the ground, unable to get up. But this couldn't quell Guo Zhijiang's anger, because on the same day, the United Association not only put Park Sukha in the hospital, they even wanted to harm Jin Zhexian. This arrogant attitude greatly displeased Guo Zhijiang, so he kept beating Quan Zhado, asking if he thought the Emperor Gang was easy to bully. In the end, Jin Zhexian had to step in to stop him, telling Guo Zhijiang to stop. After all, if he continued, it might lead to death. But even so, he still wouldn't easily give up. Just as his shoe was about to step down again, a shout interrupted him. "What are you so angry about? That's just the fate of a traitor." It was Lin Jixuan, captain of the Emperor Gang's 3rd Squad. His reaction was clearly different from Guo Zhijiang's, but their dialogue shocked Jin Zhexian. He hadn't expected Park Sukha to be attacked too. More importantly, why was he called a traitor? But Lin Jixuan didn't explain much, just saying he would deal with it eventually. This might even be a good thing now. But Guo Zhijiang grabbed his collar and asked, "This is a good thing?" The Emperor Gang's 1st Squad captain was hospitalized by the United Association. This shows they don't take us seriously at all. As he said this, Guo Zhijiang was shaking with anger, but Lin Jixuan still showed no reaction. He just simply stated the current situation. "We also took out one of their executives. This guy is ranked 3rd in the United Association." But Guo Zhijiang didn't care about this, because he couldn't accept the current situation. He really couldn't understand why it had become like this, to the point his teeth were grinding. Jin Zhexian on the side fell silent. He hadn't expected Guo Zhijiang to be so loyal. In the end, only the sound of motorcycle engines broke the silence. It was the late arriving 4th Squad members. After all, they had been injured quite badly in the previous battle. This Gaoshou industry battle was triggered by Gao Jiabing provoking Ma Heli. Now it ended with 1/3 of the Emperor Gang's 4th Squad and all members of the United Association's Gaoshou industry, and half the members of Dailin and Dunchong losing their fighting ability. plus the Emperor Gang's first squad captain Park Suk-ha falling into a coma, and the United Association's third-ranked Kwon Jae-do losing his fighting ability. It ended with such a tragic result. As things concluded, Guo Zhejiang led the second squad to withdraw first, while Lin Jixuan left alone. Walking back, Huang Chaomin couldn't help but complain. Playing dead was really hard. Ma Heli also sent a message. After briefly describing Jean Lechuan's situation, she said she was coming to find him. But Ma Heli's words made Huang Chaomin fall into deep thought. Because for the strategist, his identity as the fake leader was now a certainty, and the Emperor Gang's first squad captain had fallen into a coma at this time. Plus Wang Wudi wasn't around. The Emperor Gang was now in an absolutely disadvantageous situation. This is all because of this damn phone, making my life so exhausting. I originally just wanted those thugs to taste the same suffering as me. But now, whether or not Guo Zhejiang takes revenge, I actually feel it would be easier to give up everything and face the consequences of my actions. Just throw the phone into the water and end everything. To hell with the Emperor Gang. But suddenly he thought of something. Could Huang Wudi's diary have burned up completely? If that's really the case, then am I the only one who knows all the diary contents? And now the situation has become so chaotic that I can't control it at all. Just as I'm being forced to give up everything. I can't bring myself to let go. Why is all this happening?